The black-haired man in military attire collapses to the ground as blood stains his chest. A massive, dark-scaled dragon roars fiercely, spewing a torrent of flame across the landscape. Tia Rossetti gazes from behind as the black-haired man kneels in the distance, wounded and alone. Overwhelmed by shock, Tia Rossetti trembles as she watches the tragic scene unfold before her eyes. Staggering in pain, the black-haired man resolves to fulfill his given role despite the cost. A girl with short black hair sleeps peacefully, unaware her life is about to change forever. Tia Rossetti awakens in a cold stone cell, shackled and seized by a sudden, terrifying chill. Confused, Tia Rossetti wonders where she is and what the heavy shackles on her wrists mean. Tia Rossetti discovers a glowing book, shielding her eyes as it emits a sudden, blinding flash. The ancient tome hovers midair, radiating a magical golden glow that illuminates the dark prison. Startled by a sudden noise, Tia Rossetti recoils in fear while still bound by her chains. Terrified, Tia Rossetti drops the book upon realizing the inanimate object is actually capable of speech. The floating book expresses annoyance through a system window as Tia Rossetti looks up in disbelief. A system notification scolds Tia Rossetti, demanding that books must be treated with more careful consideration. Tia Rossetti screams in shock, finally confirming the impossible reality that the book is indeed talking. A floating book introduces itself as a guide for Tia Rossetti's time in the novel, though she is confused about being in a book and what a guide is. The guide reassures her it will provide assistance even if she has never read the story before. Tia Rossetti is revealed as Tia Rossetti Isol, a tragic character within the world of a fantasy novel. Tia Rossetti desperately begs to be sent back home, but the guide coldly refuses her request. The guide announces the arrival of the story's male lead, prompting Tia Rossetti to shout in surprise. Light floods the cell, causing Tia Rossetti to wince as the mysterious savior approaches her dark prison. A system window reveals that Tia Rossetti's only chance to return home depends on her actions. Lexian appears at the door and calls her name, causing Tia Rossetti's heart to race with emotion. The guide informs her that she must become the perfect Tia Rossetti to fulfill her destiny. A final instruction appears, ordering Tia Rossetti to see the book story through to the end. Overcome with sorrow, Tia Rossetti weeps as she realizes the weight of the path ahead. Back on the battlefield, Lexian tells her to run away while Tia Rossetti reflects on her fate. Tia Rossetti recalls her role as to save Lexian by killing the dragon even if she dies. Holding the dying man, Tia Rossetti listens as Lexian weakly calls out her name one last time. Lexian begs Tia Rossetti not to cry while she internally laments how her heart is breaking because she fell in love with him despite knowing they could never be together. Tia Rossetti laments her forbidden love just as Lexian coughs blood and weakly protests his approaching end. Lexian mumbles a final, desperate plea for her to stop as his strength begins to fade. A glowing system window conveys Lexian's final wish that Tia Rossetti does not attempt to heal him. As a countdown from 10 begins, Tia Rossetti notes that Lexian has never spoken to her so informally before he offers his final wish for her to be happy. With his final breath, Lexian calls out to Tia Rossetti as the world begins to dissolve. Lexian coughs and gazes upward, his body enveloped in a warm, supernatural light during his passing. Crying yet smiling, Tia Rossetti faces the end of her mission with blood on her lips. Tia Rossetti admits what she truly wanted to say as the system confirms the mission is complete but announces an error with the ending. Timer winds as the system restarts the story, sending Tia Rossetti back to the cold cell floor. Tia Rossetti wakes up in the dark, blinking as she wonders where she has been sent this time. Disturbed by a foul odor, Tia Rossetti covers her mouth and looks around the grim stone room. Still disoriented, Tia Rossetti sits on the stone floor, trying to make sense of her renewed surroundings. Tia Rossetti realizes with growing horror that she is unable to move her legs in her current state. Light spills into the room as a heavy door creaks open, drawing Tia Rossetti's attention upward. Shielding her eyes from the sudden brightness, Tia Rossetti groans in discomfort as someone enters the room. Tia Rossetti looks up in shock, seeing Lexian standing at the doorway in his regal black attire. Lexian offers a gentle, heartbreaking smile as he looks down at the woman he finally found. Lexian claims he has finally found Tia Rossetti, though she is unable to hear or understand what he is saying. A blonde soldier shouts that they found a survivor and orders her immediate removal from the site. Two soldiers peer into the dark room, gasping in surprise at the discovery of the captive woman. Lexian watches silently as the blonde knight commands his men to move the survivor out quickly. Tia Rossetti realizes she survived and wonders what is happening while surrounded by Imperial soldiers. Lexian covers Tia Rossetti as the blonde knight remarks on the foul stench of death. Narrative text details the dangerous dragon and their late arrival to the disaster site. Tia Rossetti reflects on the dragon's defeat while being carried away from the many corpses. Lexian carries Tia Rossetti through the stone corridor with a determined and silent expression. The blonde knight calls out for Lexian to wait as he continues walking away. Lexian refuses the soldier's assistance and insists on taking the woman himself. Tia Rossetti laments her failure to return home despite following the book's survival instructions. A memory of Tia Rossetti's previous death appears as she grieves the book's broken promises. Close-up of Tia Rossetti's eyes as she processes the unexpected reset of her tragic story. Lexion carries Tierracetti through the ruins and notes they met earlier than he planned. Tierracetti gazes at Lexion with disbelief while a single bloodstain marks her pale face. Lexion covers Tierracetti's eyes and tells her not to look at the surrounding horrors. A peaceful morning camp is shown as the sun rises over the white military tents. Tierracetti wakes up in a clean bed looking exhausted as she regains her consciousness. Tierracetti asks about the dragon's fate while Lexion holds her hand at her bedside. Lexion looks away with guilt and apologizes for arriving too late to save her. Tierracetti shakes her head and internally questions why he feels the need to apologize. Close-up of Tierracetti's confusion regarding Lexion's memories of her in this reset timeline. Lexion touches the blood on Tierracetti's cheek and asks if she is physically hurt. Tierracetti clarifies that the blood on her face does not actually belong to her.
Lexion appears relieved by her answer and gazes at her with a gentle smile.
Thought bubbles highlight Tierracetti's surprise at Lexion's uncharacteristic display of emotion and relief. Lexion suggests a nap while Tierracetti realizes her magical talking guidebook is missing. Tierracetti asks Lexion if he saw the brown book that was previously in the cell. Tierracetti gestures frantically while describing the size and appearance of her lost talking book. Lexion ponders her description before admitting he did not see it and offering help. Lexion promises to send his men to find the book while Tierracetti remains uneasy. Tierracetti reflects on the book's persistent nature and wonders why it is suddenly gone. Tierracetti feels sudden dizziness and notices a nosebleed as Lexion calls out to her. Tierracetti collapses back in bed and wonders what is happening as her vision fades. Tierracetti wonders if she ever shared her name while reflecting on the novel's plot. Narrative text explains Tierracetti's role as a supporting character fated to love the hero. Tierracetti lies amidst white roses representing her tragic and predetermined role in the story. Lexion dances with the story's true main heroine while Tierracetti remains a side character. Tierracetti reflects on her feelings for Lexion and her past attempts to destroy the book. Tierracetti realizes she can never change the original story regardless of her many efforts. Tierracetti sits alone in a red field haunted by the book's constant reappearances. Narrative text reveals how the book forced Tierracetti back every time she tried escaping. Dark hands reach out for Tierracetti while she wonders how to proceed without her guide. Close-up of Tierracetti's blue eye as she prepares to face her new reality. A maid with short brown hair enters the room carrying a wooden water bucket. Tierracetti wakes in darkness and discusses turning off the light with the maid Margarita. Tierracetti smiles as Margarita explains her duty and the reason for the dark room. Margarita explains Lexion's order to keep the room bright because Tierracetti fears the dark. The maid sighs as she recounts the Duke's strict instructions for the lady's comfort. Narrative text explains Tierracetti's trauma from being locked away during a 3-day disaster. Tierracetti reflects on how strange it is that Lexion knows her fears and secrets. Chibi versions of Tierracetti and Margarita share a lighthearted and cute interaction together.
Margarita brings a food tray and urges Tierracetti to eat and recover her health.
Margarita brings a tray of bread and milk, advising Tierracetti to eat slowly. The maid explains that Tierracetti's stomach might hurt after going 3 days without food. Tierracetti stares in wide-eyed shock after hearing how long she has been asleep. An inner monologue reveals Tierracetti's disbelief at having lost 3 days to unconsciousness. Disoriented and confused, the white-haired woman tries to process the sudden passage of time. Tierracetti questions Margarita about the current date and whether Princess Siren's debut was delayed. Margarita confirms that the princess's debut banquet actually began yesterday, much to Tierracetti's concern. Tierracetti looks distressed as she internally realizes the significance of missing the banquet's start. A portrait identifies Princess Siren Aiden Verbel, the beautiful green-haired royal of the Empire. Narrative text establishes Siren's high status as the esteemed princess within the imperial family. A ferocious dragon breathes flames and lightning as 2 figures stand ready for battle. Text describes the heroine of Cell as Lexion's protector during the dragon's final assault. Young Lexion and young Siren are shown holding hands while walking down a staircase. Adult Lexion stands in the palace, looking towards Siren amidst a flurry of petals. Tierracetti panics because the story cannot start without the lead couple's meeting. A close-up highlights Tierracetti's intense gaze as she analyzes the failing narrative timeline. Tierracetti remains lost in thought while the concerned maid watches her from the bedside. Tierracetti tells Margarita she needs fresh air despite the maid's protests about her health. Peering through the curtains, Tierracetti prepares to investigate the changes in this new world. Tierracetti walks through a sun-drenched field, overwhelmed by her own confusion. Thought bubbles reflect Tierracetti's deep sense of being lost within this rewritten story.
Tierracetti stops in her tracks upon encountering a blonde man wearing a military uniform.
The blonde man calls out to her, waving his hand to get her attention. An ornamental frame introduces the blonde man as Gregory Aiden Wexler. Gregory follows Lexion through a bright hall, his expression unreadable as they walk together. Narrative text explains Gregory's youth and his distinct emerald green eyes during childhood. Young Gregory, Siren, and Lexion grew up together as close companions within the palace. Darkness and blood-red splatters emphasize the tragedy of Gregory's father dying from a betrayal. Gregory's life spiraled into vice, represented by wine bottles and scattered gambling cards. Images of cards, wine, and a mysterious woman illustrate the despicable life Gregory led. Gregory greets Tia Rossetti with a polite bow, noting he wasn't sure he saw her correctly.
Tia Rossetti curtsies in return, though she remains visibly tense during their unexpected meeting.
Standing amidst the blue flowers, Tia Rossetti looks weary as she interacts with the nobleman. Gregory leans in close, causing Tia Rossetti to gasp in surprise at his sudden proximity. Tia Rossetti groans in discomfort as the stress of the situation begins to take a toll. Gregory begs Tia Rossetti not to tell Lexion he surprised her, fearing Lexion might hit him. Tia Rossetti wonders why the Duke is involved, covering her mouth in a moment of realization.
Gregory looks baffled by Tia Rossetti's reaction, raising his hands in a defensive, questioning gesture.
Rubbing his chin, Gregory asks Tia Rossetti if she truly doesn't understand the current situation. Gregory wonders what kind of situation this is as Tia Rossetti looks down pensively. Shards of a broken memory show Tia Rossetti reflecting on her return to a changed past. Gregory laughs while questioning what could possibly be wrong with Lexion's current strange behavior. Gregory sighs, admitting that the lack of recognition between the two characters is a headache. Gregory offers to explain more about Lexion since Tia Rossetti claims they have never met. Lexion is depicted as a formidable warrior, the legendary protector of the frozen north. The Imperial Palace stands tall against the night sky as Gregory describes a daring act. Tia Rossetti shouts in alarm, realizing Lexion's unauthorized presence in the south is considered treason. Gregory explains that Lexion risked everything to save her tribe from an impending attack. Gregory looks exhausted as he recounts the dizzying effort to organize a legitimate search group. Gregory recalls being dragged along by Lexion while Tia Rossetti wonders what this all means. Tia Rossetti looks distressed as the wind blows through her long white hair under a clear sky.
Tia Rossetti wonders if Lexion knew everything while Gregory stands within a swirling, dark, and oppressive void.
Flashbacks reveal Lexion personally provided quarters and constant bedside care for Tia Rossetti after finding her. Tia Rossetti questions if Lexion was the one who personally tended to her while she was sick. The white-haired woman looks shocked, questioning if it wasn't Margarita who cared for her for 3 days. Gregory explains that Lexion personally cared for Tia Rossetti and suspended the search after she was found. Tia Rossetti feels guilty about the misunderstanding, clutching her dress as she reflects on her request for sleep. A solitary tree stands against the mountains while Tia Rossetti worries about Lexion finding out the truth. Text on a dark background questions how Lexion knew about the Isol tragedy and her location. Tia Rossetti turns to find Lexion standing nearby, surprising her and Gregory during their meeting in the field. Tia Rossetti gazes at Lexion with wide eyes, softly uttering his name as she processes his sudden appearance. Lexion appears visibly distressed and weary, with sweat beading on his forehead as he looks at her. The scene highlights a moment of silent, intense connection between Tia Rossetti and Lexion amidst the flowers. Lexion expresses his surprise and relief after Tia Rossetti vanished immediately upon waking up from her long sleep. Lexion places a gentle hand on Tia Rossetti's forehead, checking for a fever and asking if she's okay. Tia Rossetti bashfully insists she is fine while Lexion continues to tenderly check her temperature with his hand. Lexion offers a warm and gentle smile to Tia Rossetti, his eyes filled with a deep, quiet affection. Lexion pulls Tia Rossetti close, questioning if Gregory summoned her there while she clutches her chest in surprise. Gregory defends himself, raising his hand and insisting that their encounter was purely a matter of chance. Lexion accepts the coincidence, while Tia Rossetti admits she was simply lost and wandering through the bright field. Gregory calls Lexion evil for interrupting, while Lexion dismisses him and orders him to attend to business. Tia Rossetti watches Lexion walk away, reflecting on her deep desire to learn more about his true self. Lexion stops and turns back, questioning Tia Rossetti about why she is staring at him so intensely. Tia Rossetti dismisses his question while Lexion expresses satisfaction that he went out to look for her. Lexion extends his hand toward Tia Rossetti, inviting her to walk with him through the sun-drenched field. Lexion offers his hand with a charming smile, radiating a noble and inviting aura in the sunlight. Tia Rossetti looks down with a pensive expression, her heart heavy as she prepares to take his hand. Lexion and Tia Rossetti walk together through the lush garden, their forms silhouetted against the bright, flowery landscape. Tia Rossetti admires the beautiful flowers, while Lexion notes that his northern home has even more stunning displays. Tia Rossetti picks a white flower, expressing curiosity about the many beautiful northern flowers Lexion just described. Lexion smiles warmly, promising Tia Rossetti that she would surely find many flowers to her liking in the north. Tia Rossetti looks down at her shoes, formally addressing Lexion by his noble title as the Duke. Standing together in the sunlight, Lexion looks toward Tia Rossetti as he speaks her full name out loud. Lexion gazes at Tia Rossetti with warmth and requests that she call him simply by his name. Tia Rossetti reacts with surprise as Lexion gently tucks a white flower behind her ear in the garden. Lexion turns his head slightly, his expression soft and expectant as he waits for Tia Rossetti's response. Tia Rossetti hesitates to use his name, but Lexion reassures her that it is perfectly fine to do so.
Lexion looks directly at Tia Rossetti and suggests that calling him Xeon would be much better for them.
Tia Rossetti stands frozen amidst a field of white flowers, her heart pounding from Lexion's intimate request. A close-up reveals Tia Rossetti's racing heart as she realizes Lexion's presence and words make her feel excited.
Lexion pulls Tia Rossetti into a gentle embrace, resting his hand on her head in the quiet garden. Tia Rossetti blushes intensely as Lexion leans in close and asks again if she can use his nickname.
Lexion rests his hand on Tia Rossetti's shoulder while she tentatively begins to speak his name out loud.
Tia Rossetti nervously asks if Zeon is correct while Lexion holds her hand firmly in the bright sunlight.
Lexion and Tia Rossetti stand hand in hand surrounded by white roses, sharing a quiet, romantic moment in the garden.
Text over a fractured background reveals Tia Rossetti's questions about how Lexion found her among the corpses.
Tia Rossetti resolves to enjoy the happiness of the moment as Lexion gazes at her with a smile.
Lexion holds Tia Rossetti's hands tightly, admitting he was deeply worried when she collapsed earlier in the ruins.
Lexion looks down with a pained expression, apologizing once more for not arriving earlier to save her.
Tia Rossetti internally questions why he is so familiar and apologetic despite this being their first meeting.
Lexion confesses his love at first sight while white flowers bloom in the garden.
The dark-haired man cradles the white-haired woman with a look of intense protective concern. Shaken by the unexpected revelation, the white-haired woman tells herself this simply cannot be.
Reflecting on the original story, Tia Rossetti recalls she was meant to love Lexion first.
Lexion holds Tia Rossetti's hand, asking her not to run as he expresses his feelings.
Tia Rossetti stares in silent wonder, questioning how he could possibly know her private childhood nickname.
A mystical book reveals that the characters within its pages are bound by a script.
Bound by the original plot, Tia Rossetti reflects on her previous inability to act with freedom.
A puppet doll represents Tia Rossetti being ensnared by the inescapable thorns of the narrative state.
Tia Rossetti watches Lexion walk away, wondering how he can act so freely despite the script.
Princess Cyrene stands gracefully in her green gown, surrounded by a soft, luminous floral glow.
Tia Rossetti resolves to avoid Lexion's confession to protect herself from being hurt once again.
Lexion explains that he simply wanted to use the nickname, though she never told him.
A simple thought bubble explains the phonetic similarity between the letters of her nickname, TD.
Lexion smiles warmly while noting the symmetry of the first and last letters of her nickname.
Standing in the sunlight, the woman with newly black hair softly calls out the name Zeon.
The search team arrives at the bustling capital after finishing their grim work in Isel.
Townspeople celebrate in the streets as the final day of the grand banquet begins.
The maid claps her hands in delight while observing the lady's stunning transformation.
Margarita marvels at the black-haired woman's beauty in her intricate, glittering light blue ball gown.
The black-haired woman stands elegantly in her voluminous blue gown amidst a field of roses.
Tia Rossetti nervously asks if her appearance is acceptable, but the maid assures her she is perfect.
Margarita rushes Tia Rossetti along to ensure they arrive in time for the princess's debut event. Tia Rossetti feels foolish for her excitement, assuming Lexion has already partnered with Princess Cyrene.
Tightening her white gloves, Tia Rossetti tells herself not to be stupid about her lingering hopes.
Lexion presents Tia Rossetti with a magic ring to hide her identity by changing her hair color.
Tia Rossetti hesitates to take the ring, but Lexion insists she must hide from the imperial family. When Tia Rossetti asks why, Lexion admits he wants to prevent the royals from taking advantage.
Knowing the imperial family's cruelty, Lexion remains deeply worried for the fearful and alone Tia Rossetti.
Tia Rossetti promises to use the magical hair-changing ring as carefully as she possibly can from now on.
Lexion smiles with satisfaction as Tia Rossetti agrees to protect her identity with the new tool.
Startled from her deep thoughts, Tia Rossetti reacts with surprise when she hears her name called. Margarita holds Tia Rossetti's hands and asks if she feels ill, but the woman insists she's fine. Tia Rossetti offers a soft, genuine smile while closing her eyes in a moment of inner peace.
The small woman continues to read her letter while eating a snack in a quiet moment. Tia Rossetti and the maid descend the grand palace staircase, preparing to attend the final banquet. Prince Gregory greets the ladies, causing Tia Rossetti to look at him with his startled, questioning expression.
The blonde prince offers a charming smile, radiating confidence as he stands before the two women.
Looking confused by his sudden appearance, Tia Rossetti asks Gregory what he is doing there.
Gregory bows elegantly and explains that he has arrived to personally pick up the young lady.
Tia Rossetti assumes that Lexion must have already gone ahead to the banquet hall without her.
Amidst the white flowers, Tia Rossetti silently questions what she had even expected from the situation.
Gregory gallantly takes Tia Rossetti's hand as they prepare to depart for the palace event together. 4 white horses pull the ornate royal carriage down the stone path toward the capital.
Inside the carriage, Gregory calls her suspicious, while Tia Rossetti asks him to clarify his meaning.
Gregory notes Lexion's unusual behavior, but Tia Rossetti insists the Duke only feels pity for her loss.
Reclining in his seat, Gregory insists that Lexion's feelings for her are not a mere misunderstanding. Tia Rossetti looks puzzled as Gregory's driver announces they have finally arrived at the banquet.
Gregory leads Tia Rossetti out of the carriage as they arrive at the Grand Imperial Palace. Tia Rossetti stops in shock, her breath catching as she begins to utter Lexion's name out loud.
Lexian stands with noble poise in his formal attire amidst a soft floral background.
A thought bubble reveals Tirasetti's sheer disbelief and shock at seeing Lexian there. Tirasetti stands between the two men as Lexion takes her hand, surprising her. Lexian gazes at Tirasetti with a soft smile and compliments her stunning appearance. Blushing from the unexpected praise, Tirasetti shyly offers her thanks to the smiling Duke.
Gregory bids farewell as Lexion asks Tirasetti if she will be his partner for the banquet. Confused by the turn of events, Tirasetti knows Lexion should be with Princess Saren. Lexion looks directly at Tirasetti and insists on being her partner for the evening.
Tirasetti's heart races as she stares back at Lexion, overwhelmed by his intimate presence. Pink roses bloom under a clear sky as Lexion invites Tirasetti to depart with him.
Lexion leads the elegant Tirasetti by the hand as they walk through the palace garden.
Tirasetti questions Lexion's choice, wondering why he wants to be her partner so badly.
Lexion looks back with a soft expression, stating he simply wants to experience this with her.
Tirasetti reflects on the incomprehensible situation as she walks in her voluminous blue gown.
Internal text notes that Lexion was originally Princess Siren's partner in the previous life.
A flashback reveals the original story where Lexion danced with the green-haired princess at the banquet. Tirasetti worries that the original story is changing and she cannot trust her knowledge anymore. Looking startled, Tirasetti feels the weight of the changing narrative as she continues walking.
Lexion and Tirasetti enter the grand hall hand in hand, drawing the attention of the crowd.
Lexion turns away and firmly says no, rejecting a request or person off-screen. Tirasetti stands frozen in the banquet hall, feeling vulnerable under the gaze of the nobles.
Kneeling among flowers, Lexion holds Tirasetti's hand and says going with her makes him happy.
A close-up of Tirasetti's eyes shows her shock as a devastating realization strikes her.
Tirasetti recalls a dying woman's face, realizing Lexion just repeated his final words. Lexion gazes at Tirasetti with deep affection while holding her gloved hand to his face.
Onlookers whisper about the mysterious lady standing beside the Duke in the grand ballroom.
Two noble women gossip about the black-haired woman, wondering who she could possibly be.
Lexion pulls Tirasetti close as the nobles wonder if she is his new girlfriend.
A noblewoman wonders if Tirasetti's black hair means she is actually a distant relative. Tirasetti accidentally steps on Lexion's foot during their dance, causing a brief moment of clumsy silence.
Lexion apologizes and reassures Tirasetti that she can step on him as much as she likes.
Tirasetti promises to dance better next time while Lexion gazes at her with a warm smile.
Tirasetti remains deeply confused by Lexion's behavior, questioning the cause of these massive plot changes.
The Crown Prince and Princess Sirene are announced as they enter the grand banquet hall.
Tirasetti looks on with apprehension as she prepares for the entrance of the story's heroine.
Princess Sirene appears in a beautiful pink gown, looking every bit the protagonist of the novel.
The two couples stand face to face in the hall, the atmosphere thick with tension and unspoken history.
The Crown Prince and Lexion exchange silent, heavy stares as they confront one another. Crown Prince Kronos Aiden Verbal wonders why Lexion refused him, questioning if Tirasetti is the reason.
Lexion protectively takes Tirasetti's hand and announces his arrival before Crown Prince Kronos Aiden Verbal.
Princess Sirene apologizes for any trouble while the Crown Prince demands an apology from Lexion.
The Crown Prince insults Tirasetti's manners, calling her an insolent woman for not greeting him.
Crown Prince Kronos demands that Tirasetti raise her head and look at him directly.
Tirasetti is taken aback by the Crown Prince's aggressive and demeaning attitude toward her. The prince dismisses Tirasetti as uninteresting, insulting Lexion's choice of partner in front of one. Lexion firmly declares that Tirasetti has been his intended partner from the very beginning.
Princess Sirene watches in disbelief as Lexion refuses to let go of Tirasetti's hand.
Lexion's expression hardens as he warns the prince not to treat Tirasetti with such disrespect. Lexion and the Crown Prince glare at each other, their mutual animosity becoming clear to all. Tirasetti looks up at Lexion in stunned silence, shocked by his intense and protective defense. Princess Siren begs Lord Lexion to stop and release her brother immediately. Lexion releases the prince with a rough, dismissive movement that sends him reeling backward.
Kronos dismisses the event as no big deal and mockingly asks if touching her is fatal.
Lexion looks away with a dark expression as the black-haired woman watches him with concern.
The dark-haired man maintains a stern, silent profile while focused on the tense situation.
The two noble couples stand in an awkward, heavy silence following the physical confrontation. Princess Siren looks at Lexion with a sad expression, her feelings clearly conflicted and painful.
Lexion offers a brief, cold greeting to the princess on her coming-of-age debut.
Bowing slightly, Lexion announces their departure by claiming he is still fatigued from travel.
Bidding the princess a polite farewell, the dark-haired man leads his partner away. Kronos glares at their departing figures and insults the Duke for his nasty behavior. Tirasetti looks back at the grieving princess and wonders about the cause of her distress.
In the moonlit palace garden, the black-haired woman softly calls out to the Duke.
Lexion stops and turns as the woman uses his intimate nickname, Xeon, once again. Lexion insists they have no further business, while Tirasetti questions their sudden departure. Lexion notes that the woman was trembling, causing her to look down with embarrassment. Tiaracetti explains her fear of the imperial family, but Lexion questions if it's her first time.
The two stand together in the quiet garden amidst the palace's ornate stone architecture.
Tiaracetti worries she caused him trouble, but Lexion confesses he always intended to dance with her.
The dark-haired man confirms his feelings by reminding her it was love at first sight.
Tiaracetti is moved by his words, hoping she truly deserves to find happiness this time.
The woman covers her mouth in a moment of overwhelmed emotion and deep reflection. Internal text reveals that Lexion's feelings were aided by the darkness of the night. Narrative boxes recount how the imperial family summoned Lexion following the tragic destruction of Isel. Fear and intrigue grow in the capital as news of Isel's demise spreads among the people. Kronos asks if she truly obeys his summons while lounging arrogantly on the throne. Looking confused and worried, Tiaracetti questions why Kronos has summoned her to the palace. The woman looks around in sudden shock as she begins to realize the trap.
Panic sets in as Tiaracetti discovers the maid is missing and the hall is empty.
Cursing her own foolishness for falling for a trick, she watches as Kronos approaches.
A dark vision of Lexion pierced by weapons highlights the many enemies he faces.
Kronos' face is shown in a chilling close-up as the confrontation enters a new phase.
Tiaracetti flinches as the prince gets closer, her hands gripping her dress in terror. The woman bows formally and offers a salute to the man she calls a lion.
Kronos questions her origins and mentions her alleged status as a distant relative of Lexion.
A thought bubble notes that she was labeled a distant relative even in her previous life.
Tiaracetti claims she previously lived in the south while struggling to hide her visible trembling.
Narration describes the severe imperial control over the sole survivor from the special breed of Isel.
Lexinian is depicted fighting bloody battles against monsters as the imperial family's tool for war.
A flashback reveals that Tiara Rossetti once approached the imperial family alone to confront them. A girl with silver hair appears in a field as the narrative notes her past difficulties. Tia Rossetti resolves to break the cycle of pain and find happiness instead of tragedy. Kronos stands before her and asks what he could have done to make her shake. Looking down with a mocking smile, the prince asks if she finds this situation unusual. A close-up of Tia Rossetti's eyes shows her terror as she realizes the prince's intent. Kronos suddenly muzzles the woman with his hand to prevent her from calling out. The prince sinisterly asks if she would like to practice her right to remain silent. Shouting that she is insolent, Kronos strikes the woman and sends her flying backward. Tia Rossetti collapses onto the floor in a state of complete shock and physical pain. Kronos mocks her bloodline and status, declaring her duchess claims are a never-ending fraud. Kronos shouts that they insulted the imperial family and orders the woman's immediate imprisonment. A close-up of Tia Rossetti's eye reveals her boiling anger and sharp, silent resolve. Someone questions the prince's serious nature as a streak of light crosses the pause. Gregory informs Lexion that everything is a trick as they talk in the hallway. Lexion prepares to act while Gregory insists that the entire situation is a trap. Lexion acknowledges the danger as Gregory asks him for a very important personal favor.
A hand in a white glove reaches for a handle, pleading for a chance.
Gregory begs Lexion to save Tiara for his sake as he leaves the room. Battered and shackled, Tia Rossetti lies in a heap on the cold, dark dungeon floor. She curses Kronos for her current misery while lying defeated in the dark cell. Internal text notes that the original Tiara Rossetti could never have stood this darkness. Determination burns in her eye despite the blood staining her cheek and her injuries.
Tia Rossetti reflects on her feelings for the original woman who lived through this before. Margarita reflects on the situation with a sigh while standing in the palace garden.
Tia Rossetti thinks back to the three maids, including the clumsy one who betrayed her. Reflecting on her complacency, she admits her focus was entirely consumed by her love for Lexion.
A flashback shows her previous life self resting among purple flowers under a starry sky.
Tia Rossetti lies on the floor, reflecting on her original world and her loss of direction. Sudden footsteps echo through the corridor, causing Tia Rossetti to flinch in her desperate state. Startled and fearful, the shackled woman demands to know who is approaching her cell. Her heart beats rapidly as a soft glow begins to fill the oppressive dungeon darkness. Gregory arrives with a lantern and curses Kronos for his cruel and dastardly behavior. He continues to denounce the mean person responsible for her current state of suffering. Finding her in chains, Gregory asks how this horrific situation could have possibly happened. He promises to free her soon and asks if she is able to stand up. Tia Rossetti apologizes, explaining her injuries are too severe for her to get up right now. Gregory brings a stretcher to help her while she frantically asks about Lexion's locations. Brushing his hair back, Gregory reveals that Lexion is currently away from the capital. Confusion and shock wash over Tia Rossetti upon learning of the Duke's absence during this crisis. Gregory looks down with a grim expression, his eyes reflecting the gravity of their predicament. He explains that Kronos used Tia Rossetti as a hostage to threaten and control the Duke. A flashback reveals Lexion's distress as Kronos issued his heartless and cruel demands. Lexion was forced to fight monsters to retrieve a powerful magical object known as Nox.
The blue gemstone, identified as the heart of monsters, is shown in a radiant display. Rossetti is devastated, questioning the situation and cursing her own perceived uselessness as a partner. Gregory covers his face in despair, lamenting the terrible circumstances they find themselves facing. Rossetti offers a tearful apology for being the cause of Lexian's current dangerous ordeal. Reassuring her, Gregory insists that the blame lies entirely with the mean person who conspired.
Looking away, she silently prays for Lexian's safety while he faces monsters in her stead. Clasping her hands together, she begs Lexian not to let himself get hurt for her.
A doctor confirms Rossetti's injuries aren't fatal while she recovers in her bedroom.
Her maid, Margarita, approaches with a worried expression and calls out to her miss.
Margarita begs her not to leave alone again and to rely on her more often. Rossetti realizes the maid expected her to be dead and had already mentally abandoned her. The maid offers to fetch water and turns to leave the room in a hurry.
Rossetti commands the maid to wait, stopping her before she can make a hasty exit.
Sitting up with bandages on her face, Rossetti asks if she has something to tell. She reflects that her past self would have let such a person go unpunished.
Margarita nervously asks what is happening, sweating under the weight of her mistress's gaze.
Rossetti reveals she wasn't alone as the other maid enters, exposing Margarita's lies.
The short-haired maid asks with whom the mistress went out if she wasn't alone. A hand points dramatically into a void filled with a soft, glowing light.
Pointing at the other maid, Rossetti claims she was brought before the prince. Rossetti explains she was tricked by a fake letter supposedly sent by the Duke. Margarita tries to defend herself while the other maid stares at her with deep suspicion. Rossetti commands that the traitor be thrown into the dungeon to uncover the truth. Shouting her name, the accused maid is dragged away while the scene abruptly shifts. The short-haired maid asks if Rossetti still has the letter that caused the trouble. Rossetti apologizes, explaining the letter was taken from her during her time in captivity. Comforting her mistress, the maid holds her hand and says there is no problem. The short-haired maid smiles kindly and expresses her unwavering belief in Rossetti.
Rossetti is touched by the kindness of the maid who stayed by her side.
Reassuring her, the maid gently wipes Rossetti's tears and tells her not to cry.
Rossetti asks about the Duke, and the maid confirms a letter was already sent.
Looking down with a somber expression, Rossetti quietly accepts the news regarding the Duke.
Both women turn toward the door in alarm as a sudden loud noise erects.
A maid screams in terror as people gather near the brightly lit hall entrance. Someone calls out for the Duke as Lexian appears, covered in blood and injuries.
A man rushes to Lexian's side, frantically asking His Excellence if he is all right.
Lexian waves them off and insists he is fine, stubbornly refusing to see a doctor.
Lexian stands battered and bleeding as Rossetti calls his name from the palace stairs. Panting heavily, Rossetti runs down the stairs to reach the injured man she loves.
A close-up reveals Rossetti's wide-eyed horror at the state of Lexian's battered, bloody face.
Reaching out with a gloved hand, she calls his name as she approaches him. The two embrace passionately in the hallway, surrounded by a swirl of glowing white petals.
Relieved he is safe, Rossetti begs him to see a doctor for his wounds. Lexian looks at her with blood-stained cheeks, stating he is fine now she is safe. Holding her close, the Duke expresses his deep happiness at seeing Rossetti safe and sound. Rossetti urgently repeats her plea for him to seek immediate treatment for his severe injuries.
Clinging to him, she begs for his cooperation while his face reflects deep, exhaustion-filled pain. Lexian confesses his paralyzing fear that she had vanished from his life once again.
Confused by his statement, Rossetti asks him to explain what he means by those words. Lexian holds her tighter and begs her never to leave or go anywhere again. Overcome by his injuries and exhaustion, Lexian collapses into Rossetti's arms in the hallway. Rossetti holds the unconscious Duke, her expression filled with shock and growing concern for him. Time passes as the scene shifts to Lexian resting and recovering in a large bed. As he rests, Lexian weakly asks her not to use her healing powers on him. Rossetti apologizes but explains she cannot bear to see him in such physical pain. A close-up shows Lexian's bandaged arm and the scars he earned during the monster hunt.
Lexian sleeps soundly in his bed as Rossetti watches over him with a thoughtful expression.
A beautiful woman with long silver hair looks back with a gentle, slightly pained smile.
The silver-haired woman drops a book as she looks away from the palace architecture.
A hand grabs a book, noting that it has finally appeared with a red cover. Rossetti holds the mysterious book with a surprised expression as she realizes what it is. Noticing the color change, she decides to take the book to her room to investigate. Entering her room, Rossetti checks to see if anyone is present before examining the object.
Opening the book triggers system messages about an epilogue, a reset, and a missing protagonist.
Rossetti's eyes glow bright blue as she questions the meaning of the strange notifications.
A dark, textured panel appears with the word "Guide" written in large, bold letters.
A system window welcomes Rossetti to the component of dragons while the book floats.
Rossetti asks the book why she remains trapped inside the narrative despite finishing her path.
She argues that she completed her ending and shouldn't still be inside the story's world.
The book glitches violently, displaying garbled text as it struggles to respond to her demands.
A system window appears stating that it does not understand the nature of her question.
Tia Rossetti questions if the ending has undergone a change while the book remains silent and floating. The system officially announces that Tiara Rossetti Asal has become the new protagonist of the story.
It commands her to defeat the evil dragon using the name of the previous hero, Lexion.
The dragon has strengthened, and a notification reveals that Tia Rossetti's secret ability is finally being revealed.
A radiant woman with long silver hair appears, channeling powerful blue energy from her open palms.
Tia Rossetti shouts in disbelief, throwing the book across the room as she rejects the sudden change.
She yells that this new development goes against the promise made regarding the story's original conclusion.
Tia Rossetti picks up the book and reflects that a complete reset of the narrative makes no sense.
Opening the volume, she realizes the content of the novel she achieved has completely disappeared.
Tia Rossetti demands the guide appear as she grips the book with frustration over the lost narrative.
The guide explains that Lexion Sparrow was disqualified as a protagonist for deviating from his route.
Tia Rossetti absorbs the shocking news as the system confirms the truth about Lexion's change in status.
She asks the open book if Lexion is a traveler like her who returned to the past.
The system clarifies that Lexion is not a traveler, making a reset of the story impossible.
A close-up of Tia Rossetti's eyes shows her shock upon learning that Lexion didn't actually come back. She reflects on Lexion's past behavior, wondering why he acted that way if he hadn't returned. Lexion sleeps soundly in his bed, unaware of Tia Rossetti's internal turmoil and the book's revelations.
Tia Rossetti internally demands that Lexion provide a full explanation for his mysterious and confusing actions.
She gazes at the sleeping Duke, silently begging him to tell her the truth about his memories.
The guide explains that Lexion's current role is unknown because the settings are continuously changing.
Scolding the book, Tia Rossetti complains that it shouldn't confidently admit it has no information.
A chibi Tia Rossetti shakes the book, frustrated that she can no longer see the story's end.
The system explains her right to see future content decreased when she became the main character.
Tia Rossetti questions the new trailer system that will selectively provide snippets of the upcoming story.
The book flutters its pages rapidly as it prepares to demonstrate the new trailer functionality.
Tia Rossetti reflects that receiving a penalty means the story might unfold in a way she dislikes.
A close-up of Tia Rossetti's wide blue eyes captures her sudden surprise at a new revelation.
She reaches out and shouts for the floating book to wait before it can vanish again.
Tia Rossetti stares at the glowy runic circle appearing in the book, questioning what it means.
A hand offers Tia Rossetti a plate of steak, encouraging her to eat and restore her strength.
Tia Rossetti looks back at Lexion with a subtle blush while they sit at the dining table. Lexion smiles warmly at her, expressing relief that she no longer appears to be upset. He asks Tia Rossetti why she acted the way she did during their recent ordeal.
Tia Rossetti looks down sadly, stating that seeing him in pain is very difficult for her. She asks if it is acceptable for him to suffer while she remains completely safe.
Lexion tells her never to repeat her actions, stating he would rather bear the pain himself.
Liexin gently lifts Tia Rossetti's chin while they stand together amidst a swirl of purple flowers.
Smiling, Lexion reassures her that he is fine and encourages her to finish her meal.
Tia Rossetti thanks the Duke and takes a bite of the steak while they dine together quietly. While drinking tea, Lexion mentions he will be returning late today due to some private business. He explains he has matters to handle before they return north, leaving Tia Rossetti visibly startled. Tia Rossetti slams her hands on the table and begs Lexion to let her join him to there.
She stands at the table blushing while Lexion watches her sudden outburst with a calm expression.
Lexion remarks that it is nice to hear her making such a loud and energetic noise.
Bowing her head in deep embarrassment, Tia Rossetti offers an apology for her sudden and frantic behavior. She grips the tablecloth tightly, showing her determination to remain by Lexion's side during his business.
Lexion looks down with a pained expression as blood trickles from his mouth.
A floating message reveals that Lexion Sparrow's existence is a dangerous and unstable variable. Despite the risks mentioned, the narrator vows to save Lexion until the very end.
Back in the palace, Tia Rossetti stands up abruptly while Lexion watches her with interest.
Tia Rossetti asks to join Lexion today, assuming he is going to meet with Gregory. Lexion pauses for a moment, letting out a thoughtful hum as he considers her request. Lexion smiles warmly at Tia Rossetti and agrees to let her accompany him on his trip.
Tia Rossetti wonders if the business he mentioned involves visiting a specific type of establishment. The scene shifts to a luxurious shop filled with dresses as Tia Rossetti questions their purpose.
Lexion looks at the selection of clothing with a very serious and contemplative expression.
Tia Rossetti reflects on her belief that Lexion intended to meet Gregory to repay a debt.
Lexion holds up a light blue hooded cloak and asks Tia Rossetti for her opinion.
Explains that since they are in the capital, he wanted to buy her clothes. He blushes and expresses his relief that she offered to join him on this errand. Lexion notices Tia Rossetti's stunned silence and worries that she might not like the choice.
A chibi Tia Rossetti denies any dislike and frantically promises she will try the outfit on. Tia Rossetti notes that he chose hooded clothes to protect her from the cold northern winds.
She recalls a past life where Lexion showed the same thoughtful consideration toward Saren.
Tia Rossetti realizes that all of his attention and care are now directed completely at her.
Tia Rossetti looks elegant as she models the light blue winter gown and matching fur-lined cloak.
Lexion gazes at her with a soft blush and tells her that she looks beautiful. Shyly thanking him, Tiroseti blushes while adjusting the intricate lace of her new winter outfit. Lexian instructs the shopkeeper to send all the selected items directly to the castle. A chibi Tiroseti is shocked, wondering if he's buying everything they looked at today.
Tiroseti stands ready to leave the shop as Lexion prepares to head to their next destination.
Offering his hand, Lexion asks Tiroseti if they should move on to their next location. Tiroseti reaches out to touch the beautiful white ribbon and lace on her new dress. She smiles warmly as she takes Lexion's hand, ready to continue their day in the capital.
The scene shifts to a large two-story building under a clear and bright blue sky.
Waiting outside, Tiroseti wonders if Lexion is currently finishing his business at the weapon shop.
Lexion approaches Tiroseti and asks her.
Lexion asks if she is done while Tiroseti confirms she is ready to move on.
Tiroseti notices the sword Lexion is carrying and realizes it is exactly what she expected. She reflects on how this sword perfectly suits Lexion's style, just like in his previous life.
Tiroseti praises the quality of the sword while Lexion begins to respond to her compliment.
Lexion draws a small, ornate silver dagger from its sheath and holds it toward her.
Lexion presents the beautiful dagger as a gift for her, calling Tiroseti by her nickname.
Tiroseti promises to use it well, but Lexion hopes she never faces a danger requiring it. Gregory arrives at the weapon shop and waves while calling out to Lexion with excitement.
Greeting Tiroseti, Gregory asks how she has been feeling since they last saw each other.
Tiroseti dismisses the formalities, telling Gregory there is no need for them unless he wants embarrassment.
Gregory tells Lexion that he has been looking for him to discuss an important matter.
Gregory hugs Lexion and jokes that the time has come for him to repay his brother. Gregory explains he was assigned to host the diplomatic delegation from the Cortez Kingdom. A silhouette appears as Gregory mentions that the Prince of Cortez is eager to meet Lexion.
Gregory asks Lexion if he is available to meet with the prince while in the capital.
Lexion looks pensive, wondering if the royal family expects his immediate return to the north. Gregory tells him not to worry about the royal family's expectations for the time being.
Gregory explains that the Prince of Cortez sent a letter once he heard Lexion was present.
A fancy letter appears as Gregory states the emperor will have no choice but to agree.
Lexion states his plan to make a stop before their journey back to the north.
Tiroseti stands between Gregory and Lexion, reflecting on the grim possibility of Lexion's impending death.
Determination fills Tiroseti's gaze as she vows to stay by Lexion's side at any cost.
Gregory watches the exchange with a look of mild surprise and growing curiosity.
Gregory invites Tiroseti along if she is bored, but Lexion warns it is dangerous. Nevertheless, Tiroseti insists on going.
Gregory laughs at the situation and asks Lexion if he truly wants Tiroseti to come along.
Tiroseti looks up pleadingly, asking for permission to accompany them on the dangerous errand.
Lexion yields to Gregory's preference while the blonde man expresses his gratitude for the Duke's cooperation. Lexion tells Gregory he is placing his trust in him as Tiroseti watches their exchange.
Gregory winks playfully and promises they will see each other at the appointed time and place.
3 days pass since the diplomatic delegation arrived, marking a shift in the story's pacing.
A carriage moves through the bustling city streets as the day of the meeting arrives.
Tiroseti reflects on the limitations of the trailer system, realizing she cannot predict Lexion's death.
Tiroseti questions the finality of her own death within the context of the novel.
In a flashback, the silver-haired traveler reads the book as the system warns that her death would end the story. She reacts with annoyance, prompting the system to note her desire to live. The system promises to protect the traveler until the story's conclusion, leading Tiroseti to begrudgingly acknowledge it has a conscience despite calling it a fraud.
Tiroseti considers her invincibility buff but remains wary as she still deeply dislikes the sensation of pain. Lexion notices Tiroseti's distress and asks if she is intimidated by the large number of people present.
Lexion expresses concern over her tension, but Tiroseti lies, claiming she is simply excited to see the delegation.
Lexion takes Tiroseti's hand in a protective gesture, grounding her amidst her internal panic. Lexion gently asks if holding her hand will help alleviate her fear while they walk together.
Tiroseti is frozen in shock by Lexion's sudden and intimate display of public affection.
Lexion blushes and asks if his gesture is unhelpful as he notices Tiroseti's continued stunned reaction.
In a lighthearted chibi moment, Tiroseti enthusiastically confirms she feels better, and Lexion expresses his relief. Nothing says "I'm okay" like a sudden transformation into a tiny, blushing chibi version of yourself.
The scene shifts to a bright courtyard framed by white flowers and a grand carriage. Doves fly over the majestic towers of the palace as the important meeting begins. A mysterious voice calls out to Lexion, revealing they have been waiting for his arrival.
A beautiful woman with long, mint green hair and a white gown appears, looking elegant and serene.
The persistent voice repeats the claim of waiting, emphasizing a sense of fated expectation. Saren stands amidst a garden of blooming flowers, smiling warmly at the approaching group.
Lexion introduces Tiroseti to the group, grandly welcoming them to the heart of the Aiden Empire.
Saren smiles and expresses her pleasure at seeing Lexion again after their time apart. Lexion asks why she is present, and Saren explains she wanted to assist with the delegation's entertainment.
Saren acts disappointed by Lexion's lack of joy, prompting him to offer a polite, formal apology.
Seirin maintains a perfectly composed smile, though her eyes hint at a deeper, unspoken agenda.
Tia Rossetti notices Seirin's obvious interest in Lexion and worries about his current feelings toward the original heroine. Seirin continues to smile with practiced grace, seemingly oblivious to the tension between the others.
A cold, calculating look flashes in Seirin's eye as she observes the couple's proximity.
A close view captures Lexion firmly holding Tia Rossetti's hand as they face the new arrival. Tia Rossetti panics internally upon realizing Lexion is still holding her hand right in front of Seirin.
Tia Rossetti struggles with the urge to pull away from Lexion's grip before Seirin notices.
Lexion tightens his grip on Tia Rossetti's hand as she tries to pull away from the public contact.
Lexion remains stoic and focused, refusing to let go of Tia Rossetti's hand during the encounter.
Seirin comments on their close relationship and expresses a desire to become friends with Tia Rossetti too.
Seirin poses a question about timing, directing her attention toward the upcoming diplomatic tea.
Tia Rossetti is confused by Seirin's vague query and asks for clarification regarding the schedule. A vision of a regal woman with purple hair appears as Seirin mentions her planned tea time.
Seirin invites Tia Rossetti to join her for tea since Gregory and Lexion will also be attending.
Lexion looks at Tia Rossetti and assures her she can decline the invitation if she feels uncomfortable.
Tia Rossetti looks up at Lexion and declares her firm intention to go wherever he goes.
Lexion gazes into the distance, expressing a lack of excitement regarding the current circumstances.
Tia Rossetti resolves to stay close to Lexion as the scene shifts to lush greenery.
Tia Rossetti maintains a silent, watchful gaze while Lexion remains focused on the path ahead.
Lexion politely addresses the mint-hair princess, inviting her to lead the way forward.
Seirin reassures Lexion that the upcoming event will be an enjoyable experience for him.
The setting shifts to a grand, ornate pavilion overlooking a tranquil garden and fountain.
A group gathers for an elaborate outdoor tea party filled with delicacies and conversation.
The purple-haired woman gracefully sips her tea amidst the serene and floral garden atmosphere.
The woman offers thanks for a compliment while Tia Rossetti sits quietly at the table.
Tia Rossetti feels deeply uncomfortable with the social tension of the diplomatic tea gathering.
Gregory watches Lexion train a young boy while the purple-haired woman observes the scene.
Gregory startles Tia Rossetti by bluntly asking if she harbors romantic feelings for the Duke.
Tia Rossetti admits she simply wishes to watch over Lexion, leaving Gregory visibly surprised. Tia Rossetti dismisses her behavior as habit, but Gregory tells her that excuses are unnecessary.
Gregory questions if the women are bored, and both Seirin and the guest agree.
Gregory laughs, noting his surprise that Seirin would openly admit to finding tea time dull.
Seirin remarks on Gregory's directness, finding his conversational skills more impressive than she anticipated.
Tia Rossetti watches the interaction between the royal siblings as the garden party continues around them.
Seirin kindly asks Tia Rossetti if the food provided is not suited to her specific tastes.
Tia Rossetti praises the food while Gregory teasingly claims she actually finds the meeting boring.
Seirin apologizes for making her uncomfortable, but Tia Rossetti insists everything is fine and delicious.
Gregory catches Tia Rossetti in a lie, pointing out how much she has been eating.
Seirin scolds Gregory for his behavior, while he defends his lack of traditional knightly poise.
Gregory mentions his uncle's potential disappointment, causing a sudden pause in the group's drinking.
A heavy silence falls over the table as someone sets down their teacup abruptly.
A title card presents the name Seirin Aidan Burble against a deep purple backdrop.
Seirin reacts with shock as Gregory suddenly stands up to leave the tea table.
Gregory announces his departure to get some fresh air, leaving the gathering behind him.
Gregory tells Seirin to stay behind while Tia Rossetti watches him walk away in concern.
A grim memory surfaces regarding the execution of Gregory's father for the crime of treason.
Seirin asks Tia Rossetti for a personal favor as they sit alone at the table.
Seirin reveals Gregory's loneliness and asks Tia Rossetti to go and keep him company.
Tia Rossetti decides to follow Gregory since Lexion is busy training the young boy Xion.
Tia Rossetti nods her head, agreeing to Seirin's request to look after the blonde prince.
Seirin watches Tia Rossetti depart with a calm and inscrutable expression on her face.
Gregory lies in the grass, telling the person approaching him to leave him alone.
Gregory is startled to see Tia Rossetti standing over him instead of his mint-haired sister.
Tia Rossetti looks down at the rusting prince as the bright sun illuminates the garden. Tia Rossetti stands silently by Gregory's side as he remains lying on the green grass.
Gregory notices Tia Rossetti's watery eyes and asks if she has been crying recently.
A close-up reveals Gregory's wide-eyed surprise at Tia Rossetti's sudden appearance and emotional state.
Gregory claims his tears were just from a yawn, while Tia Rossetti remains skeptical of him.
Tia Rossetti smiles warmly and tells Gregory that she believes his excuse about the yawn.
Gregory rubs his head in frustration, feeling embarrassed by his own transparency during their encounter. Tia Rossetti acknowledges the sorrow in the prince's eyes while he stubbornly insists he only yawned.
The scene transitions to the grass where a small green clover is finally discovered.
Gregory spots a 4-leaf clover and reaches out his hand to present the lucky find. Tia Rossetti looks on with interest as Gregory prepares to hand over the small green plant. Gregory jokingly retracts the offer, claiming he is too unlucky to give away the clover. Rossetti mocks Gregory's previous emotional display while the prince wonders why she is acting strangely.
Rossetti laughs joyfully, her face glowing with happiness as she stands in the sunlit garden.
Rossetti offers the clover specially to the prince, who watches her with a calm and curious expression. The blonde prince holds the small green four-leaf clover against the backdrop of a bright blue sky.
Rossetti kneels in the grass to resume her search while Gregory stands behind her, watching her intently.
Gregory asks what she is looking for, and Rossetti says she wants another clover for Zion. Gregory questions her affection for him, but Rossetti denies it. Gregory sighs, remarking that Lexion won't annul the current situation.
A vision appears of a couple at the altar, signifying a marriage between Saren and her chosen bridegroom.
Rossetti looks away with a serious expression as she is warned that she will only end up hurt.
Rossetti admits she knows. Gregory asks if she can pretend ignorance, stating he's on his sister's side. Rossetti suggests he return the clover if he intends to give her advice.
Gregory surprises Rossetti by reaching out and gently tucking the green four-leaf clover into her long hair.
Gregory closes his eyes and smiles warmly at Rossetti, sharing a brief moment of peace and sincerity.
Gregory stretches his arms and suggests that they head back together now that their search is over.
Rossetti agrees to return as she stands with the prince, the clover still resting within her dark hair.
A soft pink transition panel with sparkles signals a shift in time or location within the Garden Palace.
The scene shifts to an overhead view of a table filled with various cheeses, fruits, and wine bottles.
Saren and her guest laugh and propose a toast, thoroughly enjoying the abundance of wine at the party.
Rossetti and Gregory look on in utter disbelief at the chaotic drinking habits displayed by the two women.
Saren looks up with a cheerful, blushing face, clearly affected by the large amount of alcohol she consumed.
Siren shouts out to her brother with great enthusiasm as she spots him returning to the tea gathering.
Saren lunges forward and hugs Gregory tightly, her face flushed with drunken joy while he looks slightly overwhelmed.
Gregory questions Saren's drinking habits. Rossetti looks around and asks where Lexion went, while Saren giggles helplessly. Gregory asks Saren why she didn't stop Lexion from leaving as he struggles to support her swaying form.
Rossetti looks worried and surprised upon realizing that Lexion has already left the area without a word.
Gregory explains that Lexion likely went to find Rossetti. He tells Saren she cannot sleep there as she slumps.
Rossetti says she will look for the Duke. She bumps into someone, apologizes, and looks up in surprise.
Rossetti freezes as she gazes into the eyes of the man who has suddenly appeared before her path.
Lexion stands before Rossetti with a gentle, knowing smile, softly acknowledging her presence with a simple greeting.
Gregory asks Lexion if he intends to just watch. Lexion notes Saren is drunk because of Gregory. Gregory disagrees.
Lexion looks at Gregory and dismisses him, telling the prince he is free to go from the area.
Gregory says he has another drunk princess to manage as the purple-haired guest stumbles around in the background.
Lexion asks Rossetti for permission to visit the palace. She agrees, and he thanks her with a smile.
The perspective shifts to the massive, ornate doors of the palace, guarded by two knights with long spears.
A knight is shocked as Saren approaches the doors while being supported by the Duke on her arm.
Lexion informs the guard that the princess is intoxicated and asks him to take over her care immediately. Saren clings tightly to Lexion, begging him not to leave her and to take her with him instead.
Rossetti watches the interaction and decides to enter the palace first, leaving Lexion and Saren at the entrance.
Saren smiles warmly and bids Rossetti farewell, her eyes shining as she watches the other woman walk away.
Rossetti walks down the long palace hallway, reflecting that she is already quite used to this lonely feeling. Saren thinks about her relief that Lexion did not reject her, feeling that her worries were entirely for nothing.
Rossetti narrates that Lexion's gaze toward her is different from family, but then considers that he's always kind.
Rossetti stares at the wall and concludes she must be mistaken about the nature of the Duke's affection.
Saren thanks Lexion for bringing her back to her quarters, her expression serene and satisfied as they stand together. Lexion remains silent and stoic, his gaze cold and unyielding as he listens to the mint-haired princess's gratitude. A close view of Saren's face as the Duke begins to address her with a serious, formal tone.
Lexion tells Saren that he is tired and that she should leave his presence at this very moment.
Lexion continues his firm rejection, asking the princess to refrain from seeking such personal favors from him again.
Lexion looks at Saren and explicitly states he does not want her making any more private requests of him.
Saren asks why his attitude has changed, reminding him that he always listened to her in their childhood.
Lexion replies he only listened because he was young and has no desire to argue with her now.
Rossetti stands alone in a garden filled with white flowers, wearing a dress that mirrors the snowy blooms.
A hand clenches tightly against white fabric, betraying the intense emotional conflict hidden beneath a calm outward appearance.
Lexion bows politely to the princess, announcing his departure as he prepares to leave.
Saren stands alone in the palace hallway, watching the Duke walk away from her.
Saren trembles with rage, questioning if she has been discarded despite not even being a stranger.
A title card appears against a dark streaked background, marking a major shift in the scene.
Soft light and drifting sparkles illuminate the ornate interior of a quiet, luxurious room.
The silver-haired woman lies on the floor while a mysterious leather-bound book floats nearby.
A system window notes Tia Rossetti's depression and offers help while she lets out a heavy sigh.
Tia Rossetti refuses the system's help as she abruptly sits up in her dimly lit bedroom.
Pages of the floating book reveal recent memories involving Gregory and the dark-haired version of Tia Rossetti.
The silver-haired woman is struck with sudden shock as she realizes the book contains her secrets.
Tia Rossetti questions why her private interaction with Gregory has been recorded within the magical text. The system window explains that the interaction was recorded because it featured the male protagonist.
Tia Rossetti reacts with utter disbelief at the claim that Gregory is considered the story's main male protagonist.
Tia Rossetti demands an explanation while the system clarifies that every main character requires a male lead.
An illustration within the book depicts Gregory and the silver-haired woman sharing a romantic moment.
Tia Rossetti insists Lexion is the only lead, but the system claims Gregory will replace the unknown Duke.
A sudden knock at the door causes the silver-haired woman to freeze in alarm. Tia Rossetti quickly hides her book and invites the unexpected visitor to enter her private quarters.
Lexion enters the room, calling her Titi and noting the light was still on in her chamber. Tia Rossetti assumes the Duke returned after escorting Saren and mentions she was about to sleep.
Lexion looks surprised by her early bedtime, causing a moment of awkward silence between the two.
Tia Rossetti peeks out nervously in her chibi form, wondering about the purpose of Lexion's late visit.
Lexion asks if she has any requests before his departure for the north, seeking her company.
Lexion awkwardly scratches his face while suggesting they visit a night market together before he leaves.
Tia Rossetti wonders if he is asking for a date as a surprise mission prompt suddenly appears.
The system mission instructs Tia Rossetti to accept Lexion's date request to visit the night market.
Tia Rossetti notes that this specific invitation represents a significant deviation from the original novel's plot.
Lexion notices the book Tia Rossetti is holding and asks about the nature of its contents.
Tia Rossetti panics internally while placing the book on her vanity among her various perfumes and bottles.
Tia Rossetti lies, claiming she was simply planning to read some prayers before going to bed.
A close-up shows the silver-haired woman's hand resting protectively over the cover of the hidden book. Tia Rossetti feels anxious that her excuse about the Bible might not be convincing enough for Lexion.
Lexion recalls her losing a Bible previously and offers to buy her a replacement if needed.
Tia Rossetti forces a cheerful smile while accepting Lexion's offer to provide her with a new book.
Lexion formally asks if she would like to attend the night market tomorrow evening. Lexion mentions the kingdom's upcoming fireworks display, expressing his hope that she would enjoy the event.
Tia Rossetti smiles warmly as she watches Lexion leave, feeling optimistic about the changing narrative.
Tia Rossetti reflects on the unprecedented event as the system confirms she has successfully accepted the date. A new notification warns Tia Rossetti that the main stage of the story will begin very soon.
The system warns of a demon's arrival during the fireworks, leaving Tia Rossetti in a state of shock. The scene shifts to the crowded streets of a festive night market illuminated by colorful lights.
Lexion and the dark-haired Tia Rossetti walk through the market square amidst a throng of celebrating townspeople.
Lexion places a flower crown on Tia Rossetti's head and tells her that she looks very lovely. Tia Rossetti looks up with a soft, blushing face, clearly moved by the Duke's thoughtful gesture.
Tia Rossetti clutches her dress in nervous anticipation, fearing the demon could appear at any moment.
Lexion calls out to Titi, startling her out of her deep and worried internal thoughts.
Lexion suggests visiting a dessert cafe to rest, though Tia Rossetti notes he usually dislikes sweets.
Lexion smiles and holds Tia Rossetti's hand, admitting he is willing to go because she likes them.
Saren and Gregory sit together at an outdoor table, watching the festive crowds from a distance. Lexion and Tia Rossetti stop in their tracks, reacting with shock upon spotting the royal siblings.
Tia Rossetti wonders if Gregory is there. The blonde prince notices the group and asks if they are also attending.
A title card precedes the blonde prince asking the others if they have also arrived at the market.
Lexion proposes going elsewhere, while Tia Rossetti reacts with confusion at the black-haired Duke's sudden suggestion. Tia Rossetti claims to have witnessed a significant moment, while Lexion reacts with a look of silent contemplation.
Lexion offers a formal greeting. Gregory apologizes to the dark-haired woman for the events of the previous day.
Tia Rossetti accepts the apology and inquires about the outcome of Lexion's activities from the previous night.
Gregory notices Saren's depression and asks for the cause, but Lexion denies knowledge of the princess's feelings.
The blonde prince expresses his suspicion that the black-haired Duke is aware of Saren's current emotional state.
Sirene approaches the two men and asks why they are discussing private matters without including the others.
Gregory invites Lexion to see fireworks, but the black-haired Duke firmly rejects the blonde prince's offer.
A loud ringing sound echoes, causing Tia Rossetti to react with sudden and intense shock at the noise.
Tia Rossetti questions the situation while remembering a bloody image of Lexion from a previous fireworks event.
The dark-haired woman fears that a catastrophe will involve the black-haired Duke in the very near future.
Lexion asks Tia Rossetti what is wrong while a system window warns of a penalty for refusing tasks.
A system notification announces that the appearance of the evil dragon is approaching much sooner than expected. Tiroseti covers her mouth in absolute horror upon realizing the gravity of the impending dragon's arrival.
The festival lights suddenly extinguish, plunging the crowded market and the townspeople into a state of confusion.
Tiroseti wonders if the evil dragon is arriving immediately as she looks around the darkened market square. Terrified screams fill the dark air as chaos erupts throughout the festive market area and the streets. Townspeople flee in terror from the dragon while Tiroseti frantically searches for Lexion in the deep darkness. A hand suddenly grabs Tiroseti's shoulder, causing her to react with a look of startled and fearful surprise.
Gregory urges Tiroseti to evacuate while she recognizes the blonde prince's timely and protective presence nearby.
Tiroseti notes the Duke is missing. Gregory explains Lexion's path and orders her to seek protective shelter. A massive crashing sound echoes as panicking townspeople flee from the terrifying and destructive draconic threat. Tiroseti demands to know where the prince is going as she breaks away from his protective grasp. Tiroseti realizes the protective shield is failing while loud crashing sounds signal the dragon's violent and destructive arrival. A hand tightly grips her wrist, stopping the dark-haired woman from running toward the center of danger.
Gregory shouts in frustration, demanding to know if Tiroseti is ignoring his urgent orders to evacuate immediately.
Tiroseti demands to be released, but Gregory refuses, warning her that she will die if she stays. Gregory profile. He questions her ability to help and warns that she will only end up dying there. Tiroseti argues that Lexion is in danger because the dragon is too powerful even for master-level knights. The dark-haired woman pleads for her release while her hands tremble with intense fear and desperate concern. Gregory stares at Tiroseti with a look of silent contemplation and inner turmoil regarding the dangerous situation. Gregory curses in frustration as he realizes he cannot stop Tiroseti from pursuing her reckless and dangerous goal.
Gregory agrees to go together, admitting he cannot face Lexion if he lets Tiroseti go into danger alone.
Tiroseti notes her physical weakness and urges the blonde prince to seek a doctor if he gets hurt. Gregory reassures her about the palace healers while focusing his attention on the impending and dangerous confrontation ahead. Gregory asks what is wrong. Tiroseti realizes with horror that she left Seiren behind in a building. Tiroseti desperately hopes the mint-haired princess managed to evacuate safely during the chaotic and terrifying dragon attack. The dark-haired woman gasps in terror upon realizing that Seiren is still in the path of danger. Gregory reacts with shocked disbelief upon hearing that his sister, Seiren, might still be in the area.
Seiren runs through the dark palace grounds while a massive explosion occurs behind the fleeing mint-haired princess.
Seiren falls to the ground in terror as a dark and menacing presence looms over the palace courtyard.
A massive, terrifying dragon appears before Seiren, letting out a roar while someone frantically shouts the princess's name. The evil dragon looms over the cowering princess as a loud roar and shouts echo through the darkness. Tiroseti shouts for the prince as he rushes toward the danger to save his younger sister, Seiren.
A hand reaches out suddenly, signaling an unexpected arrival amidst the chaos and destruction of the dragon attack. The dark-haired woman looks up in surprise as she recognizes the person who has suddenly appeared before her. Tiroseti asks where Lexion was. He apologizes for leaving and insists on staying to fight the danger. Tiroseti calls out to Lexion as he draws his sword and charges forward toward the evil dragon. Seiren looks back in terror as the dragon's presence causes immediate chaos at the festival. The dragon roars violently while Gregory protects Seiren, pulling her away from the monster's maw. Gregory urgently questions why Seiren was in the dangerous area and insists they evacuate immediately. Gregory expresses relief at Seiren's safety and orders a knight to prioritize the princess's protection. The blonde prince orders the woman to remain still while she asks about his own safety.
Lexion struggles against the dragon, realizing they must prevent it from using its deadly breath.
The black-haired duke watches with growing concern as the dragon prepares its next major attack. The dragon exhales a massive stream of fire, narrowly missing the fleeing dark-haired woman. A system warning announces the protagonist is in danger while Tiroseti watches in absolute horror.
A massive explosion erupts behind Tiroseti, filling the night sky with fire and debris.
Gregory shields the dark-haired woman from a shower of ash and burning fragments from the blast.
Tiroseti is stunned to hear Gregory mention the passage of 10 years during the chaos.
Gregory asks the dark-haired woman if she is unharmed, and she confirms she is fine.
Tiroseti asks about the prince's condition as a magical book appears in a blue light. Tiroseti angrily confronts the system, reminding it that the protagonist was supposed to be safe.
The system book explains that survival does not prevent the protagonist from sustaining painful injuries. Gregory suggests moving to a safer location while Tiroseti reaches out to stop the Duke.
Lexion moves between Gregory and the woman, firmly ordering the blonde prince to stay away.
Gregory is bewildered by Lexion's sudden hostility and asks what the Duke is trying to imply. Gregory demands an explanation for the Duke's sudden change in behavior while Lexion remains silent. Gregory urges Lexion to speak properly and refocuses on the threat posed by the dragon. A flashback reveals the dragon slipped away after several master-level knights gathered to confront it.
Tira Seti worries that the situation is far from over and doubts the system's previous claims.
Gregory reflects on the end of the battle, wondering if it was fortunate for the group.
Gregory asks where the pair is going as Lexion begins leading Tira Seti away from him.
Lexion turns his back on the prince, and Tira Seti asks him where he is going. Tira Seti calls out to Lexion by name as they walk into the dark, quiet streets.
Lexion stops his walk abruptly, causing Tira Seti to look at him with a startled expression.
Tira Seti is surprised by Lexion's pained expression and asks why he looks so deeply wounded.
Lexion calls her TT while gripping her shoulders, seeking emotional comfort after the intense battle. Tira Seti is horrified as the system confirms the evil dragon has returned to the area.
A final notification confirms the dragon's reappearance and warns that the story stage is active.
The system warns Tira Seti that the male protagonist is in a state of extreme peril.
Tira Seti realizes that if Lexion does not intervene, Gregory will be forced to face danger. Lexion coldly refuses to go, leaving Tira Seti in a state of shocked and silent disbelief.
Lexion explains his refusal to save Gregory and insists that TT remain by his side.
Tira Seti questions his decision while the system warns of Gregory's impending fatal injury.
A sudden loud noise causes both Lexion and the dark-haired woman to react with surprise.
A system notification flashes a dire warning that Gregory's life is currently at high risk. Gregory stares ahead with a look of determination and concern amidst the unfolding catastrophe.
The system announces that Tia Rossetti has activated a hidden power to alter the story's flow.
Tira Seti resolves to save Lexion from death by using her life-draining power to stop the threat.
Lexion tells Tira Seti not to be anxious as he prepares to face the coming danger.
Tira Seti smiles warmly at the Duke, expressing her devotion to him despite the surrounding chaos.
Gregory struggles while bleeding, doubting if his luck will hold out for a second time. Gregory shouts a warning for someone to return to safety as the dragon looms nearby. Tira Seti watches in terror as Gregory is nearly struck by the dragon's massive sharp claw. A bright light emanates from a ring as Tira Seti activates the powerful Asta magic ability. The dragon's massive wing creates a shadow as the sky is filled with a bright magical glow.
Lexion catches the falling silver-haired woman in his arms, shielding her from the dragon's attack.
Lexion catches TD as they fall, while she realizes her magic was effective against the evil dragon. Lexion asks if TT is alright, and she confirms while he begins to question the power she used. A pair of feet in dark boots approach steadily as a voice lets out a sharp, mocking scoff.
The mint-haired prince asks about the situation as Gregory and Princess Siren watch the Duke and woman.
TD starts a formal greeting but is silenced when a hand suddenly grips her shoulder from behind her. The mint-haired prince observes TT with recognition, realizing her true identity as the minority girl named Isol. Lexion tells the prince that hiding a minority status for protection is not a crime within the vast empire.
Siren questions Gregory about threats, TD challenges the Empire's torture, and Siren stops the prince's impudent excuses.
The mint-haired prince argues that Isol's healing power makes her a resource the imperial family must strictly control.
Gregory apologizes but informs the prince that he has already entrusted Isol's safety to Duke Lexion Sparrow.
Gregory smiles at the Duke while the mint-haired prince fumes until Gregory firmly orders him to stop talking.
TD hopes her use of Asta magic went unnoticed while Siren expresses gratitude to the Duke before leaving. Lexion apologizes for his agitation and Gregory warns him about Kronos before they part for the north.
Lexion looks at the prince's shoulder, leading Gregory to ask why he questioned him about it so early.
System windows notify Lexion that the male protagonist has changed to Gregory and a permanent penalty is applied. Lexion looks at a magical book and demands that it reveal every detail about Esau without omission. The dark-haired Duke remains fixated on Esau, determined to learn the full truth about her mysterious background. Lexion repeats his demand for information, ordering the system to explain everything it knows about the woman's life. The system switches to the settings book, but Lexion scolds it for not providing immediate content change updates.
A blue notification explains that the system's information is not currently synchronized and will update at a slow pace.
Lexion asks if contact with Titus Book is insufficient, but the system insists on direct contact between books. Lexion notes he cannot know TT's reward conditions, but the system suggests synchronization based on the traveler's memory. Lexion calls the book useless, causing the system to warn that such comments could offend the other party.
Lexion realizes that possessing Titus Book means a new volume has been added to his available magical resources.
Lexion stares at the book, suspecting that the system intends to send TT back to her world.
The black-haired man stares with a look of cold determination, declaring that he will never let her go.
Lexion asks if the other side will know about synchronization, and the system says only if she asks. Lexion decides he must synchronize the book secretly while the system confirms the guide will not provide answers. TD holds the magical book, thinking about how she used a secret technique and risked danger for Gregory. The silver-haired woman looks at the book in utter disbelief, finding the narrative's current distortion completely absurd. An artistic panel depicts Gregory drawing his sword while protectively embracing the silver-haired woman in a flowery frame. TD rages against the massive narrative distortion, while the system claims novels only show what they want to.
The system window explains that a book must be interesting to sell while mysterious runic pages are shown.
TD calls the system a swindler as she rubs her tired eyes in a moment of deep frustration.
TD wonders if the feelings she holds and the memories from her past life have also been distorted.
The silver-haired woman stops in surprise as she notices a new, unexpected detail regarding Gregory within the book.
TD reads a passage about Gregory's fate after the Dark Dragon incident with a look of profound shock. Gregory winces in pain as a bright light flares around him, signifying a moment of intense physical suffering.
A close-up reveals blood dripping onto a white sleeve, highlighting the severity of an injury in the palace.
The Emperor towers over a kneeling Gregory, asking the injured prince if the physical pain actually hurts him.
Gregory looks down with a pained expression and tells the Emperor that the physical injury does not hurt.
The Emperor claims the punishment is light compared to Gregory's crazy behavior, while the prince listens in silence. The Emperor warns Gregory to avoid his father's mistakes, and the blonde prince submissively promises to remember it. The Emperor orders Gregory confined to his quarters for a month as guards prepare to carry out the command. Gregory thinks the Emperor has grown weak with age and appreciates the forced rest his confinement will provide. TD gazes into the distance with a sad expression, softly murmuring Gregory's name in a state of worry.
TD closes the book, realizing she is now inevitably entangled with the royal family despite her original plans.
A sharp blade slices through a rose stem, causing a single red bloom to fall from the bush. Princess Siren sits in a lush rose garden while a maid stands behind her among the red flowers. A large, spiked speech bubble appears in the air, declaring the entire situation to be absolutely disgusting. Princess Siren gazes sadly at the red roses, her heart heavy with unrequited longing. Labeled the Empire's most beautiful, Siren stands elegantly amidst a backdrop of white flowers. Siren believes a man like Duke Lexion Sparrow is the only one worthy of her. Siren wonders why Lexion does not choose her despite her belief that he felt the same. She reflects on her loss, feeling as though a cherished bird has escaped its golden cage. A lone bird cage sits empty on a checkered floor, surrounded by fallen red rose petals. A gloved hand pauses over a vibrant garden, reaching specifically for a single white rose. Siren compares herself to another woman, noting their similarities as she holds a delicate white rose. Siren feels humiliated by the thought of losing Lexion's affection to a lowly commoner named Isol.
Overwhelmed by bitterness, Siren declares the entire situation irritating while she tightly grips the flower.
A maid suggests that the white rose stands out because its color differs from the rest. Siren agrees that the garden is much prettier when everything shares the same crimson color. Siren dismisses the maid, ordering her to place the vase of red roses in the bedrow. Siren violently crushes the white rose in her hand, expressing her growing malice toward her rival. The shredded remains of the white rose fall to the ground as Siren vents her frustration. Stomping on the petals, Siren curses the woman she considers a lowly dew blocking her path. Siren marches through the garden, fueled by rage against the woman who has taken her place. Siren's eyes flash with fury as she demands to know how a commoner dares block her. The princess walks away in a huff, her elegant dress fluttering as she leaves the garden. Siren stops and looks back with a cold, calculating expression, her mind set on a plan.
Petals lie scattered on the grass as Siren vows to punish anyone who covets her possessions.
The scene shifts as a voice invites a woman to choose whatever items she desires.
Lexion smiles at the dark-haired woman, who reacts with surprise at his sudden, generous offer.
Lexion asks if she is dissatisfied, but she quickly assures him that is not the case. The woman asks Lexion if he would be willing to pick out an item for her. Lexion beams at her request and happily agrees to select something that would suit her perfectly. Lexion orders the shopkeeper to bring out every single item available in the store for them.
A freckled boy with a red scarf eagerly complies, excited by the Duke's massive request.
The young boy presents a wide variety of floral accessories and jewelry to the royal pair. Lexion looks at the collection and casually decides to purchase every single item on display. The shop boy is overwhelmed with joy and disbelief at the Duke's incredible display of wealth.
The boy begins to mention the change from the gold coin, but Lexion quickly interrupts them.
Lexion tells the boy to keep the extra money, insisting there is no need for change. The grateful boy bows deeply, thanking the sir and wishing him many blessings for his kindness.
TD smiles warmly, thinking to herself that just one gift would have made her happy.
TD feels slightly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of accessories while Lexion watches her with pride. TD notices a simple bead bracelet and thinks it would look very good on Lexion. Lexion looks down at the woman with a gentle gaze as she prepares to gift him.
TD asks if she can put the bracelet on him, and Lexion gives his enthusiastic consent.
The dark-haired woman carefully fastens the handmade bracelet onto Lexion's wrist as he thanks her.
Lexion looks at his new bracelet and decides it is now his turn to give TT. Lexion holds up a matching pearl bracelet and offers to put it on TT's wrist himself.
TD watches him with a loving smile, enjoying the intimate and peaceful moment they share together.
Lexion returns her smile, his expression full of affection as he focuses entirely on her.
Lexion compliments the bracelet on her, telling TT that the simple design suits her very well.
TD laughs and says she is perfectly content with just having this small token of affection. The story transitions to an aerial view of the city of Hamun during the quiet night. Two armored guards stand watch at the large town gate as snow or magic dust falls.
A man carrying a heavy load of firewood walks through the dark forest under the moonlight.
The man is startled as a mysterious blue light suddenly illuminates the dark woods around him.
Lexion discusses the royal family's failure to respond to the town of Hamun's request for help.
A close-up of Lexion's eyes reveals his realization that the capital is also under monster threat.
TD expresses her concern after hearing that Scion is departing on a dangerous monster subjugation mission.
A speaker explains the plan to clear a path and tells TT she must stay behind.
TD tells Lexion she is fine, but the Duke remains determined to ensure her personal safety.
Lexitus Tati needs a knight to guard her and calls for his subordinate to enter.
Aiden Maximus introduces himself to Miss T. Rossetti, explaining he has been assigned as her personal guard.
Lexion calls Aiden a capable stand-in while the knight says it's an honor to serve closely.
TD wonders why such a talented person was assigned to her instead of the hunting party.
Lexion reassures TD, telling her not to worry too much about the arrangement he has made. Before leaving, Lexion promises a swift return while TT reflects on the book's lack of warnings.
Lexion orders Aiden to protect TD, and the knight confidently tells His Excellency not to worry.
Aiden jokes that his fellow hunters are envious of his assignment, much to TT's confusion.
TD asks if the knights are talking behind her back, but Aiden quickly denies the accusation.
Aiden describes Lexion saving TT, explaining the Black Knight Order's unwavering loyalty to her.
TD looks surprised as she wonders why the knights would pledge such deep loyalty to her.
Aiden smiles and playfully tells TT not to say unnecessary things while wagging his finger.
Daisy, a cheerful maid with short brown hair, appears looking surprised in a floral background.
Daisy asks if Aiden was being weird, and he denies it despite being caught stopping mid-sentence.
TD watches the two of them together, feeling a sense of nostalgia at their familiar interactions.
Aiden tells TD he's looking forward to working with her, and she politely agrees.
Aiden asks if staying in the room is stifling and suggests exploring Hakun for a change.
Daisy mentions there is a large zoo in Hakun that they could visit together. Daisy describes a horse with several humps on its back with an excited and fascinated expression.
Aiden corrects Daisy about camels while she asks TT if she is curious to see them.
TD agrees to go, thinking to herself how well the knight and the maid get along. TD reflects on a tragic memory where Aiden mourns Daisy's death in a previous life. Daisy suggests traveling by carriage, and TT happily agrees to start their journey. A narrative bubble expresses a quiet wish for things to turn out well for them. At the zoo, Daisy marvels at the camels while Aiden complains about their rotten breath.
A sudden close-up depicts a character feeling nauseous from the overwhelming smells at the zoo.
TD covers her mouth, finding the pungent odor of the animals to be completely overwhelming.
Aiden notices her distress and asks if she is getting hungry, hoping a meal helps.
Daisy suggests it is time for lunch, and TD agrees that leaving the zoo sounds good. Aiden offers to lead them to a pre-checked location, and TT expresses her gratitude. TD suddenly stops and lets out a surprised sound as she spots someone unexpected nearby.
TD recognizes the child as the one who previously sold them accessories in the market.
The young shop boy sits on stone steps, looking dirty, bruised, and incredibly sad.
Lexion organizes his knights, explaining it is more efficient to investigate the forest separately.
Lexion puts a subordinate in charge of the southeast and requests immediate contact for issues.
The commander rallies his troops to move quickly, and the knights confirm their understanding.
Lexion prepares to depart on a separate mission while his companion confirms they are ready.
The bruised boy remains huddled on the steps, his expression one of deep misery.
TD approaches the boy and offers a gentle greeting to get his attention.
TD asks the boy what he is doing and who he is with, noticing his bruises. Daisy catches up and asks if TD knows the child sitting in the corner. TD explains she recognized him as the bracelet seller, surprising the curious maid and knight.
TD notes the boy's apparent financial difficulties as she looks at his tattered clothing.
TD asks for the boy's name, John, and wonders why he isn't selling accessories today.
John tearfully explains his money was stolen by his gambling brother who took his mother's funds.
Aiden warns TT against prying into personal matters, making her feel incredibly awkward and hesitant.
TT thinks a meal should be fine, but an urgent system notification suddenly appears before her.
The notification warns that the boy's mother is in a critical situation and needs immediate protection.
TD learns that if she refuses to help, the child will be beaten by his brother.
TD worries the situation is the unexpected accident from the trailer and fears a heavy penalty. The young boy named John looks up with tear-filled eyes, his face bruised and full of misery.
Aiden warns TD about the Duke's disapproval, but she insists on visiting the family secretly. Aiden and Daisy exchange looks of concern and exhaustion as they follow TT's impulsive lead.
TD promises to be quick, and Aiden reluctantly agrees to let her proceed with the visit. TD calls out to John, inviting him to lead the way to Vitam.
John reacts with a mixture of shock and hope as the kind lady offers her help.
As TT takes John's hand, a system message announces they are entering an unforeseen incident. The scene shifts to a dilapidated, run-down wooden cabin hidden deep within the quiet forest. TD enters the cabin, shocked by the poverty, while John urgently calls out to his mother.
TD offers a soft apology for the intrusion as she steps into the dark, cramped room.
John's mother lies sickly in a makeshift bed, looking pale and exhausted from her long illness.
The mother coughs violently while apologizing for the mess, causing John to cry out in alarm.
TD panics as the mother coughs blood and a system prompt demands she use Zegas immediately.
TD hesitates, wondering if calling a doctor is too slow and if she must use Zegas. A tense countdown begins at 10 as TT stares at the dying woman in complete desperation. TD fears the penalty for saving the woman might endanger Lexion, but the countdown reaches 4. Aiden looks on with shock as TD prepares to use her power while the countdown hits 3. TD activates the Zegas ability, causing a brilliant golden light to erupt and engulf the cabin. The sick woman is bathed in a warm, healing glow as the powerful magic takes effect. The mother groans softly as she begins to regain consciousness, her health seemingly restored by the magic. TD, now with silver hair, asks the woman if she feels better while the mother looks confused. TD feels a wave of relief despite her exhaustion, glad she chose to save the woman. Aiden questions why TT used her ability, but she explains that a doctor would have been late. John and his mother embrace happily, tearfully thanking TT for her miraculous and life-saving help.
Aiden tells TD it is time to return, looking stressed as she agrees to leave the cabin.
Aiden pauses mid-step, turning back toward the mother and son with a very serious expression. Aiden sternly warns the family not to disclose the day's miraculous events to anyone else. The mother and son bow deeply, promising to keep the secret and wishing TT many blessings.
TD waves goodbye to the grateful family as she, Aiden, and Daisy depart the forest together.
TD reflects on her exhaustion from using Asta, hoping that John's life continues to go well.
A knight with a ponytail walks through the dark, eerie forest during a quiet nighttime patrol.
The knight hears a voice call out to him and spots a light in the dark woods. The armored knight suddenly loses his footing and falls down a steep, dark slope into the brush.
The knight hits the ground with a heavy thud, gasping in pain from the sudden, violent fall.
Lying on the dark forest floor, the knight struggles to catch his breath and let out a groan. A sinister, dark aura begins to seep out from the knight's hand as he lies on the ground. The knight's eyes widen in realization as a strange, black smoke starts to surround his vision.
Lexion rushes to the fallen knight's side, but the man insists he just showed an unsightly appearance. Lexion orders his men to reorganize their formation and wait while the fallen knight remains on the ground.
The knight looks up with a dark, troubled expression as the group prepares to move forward again.
Lexion fights fiercely on the battlefield, swinging his sword with incredible speed and power against unseen foes.
Chris reports that the suppression will end quickly because the number of rebels is lower than expected. Lexion warns Chris to stay alert for the night-loving evil dragon and asks about the purification stones. Chris complains about the royal court's lack of responsibility while checking the supply of glowing blue crystals. Chris questions Lexion's unusual caution while apologizing for his own frustration regarding the royal court's actions.
Lexan looks away, asking Chris if he truly believes he only loses in this situation.
A close-up shows Lexion's mouth as he questions if Chris views the situation that way.
Lexion clarifies that he actually gained something far more important during the recent events.
Chris asks for clarification while Lexion tells him not to be resigned about the ball. Chris feels confused by Lexion's pessimism regarding the imperial family and his cryptic, important gain.
Lexion announces his withdrawal for the day, and Chris acknowledges his command to leave.
The scene shifts as the title appears, with Lexion and Chris walking through the hallway. TD stands alone in a beautiful blue dress, surrounded by glowing yellow flowers.
Lexion arrives and softly greets TT, announcing that he has finally returned home.
TD welcomes him back and checks for injuries while Lexion asks if she is eating.
TT smiles warmly and admits she hasn't had dinner yet because she was waiting for him. During dinner, TT recounts the strange zoo animals and the camel's incredibly bad breath.
TD laughs while suggesting that even Lexion would be shocked by the animal's intense smell.
Lexion gazes at her affectionately, expressing his deep regret for being unable to join her trip.
TD suddenly feels guilty for bragging about her fun day while Lexion was busy working hard. TD apologizes for going out alone, but Lexion quickly clarifies that he meant something else.
Lexion reaches out toward her and suggests that she enjoys some sightseeing now that he's guk. Lexion clarifies that his real intention is to go sightseeing together with TD very soon. TD stares in surprise as the realization that he wants to go with her sinks in. TD blushes intensely while processing Lexion's genuine desire to spend more time together. Lexion suggests that they should go together as a team for their next excursion. Lexion smiles softly while leaning on his hand, clearly enjoying the quiet moment with TT. Lexion mentions that the suppression of the rebels is expected to be over quite soon. Lexion explains the status of the purification stones and the plan to reopen the gates. The scene shifts briefly to the dark, quiet forest where monster activity remains relatively low. Lexion feels fortunate that they will be able to set out on their journey again shortly. Lexion blushes as he asks if TD would like to accompany him once the suppression ends. Lexion promises to take TD anywhere she wishes to go if she just says the word.
TD gives a bright, happy smile and agrees to go with him whenever he is ready.
Lexion asks if anything else happened today, and TD claims she came straight back. Lexion questions TT about her comfort level with Aiden as her personal guard.
TT praises Aiden's character while internally questioning if Lexion had a reason for skipping work.
Lexian observes that TD and Aiden seem to have become quite close during their time together. Aiden and Daisy react with visible shock and confusion to the unfolding dinner conversation. A chibi TD looks around in confusion, baffled by the strange and sudden turn of events. Lexian smiles brightly and expresses his relief that TD is doing well with her assigned guard. TD laughs happily, thinking to herself that Aiden is a person of great virtue and kindness.
Morning light fills the garden as the scene shifts to the start of a new day.
TD yawns on the stairs, feeling lingering fatigue as a stranger offers her a morning greeting.
TD looks surprised as she covers her mouth, noticing the unexpected visitor in her room. A purple-haired woman introduces herself as Violet Barbosa, TT's new protector starting today.
TD is shocked that Aiden was reassigned to the suppression force so suddenly.
TD recalls the cabin incident, wondering if Aiden was moved because of his anger yesterday.
TD feels troubled by the sudden change in guard without a proper explanation or notice.
Violet asks if she displeases TT, who quickly denies it but regrets the missed farewell.
Violet explains the sudden decision, and TD resolves to greet Aiden properly at a later time. At the cabin, an angry man screams about the secret savings spent on a priest's treatment.
John's mother huddles with her son while the brother yells, asking if she thinks he's a fool.
The brother's voice bellows from the darkness, demanding that they tell him the truth immediately. The brother's face is contorted with rage as he yells at his terrified family members. The red-eyed man stares intensely, inviting readers to the site for new story updates.
The debt collector's voice booms as he accuses the man of lying about the money.
The messy-haired man reacts with a shocked expression as the collector's accusation hits him.
The debt collector with light brown hair arrives, asking what is going on there.
The debt collector walks into the cabin, demanding the promised payment from the man.
The messy-haired man grovels on the floor, begging for forgiveness because he lacks the money.
The collector steps on the man's head, stating his lack of money is irrelevant.
The debt collector looks puzzled as he observes the unexpected scene inside the wooden cabin.
The collector notices the healthy mother and John, suggesting pawning them as a guarantee. The debt collector smiles maliciously, ordering his guard to take John away as a pawn. The mother screams John's name in terror as the boy is dragged away by guards.
The debt collector decides it is time to depart, sticking a finger in his ear. The debt collector warns the messy-haired man not to return until the debt is paid. The collector says goodbye as the man grovels on the floor in absolute despair.
An aerial view shows the town of Hakun where a banquet is being hosted.
TD, wearing a dark blue dress, looks pensively over the balcony and the bright sun.
TD notices that Aiden is still missing even though the military conquest has already concluded.
TD recalls the report that Aiden was reassigned to a secret mission after the incident.
TD worries that Aiden might be avoiding her as she walks down the grand staircase.
TD spots Aiden in the hallway, looking exhausted and hunched over with dark energy.
Aiden looks up with a scarred face, greeting TT with a tired and strained smile.
TD remarks on Aiden's horrible appearance, assuming his secret mission was incredibly difficult.
Aiden wonders what the prince is planning while resolving to watch his mouth just in case.
Aiden calls out to TD, asking her to wait for a moment before she leaves.
Aiden whispers into TD's ear, revealing that there were never any secret missions assigned.
TD reacts with a look of pure confusion, unable to process the truth she heard. Aiden explains that he was added to the army and worked until he couldn't visit.
TD realizes Aiden isn't angry at her and feels relieved by the truth about him.
GBTT reflects that the mission was clearly not worth keeping Lexion's secret.
GBTT assumes Aiden is angry because her personal guard was changed so suddenly. Aiden explains that her guard was changed starting from that day in the forest. GBTT asks Aiden if he was the one behind the sudden change in guards.
GBTT stares at Aiden with wide eyes while he looks away in slight discomfort.
Aiden laughs at the misunderstanding, wondering if the prince changed the guard out of spite.
TD asks if Aiden will no longer be her protector while Lexion arrives with another. Lexion walks forward with the ruler of Hakun, appearing serious as they enter the hall.
Aiden bows and gives his greetings to the emperor as the group walks by him.
The ruler of Hakun smiles, recognizing TD as the survivor from the rumors about ISIL.
TD stands in shock, wondering how the older man could possibly know her true identity.
A close-up shows a letter from the imperial family confirming the discovery of TT's identity.
Lexion warns the ruler that she is currently hiding her identity and must be careful.
The ruler of Hakun apologizes for his rudeness, claiming he is excited to meet someone.
Lexion states that nothing has changed while the ruler agrees to meet again tomorrow. The ruler invites them to attend the banquet before taking his leave from the hall.
TD looks up at Lexion in surprise, questioning the request he mentioned during the meeting.
Lexion explains that he refused the request to stay in Hakun any longer than necessary.
TD looks surprised and begins to stutter as Lexion touches her hand during their talk.
A loud shout of shock erupts in the hallway as the scene suddenly becomes tense.
Aiden points excitedly at the black beaded bracelet on TT's wrist with a loud shout. Aiden wonders where he has seen the bracelet before while TT watches him nervously.
Aiden cautions His Highness that overprotectiveness might make his partner feel untrusted.
Lexion reacts with a look of sudden, startled realization at his guard's words. Aiden clarifies his role as a substitute while TD watches their exchange in confusion.
Aiden gives a cheerful salute, maintaining his lighthearted demeanor during the conversation.
Chibi looks completely baffled, unable to follow the logic of their current discussion.
Lexian gazes intently, his mind filled with thoughts of Titi as he processes the advice.
Lexian stands beside Titi and reaffirms his deep sense of trust in her presence. Titi reacts with a look of surprise and mild disbelief to his sudden declaration. Titi appears in her elegant dark blue banquet dress, looking every bit the noble lady.
High-status guests mingle at the banquet, hiding behind fans as they observe the room.
The ballroom is filled with attendees from various backgrounds under the glow of chandeliers.
Titi dines while noting the unusual inclusion of commoners despite the segregated seating arrangement.
Titi enjoys her meal, thinking to herself about how delicious the served food tastes.
Aiden informs Titi of Lexian's imminent arrival while she wishes him a pleasant day.
Aiden smiles humbly, stating that he was simply performing his duties as her assigned protector. The grand hall stands silent as a conversation about avoiding overexertion echoes through the space. Aiden asks Titi if she has physically recovered following the recent and dangerous incident.
Titi confirms her well-being while Aiden warns her against the reckless use of her power.
Titi appreciates the concern but remains preoccupied with the persistent and annoying floating book.
Titi glares at the magical book following her, wondering why it continues to linger nearby. A vision of loneliness strikes Titi as she feels disconnected from the surrounding festive crowd.
Titi clenches her fist, determined to push past her gloom and focus on the present.
Titi swats at the invisible nuisance while Aiden mistakenly assumes she is spotting a bug.
A man's jawline tenses as he prepares to address Titi in the middle of dinner. Titi looks up in sudden shock, addressing the approaching stranger with a title of greatness. The brown-haired man introduces himself as the lord of the territory while greeting Titi. Aiden bows respectfully to the local ruler while Titi remains seated during the formal greeting.
Titi stands up to properly acknowledge the Lord, her expression full of polite grace.
The Lord questions Titi's identity as Esau and asks if she has made a decision.
The Lord mentions a royal decree and rumors regarding Titi curing a disabled woman recently.
Titi worries that the boy from the cabin might have accidentally revealed her secret identity.
The Lord expresses hope that the banquet food is acceptable for such a distinguished guest. The Lord leans in with a mocking suggestion that the chef's skills may be insufficient.
The man's inner thoughts reveal a deep disdain for commoners who receive titles through nobility. Titi nervously laughs while trying to correct the misunderstanding and praising the culinary preparations.
The Lord's mouth curls into a sharp smirk as he listens to Titi's polite excuses.
The territory lord takes his leave, wishing everyone an enjoyable evening while Lexian watches closely.
Aiden advises Titi not to tolerate such rudeness, but she claims to be accustomed to it. Aiden insists that Titi should never view such poor treatment as natural or acceptable behavior.
Titi smiles sadly while acknowledging her perceived low status within the complicated imperial hierarchy.
A sudden, sharp realization of disbelief echoes through a moment of intense narrative tension. A majestic image of Esau appears, radiating divine energy with her long, pale hair.
Aiden pledges his absolute loyalty, promising to intervene whenever any troublemaker dares to approach her.
Titi looks at her guard with soft eyes as he vows to be her sword.
Titi beams with a genuine and happy smile, feeling comforted by her companion's steadfast support.
Lexian asserts that he will personally handle any issues that may arise on Titi's behalf.
A loud, angry shout demanding food startles Titi, interrupting the quiet moment in the hall.
Titi spots John running through the banquet hall and wonders if it is truly him.
Lexian sternly commands Titi to feign ignorance of the boy to avoid giving the Lord excuses. Lexian remains cold and pragmatic while Titi reacts with shock to his order to ignore John's.
An announcement rings out, inviting the gathered lords and Duke Sparrow to enter the banquet hall.
The gathering commemorates the complete subjugation of monsters, a celebratory milestone for the people of Hakuni.
Lord Hakun smiles as he offers to introduce an important guest before the banquet officially begins.
Lord Hakun presents Duke Lexion Sparrow as the primary contributor to the successful military expedition.
Lexian accepts the praise while Lord Hakun and Titi join the room in clapping for him.
Lord Hakun's expression shifts into a sharp smirk as he prepares to introduce one more person.
Titi stands amidst the guests, her presence highlighted as the crowd begins to shift their attention.
Titi questions the local lord's true motives as a sense of unease washes over her.
A system notification warns Titi that Lord Hakun is corrupted by the spirit of an evil dragon. Lord Hakun speaks of the legendary Esau race and their rumored connection to the Earth's power.
The territory lord shocks the room by revealing Titi's hidden identity as a member of the Esau.
Lord Hakun declares himself the Lord of Shadows while maintaining a sinister and mockery-filled expression.
Lexian shouts Titi's name in a panic, visibly distressed by the sudden and dangerous public revelation.
Guests murmur in confusion, recalling rumors that the Esau race had long since become extinct.
Titi realizes the situation has unfolded exactly as feared, her eyes wide with mounting dread.
Nearby women whisper in awe and disbelief, marveling at the existence of real magic and an Esau. A frantic woman bursts into the hall, desperately clutching a bundle and pleading for someone's help.
Desperate commoners surround Titi, begging for her to use her miracles to heal their dying family members.
Aiden draws his sword to protect TD, warning the mob to stay back or face his blade. System warnings confirm the crowd's resentment and the imminent threat of violence from the desperate adults. TD struggles to find a solution as the chaos and demands for her power intensify around her. Lexian firmly grabs TD's wrist, urging her to abandon the dangerous situation and leave the hall immediately. Lexian reassures a worried TD, promising to protect her as they attempt to make their exit. Lexian orders Aiden to sheath his sword and prepare to depart, dismissing Lord Hakun's measures as futile. The spirit of resentment begins to infect the ordinary people, turning their desperation into a dark influence. Lexian issues a final, cold warning to the crowd, commanding everyone to step back to avoid injury. Guests recoil in terror, their hands covering their faces as they flee from Lexian's overwhelming presence. Aiden suggests that they must identify and neutralize the core source of the spreading resentment. TD points her gloved hand toward the upper balcony, signaling that she has located the true culprit. TD identifies Lord Hakun as the source of corruption and asks Aiden if purification is possible. Lexian insists on prioritizing TD's safety, deciding to escape rather than risk approaching the corrupted lord. The group begins to fight their way out, with Lexian ordering Aiden to subdue anyone blocking them. A system alert warns that fleeing will allow Lord Hakun to be fully consumed by the dragon. TD suddenly halts her escape, struck by the gravity of the system's warning about the lord's fate.
A final, ominous warning echoes the threat of a looming massacre if they do not act now.
TD envisions Lord Hakun as a puppet spreading resentment throughout the entire territory if they simply leave.
TD calls out to Lexian to stop, catching him off guard as she reevaluates their plan to flee.
TD argues that they must purify the Lord immediately, but Lexian remains focused solely on her safety. TD explains that delaying the purification will make it impossible once the dragon spirit takes full hold. The corruption visibly taints the atmosphere as TT warns that the entire area will soon be unredeemable. A tense silence falls between Lexian and TD as they weigh the risks of her dangerous proposal. Lexian finally relents and asks Aiden for the purification stone, signaling his decision to stay and fight. Aiden quickly searches his gear and hands the glowing purification stone over to His Highness. Lexian prepares to use the stone, again attempting to send TD to safety while he handles the Lord. Lord Hakun and his guards block the group's path, mocking their belief that they could simply leave. Lord Hakun descends the stairs, telling Lexian to focus on his own survival instead of TT's. The Lord snaps his fingers while questioning Isol's mercy as a young boy suddenly collapses nearby.
The boy hits the floor hard as dark, shadowy energy trails from his body in a sinister display.
Lord Hakun recounts the boy's miraculous recovery from illness, using it as proof of TD's divine nature. Lord Hakun stares at TD, challenging her to deny that she was the one who performed the miracle.
The boy explains he is meeting that person for the first time and mentions a priest.
The messy-haired man reacts in shock while another man claims he received information from Esau. The messy-haired man begs TD to tell them he is telling the truth regarding her identity.
TD looks down with a pained expression and apologizes, stating she has never seen the child.
TT continues her denial as Lord Hakun watches her with a sinister and mocking smirk. Lord Hakun accuses the man of lying to avoid debt while the man desperately maintains his innocence. The bruised and dirt-covered man falls to his knees, pleading for mercy from the territory lord.
A sword swings down with a sharp flash of light as a scream fills the air.
A blue system window appears, notifying TT that it is time to make a critical choice.
The sword's descent continues in a blur as a moment of extreme tension freezes the entire scene. TD looks on in horrified shock while Lexian watches the unfolding violence with a grim expression.
TD realizes that time has completely stopped for everyone else in the banquet hall.
A new event notification appears in the magical book, casting TD as the protagonist against a dragon. A vision of a divine figure appears, warning TT that her upcoming decision cannot be reversed. The book presents 3 choices: fleeing immediately, purifying later, or pretending to comply to purify now. A system notification warns TD that she only has 1 minute to choose her next move. TD clutches her chest while a mysterious voice tells her to choose however she likes. TD stands alone in a vast darkness, contemplating her options while the choice window glows before her.
TD reflects on option 1, concluding that using force would only worsen the situation for everyone.
TD reaches her hand out toward the floating system window to finalize her decision. TD stares at the magical book, firmly deciding that the third option is the only way forward.
The system confirms option 3 is chosen and instructs TD to use the purification stone.
The crystalline blue purification stone glows with an intense and holy divine light.
A vision of Esau explains that without a stone, the host can be purified using Asta.
Time resumes as the sword swings toward the man, capturing the final moment before impact. A violent strike occurs with a splash of blood as a scream echoes through the hall. Lexian covers TD's eyes with his hand, telling her not to look at the gruesome sight.
TD admits she is not well, and Lexian urges her to leave the dangerous area immediately.
TD refuses to flee and instead demands that Lexian hand her the purification stone. TD looks at Lexian with wide, pleading eyes, asking him to trust her without any explanation.
Lord Hakun sighs with boredom, viewing the situation as pointless and ordering the body removed.
TD addresses the Lord directly and publicly admits that she was the one who healed the woman.
Lord Hakun smirks with satisfaction, stating that he already knew the truth about her powers.
TD looks at the Lord with suspicion, questioning his true motives for wanting her to stay.
Lord Hakun claims his reason for keeping her is to stabilize the territory and the people.
TD gestures toward the Lord, suggesting he should show more sincerity when making such a request.
TD demands a sincere gesture while she secretly grips the glowing purification stone behind her back.
Lord Hakun offers a mocking apology while TT realizes this is her only chance to strike.
TD focuses all her resolve, knowing she cannot afford to make a single mistake in this moment.
Lord Hakun takes TT's hand to kiss it, unaware of the trap she has carefully prepared.
TD slams the purification stone against the Lord, unleashing a massive burst of divine blue energy.
Lord Hakun staggers back in agonizing pain, clutching his head as the purification magic takes hold.
The Lord collapses to the ground while his guards shout out in sudden fear and confusion.
Lord Hakun stares at his hands in a daze, questioning the strange and overwhelming feeling.
Lexian asks TD if she remembers being deeply immersed in thought just a few moments ago.
Lord Hakun looks around in confusion, wondering if he had actually been speaking out loud.
The Lord expresses remorse for his actions and orders everyone to use the purification stone.
TD feels relieved that her choice worked, though she wonders why the magical book still remains. John approaches TD with a somber expression and offers a sincere apology for his actions.
TD looks at the boy with a gentle gaze and reassures him that none of it was his fault. TD recoils in shock as she witnesses a man's hand bleeding from a sharp cut.
Someone calls out to Lexian as he stands firm, his expression clouded with grim determination.
Lexian looks closely at the injury and calmly tells TD not to worry about it.
Lexian insists the wound is nothing as he roughly tugs at his collar in discomfort. Lexian suddenly loses his balance and falls to the ground while TD watches in alarm. Lexian screams in agony as shadows swirl around him while Aiden asks if he is all right.
System alerts warn that the malice is intensifying and a reunion must be attempted immediately.
TD wonders if the original consciousness has successfully taken over the host's body and mind.
TD admits it was her mistake to think the situation would be resolved so easily.
TD desperately asks if more purification stones remain, but Aiden confirms the last was used. Lexian demands his sword, but TD warns that he is quickly losing his own consciousness.
TD fears that killing him would spread the malice further and allow it to possess another.
TD realizes that a drastic and singular path remains to end the spreading corruption.
TD decides to use Asta to absorb the malice since it can take away life force.
Lexian refuses the risk, but TD argues her health has improved since facing the dragon. A heavy silence falls as Lexion stares at TT, contemplating her dangerous and selfless proposal. Lexion relents with a heavy sigh and asks TT to make one specific promise.
Lexion demands she stop immediately if she feels unwell, valuing her life above all else. TD is visibly moved by Lexion's deep concern and his declaration of her life's worth.
Surrounded by white flowers, TT gives her solemn word to honor Lexion's protective request.
TD smiles warmly and clutches her chest, feeling reassured by the trust they share. TD prepares to channel her power, her hands glowing as she focuses on the Asta technique.
TD's appearance transforms with glowing energy as she prepares to confront the corrupted presence.
A blinding light erupts from TD's outstretched hand as she begins the difficult purification.
TD shouts Asta as she unleashes a powerful wave of divine energy to consume the malice.
A surge of magical force ripples through the air as the purification spell takes effect.
TD channels the intense power with a look of fierce determination and focused resolve.
The divine energy reaches its peak, illuminating TT's figure against the dark backdrop.
Lexion is pushed back by the sheer force of the magic as TT finishes her strike.
The energy dissipates into the twilight sky, marking the end of the violent spiritual struggle. TD sighs in relief that the ordeal is finished while Lexion rushes to her side.
TD reflects on how terrible the sensation remains despite having experienced the power before.
TD stumbles, describing the horrifying feeling of malice crawling like insects within her body. Lexion catches TD as she collapses, his voice filled with worry as he checks her.
TD leans into Lexion's embrace and thanks him for placing his trust in her. Lexion gently touches TT's face, his expression softening as he gazes into her eyes. Lexion admits he feels helpless and lost whenever TT acts with such dangerous recklessness.
TD reassures him she is truly okay and only needs a short break to recover.
Lexion lifts TD into his arms, insisting she rest while he takes charge of the scene.
Lexion commands Aiden to handle the remaining tasks as he prepares to take TT away.
TD watches with relief as the magical book that guided her finally disappears from view. TD closes her eyes and offers a quiet prayer of thanks for their narrow survival. TD suddenly finds herself floating in a dark, starry void wearing a simple white dress.
TD looks toward a distant light, realizing she has entered a profound and mysterious dream.
A massive black dragon materializes in the darkness, its presence both majestic and terrifying. The dragon's glowing orange eye stares intently at Titi as she stands small before it.
Titi realizes their destiny is to kill one another while the ancient beast looms large.
Titi wonders why the dragon simply stares at her instead of making a move. Titi clenches her fist in frustration, questioning why she is unable to draw her magic.
Titi wakes up or remains in a vision, tears streaming down her pale face.
Titi looks startled as her maid asks if she has suffered through another nightmare.
The maid offers a tissue while suggesting that Titus' recurring bad dreams stem from discomfort.
Titi gazes out the carriage window in silence, clutching the tissue as they travel onward.
After leaving Hakun territory with the Lord's assistance, the group boards a ship heading north.
Aiden stays behind to finish the purification while intentionally avoiding any questions regarding John's fate.
Titi feels deep guilt knowing John was fainted and precarious despite the attempts to save him.
During the journey, Titi reflects on the signs she missed and the persistent dreams of the dragon. Titi lies awake in bed, realizing her sympathy for the dragon grows with every passing dream.
A single tear falls as Titi experiences the dragon's overwhelming feelings of anger and betrayal.
Looking through the carriage window, Titi feels as though she is truly becoming the dragon herself. The carriage wheel continues to turn steadily as the group nears their final destination.
The maid excitedly opens the curtain to announce that they have finally arrived at the castle.
Fearing the cold air, the maid urges Titi to wear a protective garment for her health. Lexian opens the carriage door and checks on Titi to ensure she is not feeling cold.
Dressed in warm winter attire, Titi looks up and reassures Lexian that she is doing fine.
Lexian offers his hand to assist her, and Titi gratefully accepts the help to step down.
Titi steps out and looks around the new surroundings with an expression of wide-eyed wonder.
The grand and sun-drenched Sparrow Castle stands magnificently before them at the end of their journey. A butler named Oscar welcomes the Marquis and Lady Tiarazetti to the estate with a bow.
Oscar introduces himself with a warm smile, eager to serve the newcomers at the Grand Castle.
Titi greets the butler politely while he encourages her to make herself feel completely at home.
Oscar suggests they are now like family, surprising Titi with his sudden lack of formal distance.
Lexion glares at Oscar for being too forward, prompting the butler to quickly retract his statement.
Oscar apologizes for his enthusiasm and offers to guide Lady Tiarazetti to her new living quarters.
Lexian bids Titi a temporary farewell, promising to see her again after she is settled in.
As Titi walks away, the mysterious magical book floats silently through the hallway behind her.
The golden-bound book remains suspended in the air, a silent observer within the castle's grand halls. A brief moment of whimsical silence follows as the scene shifts to the castle's exterior.
The castle gardens feature a beautiful stone fountain surrounded by vibrant flowers and fluttering butterflies.
A large, fluffy white dog runs joyfully through the grass, enjoying the bright and clear day.
Titi greets the dog happily, calling him Max and expressing her delight at seeing him again.
Titi embraces Max in the garden while the maid comments on the dog's cool-sounding name.
The maid is impressed by Titi's rapport with Max, noting the dog usually hates all strangers.
Titi smiles softly and explains that her ease with Max comes from having raised dogs before.
Two maids rush toward Titi, carrying blankets and tea to ensure she remains perfectly comfortable.
The maids insist on providing tea and warmth, despite Titus's polite attempts to tell them it's unnecessary.
Titi reflects on how everyone is determined to protect her beauty and health at any cost.
Titi finds the constant and intense attention from the castle staff to be quite burdensome and exhausting.
The bright sky remains clear as Titi tries to find a quiet moment for herself. Titi hides behind a large tree, hoping that no one will find her in this secluded spot.
Despite staying at Sparrow Castle for several days, Titi finds it impossible to adjust to the atmosphere.
Titi recalls how the servant's previous hatred toward her has transformed into something she cannot escape.
Lexion suffered many times because of Titi, causing the servant's natural resentment to once boil over.
Titi feels that the current overbearing kindness is like sitting on an uncomfortable bed of thorns. Nearby maids whisper about Titi's striking silver hair and Lexion's deep devotion to her arrival. The servants wonder if Titi is special since Lexion traveled so far to bring her back.
The maids discuss how the atmosphere of the entire castle has felt strange since that specific day. A maid notes that Lexion's face has never looked brighter, while Titi listens to them from afar.
Titi ponders what could have happened before her arrival to cause such a change in Lexion. Titus's expression becomes serious as she realizes even the maids have noticed Lexion's altered behavior.
Titi decides she must investigate the circumstances of the Marquise's strange behavior in detail.
Titi stands under the bright sun, her expression filled with a quiet, lingering determination.
As tea is poured into an elegant cup, a voice questions the timing of his departure.
The maid admits she doesn't know, so Titi asks her to recall anything unusual from that day.
Titi wonders about the maids' identities, but the young maid cannot provide any specific names. The maid recalls the strange events likely occurred the day before he left for the capital.
A small purple-haired witch-like figure cries while hugging a tiny brown creature in the darkness.
Lexion rode to inspect security, stayed overnight due to rain, and returned with an anxious look.
Exhausted and sweating, Lexion suddenly gathered his people to leave for the capital in a hurry.
TD is shocked by the sudden departure and the maid suggests speaking with the messenger, Vector.
The maid offers to call Vector, believing he holds more detailed information about that specific day.
Oscar knocks on the door and asks for permission to enter the lady's private room.
Oscar enters with a polite smile, informing TT that the Marquis is currently looking for her.
TD asks for the reason, and Oscar explains he was sent to guide her to the study.
The maid promises to find Vector shortly while TT thanks her before heading out with Oscar.
Oscar knocks on the study door, announcing Tirazetti's arrival, and Lexion invites her inside immediately.
Lexion, now wearing glasses and casual clothes, looks up from his papers and greets TT warmly. Surrounded by a gentle and flowery aura, Lexion welcomes TT into his private workspace. TD is surprised to see Lexion dressed casually, as he always insisted on wearing formal suits. TD reflects on how unusual it is to see Lexion wearing such relaxed and comfortable attire.
Oscar bows and promises to prepare requested items, encouraging them to feel completely at home.
Lexion moves to the sofa, looking unexpectedly relaxed as he settles into the plush green cushions.
TD approaches Lexion while he sits on the couch, responding to his presence with soft words.
TD notices Lexion is staring intently at her, causing her to feel a bit self-conscious.
As they sit together, TD remarks on his busy schedule while Lexion continues his steady gaze.
Lexion leans closer and asks if she is tired, but a blushing TT quickly denies it. Lexion rests his hand on the sofa and expresses his satisfaction with her well-being. Lexion confesses he requested her presence because he has been struggling through a very difficult time. Lexion admits he gained strength just by seeing her, making TT blush and agree with him. TD smiles brightly and offers to be there whenever he needs her, but Lexion's eyes suddenly water. TD is startled to see a tear on Lexion's face and calls out his name in concern. Lexion hides his eyes and blames dust for the tears while TT asks if he's truly okay. TD gently takes Lexion's hand, softly calling out to him as she tries to offer comfort. TD looks up with wide, surprised eyes as Lexion speaks to her in a low voice. Lexion gazes at their joined hands and asks a tentative question about a physical gesture. Lexion looks at TT with a vulnerable expression and asks if he can hug her just once.
Titus' face turns bright red as she processes Lexion's sudden and intimate request for a hug.
Overwhelmed by the question, TT panics internally, wondering how she should respond to his request. In a playful chibi moment, Lexion questions his own boldness while TT is frozen in shock. TT reacts with exaggerated surprise, asking if he's serious as they both appear in chibi form. Lexion pulls TT into a sudden hug, declaring he will not reject her offer to help.
TD blushes furiously as her heart begins to pound loudly against the closeness of Lexion's chest.
While Lexion smiles contentedly during the embrace, TT thinks about how childish he is being.
TD eventually relents and hugs him back, her hands grasping his shirt as glowing light surrounds them.
TT feels an overwhelming sensation building within her as she rests in the warm embrace.
TT's heart races so fast she fears it might explode from the intensity of the moment. Close up on TT's wide, dazed eyes as Lexion holds her tightly in the quiet study. Lexion notes her fast heartbeat and asks if she's nervous, but TT clumsily claims it's always fast. TT feels incredibly embarrassed by her awkward excuse, burying her face while lamenting her strange answer. Lexion looks down at TT with an incredibly tender smile as they remain close together. Lexion leans in close and asks TT if he is making her feel nervous.
Lexion's hand moves slightly as he prepares to make a sincere confession to TT.
Lexion admits that he is actually the one feeling nervous because of her presence. TT feels Xion's heart racing and remembers his earlier confession about falling in love. Lexion admits he's struggling to hold back his feelings while looking deeply into her eyes. Lexion gazes at TT with a gentle, vulnerable expression, awaiting her reaction to his words. Flustered, TT pulls back and asks if he is always this blunt and straightforward. Lexion looks at her steadily and asks if she thinks he'd act this way with anyone. Explains that while she might not know it yet, this is his true self. Lexion confesses that he simply wants her by his side, looking away with a soft smile. Lexion continues his confession, emphasizing how much he treasures just looking at her. TD is internally stunned, realizing this Lexion is completely different from the one she knew. Overwhelmed by his honesty, TD struggles to find the right words to respond to him. TD looks at the book and feels trapped by destiny, believing she cannot choose him. TD tries to dismiss his intensity as a joke, but Lexion immediately questions her dismissiveness. TD turns away and insists that regardless of his intent, they shouldn't be like this. TD argues that she is just a burden and doesn't even belong in this empire. TD pushes him away, suggesting that he is better off finding someone else to love. Lexion looks devastated and declares that he could never be happy with anyone but her. Lexion begs her to be honest about her feelings instead of pushing him away. TD breaks down in tears, crying out that he keeps making her change her mind.
TD worries that the book will punish him and demote his role for this confession.
TD recalls her past loneliness and fears that Lexion will end up alone like her. Lexion looks at her with a pained expression and tells her she's being unfair. TD continues to cry, unable to hide the depth of her emotional turmoil and conflict. Lexion quickly apologizes for pushing her, blaming his own impatience and foolishness for her distress. TD screams that she's afraid of being hurt and disappointed again if she has expectations.
Lexion watches her with concern as she vents her long-suppressed fears and doubts.
Clinging to her dress, TT speaks of the immense loneliness she has felt in this world.
TD suddenly pulls him into a hug, sobbing that she wants to go back home.
Lexion embraces her gently, apologizing for her loneliness and encouraging her to stop being strong. A single, crystal-clear tear falls from TT's eye as she finally lets out her grief. TD cries loudly against Lexion's chest, releasing all the pain she's been carrying inside.
The scene shifts to the quiet night with a bright moon hanging over the castle.
TD sleeps soundly in her bed while Lexion sits by her side, reaching out. Lexion watches over TD as she rests, his expression full of silent devotion and care. Lexion whispers a promise to grant her everything she wants, except for her departure.
Lexion's gaze hardens as he makes a silent vow regarding TT's future and their bond.
Lexion walks toward a piece of furniture in the dim light of the night.
Lexion opens a drawer and looks down at the mysterious magical book hidden inside.
The book's interface appears, addressing Lexion as the transmigrator and asking for his request. Holding the book firmly, Lexion commands it to synchronize and obey his will.
The title of the manhwa is displayed amidst glowing blue sparks against a black background.
Vector stands in the castle hallway, greeting Tia Rossetti with a polite and formal bow.
Vector introduces himself and explains that he came because she requested to see him.
Tia Rossetti smiles and asks Vector to speak with her comfortably and without formality.
Vector recalls the day the Duke left, mentioning how difficult it was due to snow.
Tia Rossetti asks Vector to confirm if the Duke's mood was indeed very unusual.
Vector appears caught off guard by her specific question and pauses to think.
Vector looks thoughtful as he prepares to share more details about that strange day.
Vector looks confused while asking if TD intends to marry into the Sparrow family. TD doubts her worthiness while Vector reveals the Duke's true motivation for going to the capital.
TD's eyes widen as she considers how frequently Lexion's marriage has become a topic of discussion. A vision of Siren appears as TD reflects on Lexion's rapid rise to power and influence.
Lexion's reputation as the North's guardian is highlighted as he rides through a celebratory crowd.
Political shifts suggest the elders offered Lexion a high position to counter the imperial family's influence.
Siren sits regally as the preferred candidate to avoid repeating the tragedies of a past treason.
TD grips her dress, convinced that she must return home and leave the position to another. Vector studies TT's expression and questions the source of her absolute certainty regarding the Duke's marriage.
TD explains her conviction by stating that she has already witnessed these events unfold before her.
Bright light fills the scene as TD recalls the knowledge she gained from the mysterious book.
TD remembers seeing Lexion and Siren together, witnessing the growth of their love in another timeline.
Lexion gazes at TD, expressing his wish for her to reciprocate the depth of his feelings.
TD turns away, insisting that a happy ending is impossible if they choose to stay together.
Lexion collapses in despair while TD fears that offering him hope will only lead to further disappointment.
Resigned to her fate, TT repeats her belief that the Duchess's chair is meant for someone else.
Vector bows and promises to gather more information before reporting back to TD with his findings.
TD sits in lonely silence as the door clicks shut, leaving her alone with her thoughts.
A dazed expression crosses TT's face as she processed the heavy burden of her secret knowledge.
Abstract shadows and light flicker across the darkness, signaling a shift in the story's tense atmosphere.
The grand architecture of the meeting hall looms above, setting the stage for a major announcement.
Lexion meets with his elders, confirming that his recent actions are exactly what they have desired.
With a resolute expression, Lexion declares his intention to seek independence from the Aiden Empire immediately. The elders erupt in a mixture of shock and joy at the news of their long-awaited rebellion.
Arnold reflects on his lifelong dream coming true while warning that the Imperial family will surely resist.
Lexion smirks, fully aware of the coming conflict and the inevitable opposition from the ruling family.
Lexion argues that independence is inevitable and they must not let fear of opposition hold them back.
A blonde-haired elder listens with a stoic yet worried expression as the revolutionary plans are detailed.
Lexion reveals that an evil dragon's malicious schemes will soon create chaos across the entire empire.
Arnold and his colleague react with visible horror at the mention of the dragon's impending threat.
The elders discuss recent capital attacks, realizing the grave reality of the dragon's resurgence in the world.
Arnold deduces the reason behind Lexion's mass collection of purification stones and predicts a drastic price hike.
Lexion explains that areas lacking purification stones will be systematically destroyed by the dragon's encroaching dark power.
Recalling historical patterns, Arnold fears the dragon is as powerful as it was a century ago.
Dark clouds and fire loom over a castle, foreshadowing a war even greater than the past.
Lexion orders the North to prepare for a conflict more devastating than the legendary Great War.
Arnold questions Lexion about their response should the Imperial family desperately request their military support. Lexion looks away with cold determination, vowing to prevent any such Imperial requests from reaching them. Lexion commands a total communication blackout with the capital to focus entirely on defending their northern borders.
Lexian reassures Arnold that he will personally handle any backlash or discontent from the Imperial family.
The elders pledge their absolute loyalty and obedience to Lexion's grand vision for their independent future.
The blonde elder questions if TT's presence is purely for her strategic power as an ISOL member. Rumors of the Duke's personal interest in TT cause a stir among the elders during the meeting.
Arnold slams his hand on the table in a sudden burst of anger toward the whispering elders.
Arnold defends Lexion's calculated decisions, dismissing the idea that personal emotions are driving the Duke's plans.
Arnold scolds the elders for their narrow-mindedness and for doubting Lexion's strategic motives regarding the woman.
Arnold freezes as Lexion interrupts, declaring that he will never marry simply to preserve a title.
Lexian expresses disappointment that his own people harbored the same discriminatory attitudes as the Empire they hate.
Lexion sternly warns the elders that Tia Rossetti is precious and forbids anyone from speaking ill of her. Arnold warns of potential relationship rumors while Lexion begins to clarify the exact nature of their bond. Lexion declares that he is courting her, wanting a genuine relationship regardless of political status.
Chibi versions of the elders express shock that the Empire's most eligible bachelor is acting thusly.
Arnold notes His Excellency's recent personality change, realizing it is entirely due to Tita's influence.
A blonde elder woman argues that Lexion must marry someone who possesses a similar family status.
If he truly likes the woman, a red-haired man suggests simply making her a concubine instead.
Arnold argues that social status is irrelevant if they become independent, though he remains visibly concerned.
The elders react with quiet contemplation as they process the Duke's unconventional and firm romantic stance.
The red-haired man and his colleague formally pledge to honor Lexion's final decision regarding his marriage.
Lexion asks the elders to help Tia Rossetti adapt and feel at home in her new environment. A formal acknowledgement confirms that the elders will sincerely assist Lexion with his specific request.
The Manhwa title is elegantly displayed amidst a swirling cloud of glowing blue magical particles. TD stands in a state of absolute shock, struggling to process the scene before her eyes. An older maid explains that the massive pile of gifts is from families across the north.
Looking at the countless boxes, TT admits she cannot understand the purpose behind all these offerings.
The maid laughs and clarifies that the gifts are a late welcome for her arrival in Viello. Surprised by the hospitality, TT contemplates what it means to be welcomed so warmly by everyone. TT recalls being hated in her past for supposedly ruining a barely maintained and fragile peace.
When the maid asks if she dislikes the presents, TD quickly and nervously denies any dissatisfaction.
The maid presents a stack of tea party invitations, noting she need not attend them all.
Titty is encouraged to reject invitations if she wishes, as Duke Lexion is supporting her.
Despite the reassurance, TD remains plagued by uncertainty and confusion regarding her current social standing.
A chibi maid offers to help TD select invitations from the most important and influential people.
Feeling relieved, the Chibi TT expresses her heartfelt gratitude for the maid's kind and helpful offer.
The older maid recommends starting with a tea party hosted by a lady named Amelia Brandt.
Amelia Brandt is identified as the daughter of Marquis Arnold Brandt, who serves as an elder. TD stares into the distance, her mind filled with complex and heavy thoughts about her future.
TD clutches the invitation tightly, considering the weight of the social expectations placed upon her. TD remembers an old argument between Siren and Lexion that occurred specifically because of her.
Recalling the past, TT reflects on how Amelia hated her because of that long-ago school conflict.
TD notes Amelia was reserved with her torment, while the maid advises meeting her beforehand.
TD resolves to stop avoiding people and face her destiny in this world with newfound determination.
Titty agrees to attend Amelia Brandt's tea party, but requests to see the other invitations too.
The older maid bows and promises to reply with tightest attendance to the upcoming tea party.
Daisy, a younger maid, expresses her belief that TD and Lady Amelia will get along well.
TD offers a soft, hopeful smile as she considers the possibility of making a new friend.
Daisy suggests preparing to go out, while TT realizes how quickly the time has already passed.
While Daisy styles her hair, TT bashfully denies the maid's playful teasing about going on a date.
Daisy mentions that Sir Aiden is currently late, which is unusual for his normally clear schedule. TD glances at the mysterious book on the table, noticing Sir Aiden's tardiness with growing concern.
TD suspects the book contains information about Aiden and decides to check it on her way.
Daisy reassures TD that Sir Aiden is very strong and will ensure she arrives there safely.
Dressed in a blue gown and matching hat, TT stands ready for her first social outing. TD thanks Daisy for her help, and the maid responds with a cheerful and polite welcome. The heavy wooden door clicks shut as TT departs for her long-awaited social engagement.
Looking over her shoulder with a smile, TT promises to return back home very soon.
A peaceful village square basks in the sunlight, filled with bustling crowds and market stalls.
TD stands alone in the middle of a crowded street, surrounded by many passing commoners. TD's eyes widen in surprise as she spots a familiar face approaching her through the crowd.
Lexion greets TT while holding a snack, apologizing for making her wait longer than he intended.
TD smiles warmly and expresses her thanks to Lexion for buying the sweet treat for her.
Lexian encourages TT to try the warm pastry before it has a chance to cool.
TD recalls crying in his arms and notes he is acting as if nothing happened. TD takes a bite of the pastry and reacts with a look of pure delight.
TD tells Lexian it's delicious and suggests that he should also have some of it.
Lexian leans in and takes a bite of the pastry directly from TT's hand.
Lexian agrees the warm pastry is good while TD watches him with a stunned expression.
TD jokingly tells Lexian that he should have bought more for himself if he wanted some.
Lexian immediately offers to go buy more, causing TD to quickly try and stop him.
A view of a building in the square as a loud commotion begins to erupt.
TD peers through a crowd of people wondering about the source of the loud shouting.
People in the crowd whisper about intervening while TT looks on with a curious expression.
Lexian notes that someone is fighting and suggests they eat more bread at another time.
TD stops suddenly as she recognizes a familiar blonde woman at the center of the conflict.
Amelia Brandt confronts a baker, accusing him of making people sick with his tainted bread.
Amelia accuses the man of child abuse while he claims the girl stole from him.
A crying young girl begs for help, insisting they didn't steal, and the man gave it.
The baker berates the child while Amelia moves to protect the girl from his anger.
A commanding voice orders them to stop, immediately halting the argument and silencing the crowd. Amelia looks around in confusion, searching for the person who dared to interrupt the argument.
Lexian steps forward with an authoritative gaze that instantly commands the attention of everyone present.
The baker and Amelia recognize the Duke and attempt to explain their side of the situation.
Amelia explains she was mediating because the baker was beating the child without any mercy. Amelia insists she saw the violence with her own eyes and demands justice for her.
Lexian demands to hear the full details of the situation to reach a fair conclusion.
Amelia explains that slum children were showing symptoms of addiction after eating the baker's bread.
Lexian listens as the baker claims theft while Amelia insists the children were given bread.
Lexian warns that distributing tainted bread is a grave danger to the entire community.
Lexian tells Amelia she was analyzing the situation from only one side instead of both.
Lexian calls for guards while the baker breaks down, admitting he wanted to teach lessons.
The baker begs for forgiveness for his family's sake while Lexian remains completely silent. TD watches as the conflict is resolved safely and the crowd begins to disperse quietly.
Lexian leads TD away as she asks about the fate of the baker and child.
Lexian explains that Amelia is taking the child's brother to a clinic for medical care.
Amelia watches the pair walk away while TT nervously wonders if she is being stared at.
Amelia introduces herself and TT politely responds by stating her full name and status.
Amelia mentions TD's Tea Party RSVP and thanks her for agreeing to attend her event.
Amelia assumes the pair are on a date, which Lexian happily confirms despite Tita's denial.
Chibi versions of the group show Amelia giggling while TD blushes at Lexian's bold claim.
Amelia finds TT's shyness charming, and Lexian agrees that it is one of her charms.
Lexian asks Amelia to take good care of TT during her first Northern social events.
Amelia smiles warmly and promises to fulfill Lexian's request to look after his companion.
TD looks stunned, struggling to reconcile this kind woman with her past memories of her.
Amelia whispers to TT, asking for her honest feelings about the Duke at a later time.
Amelia bids them farewell as she heads off to finish cleaning up the baker's mess.
TD wonders how Amelia knows about her feelings, while Lexian suggests they continue their walk.
TD asks Lexian why everyone refers to her as the Duchess without her formal permission.
Lexian smiles gently at her while TT continues to grapple with her uncertain social standing.
A thought bubble reveals TD's current lack of intention to ever become the official Duchess.
TD stares ahead with a pensive expression, her mind weighed down by heavy future concerns. TD remains lost in silent contemplation as she processes her uncertain and complicated new life.
Lexian remains silent, his expression unreadable as he considers the weight of TD's earlier words.
Lexian closes his eyes with a serene smile, seemingly finding comfort in the current moment.
TD questions why things are this way while Lexian gently interrupts her with a firm tone.
Lexian clarifies that the position of Duchess is a role intended exclusively for TD and no one else.
TD stares back in disbelief, her eyes widening at the weight of Lexian's unexpected romantic declaration. TD expresses her contentment with the present, urging Lexian not to sacrifice his own interests for her.
TT points out that a princess would be a more strategically beneficial choice to help him lead.
Lexian reacts with intense confusion and demands to know the source of rumors about Princess Seren.
TD recalls her past life as Lexian denies the council ever discussed such a marriage proposal session.
Lexian firmly states he would have rejected any such recommendation, leaving TD feeling quite surprised and relieved.
Lexian gazes at TD with deep sincerity, hoping to dispel the misunderstandings clouding her kind heart.
Lexian takes Titus' hand in his, offering a gentle smile against the backdrop of the blue sky. TD looks down at their joined hands, her expression softened by a flicker of shy, newfound uncertainty. As the two stand together in a peaceful field, TT calls out Lexian's name very softly.
A confession of deep affection highlights the incredible depth of the growing bond between the pair.
The Manhwa title is elegantly displayed amidst a swirling cloud of glowing golden and white magical particles.
TD stands poised and elegant in her blue gown, ready to face the challenges of Northern society.
Amelia formally introduces TD to the guests, prompting a polite and slightly nervous greeting from her.
The local noblewomen greet TT warmly, expressing their long-awaited anticipation for her arrival at the party.
The hostess suggests starting the event now that the final guest of honor has officially arrived.
Sophie formally introduces herself to TT, who responds with a courteous and friendly acknowledgement of her.
Emily expresses her genuine excitement and joy at finally meeting Lady Tirazetti during the social gathering. TT reciprocates the kindness while Sophie suddenly notices a loud and frantic disturbance beginning nearby.
A sense of extreme urgency fills the air as someone rushes toward the gathering with haste.
A panicked maid interrupts the party to announce a royal arrival, startling the gathered noble ladies.
Amelia excuses herself from the table immediately, reacting to the urgent news delivered by the breathless maid.
The tea party is left in a state of sudden disruption as the hostess departs very quickly. TT wonders about Amelia's family as Sophie dismisses the commotion as a recurring and troublesome family issue.
The ladies whisper about the Brandette family struggles and the illness plaguing Amelia's younger sibling lately.
TT suddenly recalls a sick younger brother from her past memories of her first time in Biello.
TT realizes Amelia's earlier outburst at the baker was likely fueled by her brother's own condition.
TT asks for more specific details regarding the current health of the young master of the Brandt family.
Emily confirms the young man's chronic health issues recently took a sudden and very severe turn.
Sophie explains the family's deep concern and their desire to provide constant care for the boy.
Sophie speculates that the illness might actually be poisoning, shocking TT with a grave and dark suggestion.
Sophie clarifies her theories unproven and apologizes for bringing such a dark topic to the tea.
The scene shifts to Lexion adjourning a formal meeting early due to a pressing family emergency.
A moment of heavy silence follows the revelation, leaving the social atmosphere feeling quite strained.
TT considers the possibility that her unique skills could be used to treat the boy's severe ailment.
The scene shifts to a quiet room under the moonlight as a new discussion begins.
A faint blue glow fills the space, marking a transition in focus within the unfolding story.
Lexion shares a positive update from Aiden regarding the progress of their purification efforts in Hakun.
TT expresses her deep relief and gratitude that their friend is safe and nearly finished working.
Lexion asks about her day while TT explains the unfortunate circumstances that cut the party short.
Lexion acknowledges the boy's dire state while TT brings up her suspicions of possible foul play.
Lexion explains that the boy's condition is a complication arising from exposure to a demon's poison.
Lexion suggests that treating the poison itself is manageable, though larger health issues may still remain.
TT reacts with total shock as Lexion bluntly states that medical intervention might be completely useless.
Lexion delivers a grim assessment, indicating the boy's life was already nearing its inevitable and sad end.
The Duchess of Brandt bursts into the room in a state of distress, ignoring all protocols.
Madame Brandt weeps and asks Lexion for a favor while in a state of extreme distress.
Lexion acknowledges Madame Brandt while TT watches the woman's grief with deep concern and sadness. Madame Brandt collapses to her knees, desperately pleading for the Duke to save her dying son.
The Duchess remains on the floor, her voice cracking as she begs for her son's life.
Lexion stands with his back turned, offering only a cold and silent presence to her. Lexion looks down and remarks that the current situation is becoming quite inconvenient for him. A bearded man rushes into the room, calling out to Madame Brandt in a massive panic.
The man asks Lexion to forgive his wife, explaining she is acting out of pure desperation.
He urges his wife to leave, calling her public display of grief an absolute disgrace.
Madame Brandt continues to sob while apologizing as her husband leads her out of the room.
TT worries about the boy's terminal condition, lamenting that she simply cannot save every single person.
TT's hand trembles as she struggles with the weight of her own inability to help.
TT looks toward Lexion, silently searching for some guidance or comfort in this heavy moment.
Lexion closes his eyes and slowly shakes his head, signaling that there is nothing more.
A shower of magical light signals a transition in the story's focus and emotional week.
The scene shifts to a serene palace interior, bathed in soft, warm afternoon sunlight. Amelia apologizes for yesterday's incident, but TT insists they sit and talk things through first. TT asks about her mother's health, and Amelia confirms she is very sorry for her behavior. Amelia explains that her mother is currently bedridden, which is why she came to visit alone. TT apologizes for not helping, but Amelia admits she is thankful the request was declined. Amelia notes that people always expect more after receiving help, praising TT for handling it well. Amelia mentions that TT's power is said to devour life, so no one can blame her.
TT urges Amelia to stop apologizing, hoping to move past the weight of the previous day. TT offers a soft smile and formally thanks Amelia for her understanding and kind words.
TT reflects on how her past memories of Amelia differ from the warm person before her.
Amelia realizes she must return to her duties and prepares to take her leave of TT.
Amelia turns to leave, her elegant boots clicking softly against the polished floor of the room.
Amelia asks TT to call her Amelia comfortably, feeling awkward with such formal titles between them. TT is pleasantly surprised and eagerly asks Amelia to address her by her name as well.
The two women share a light-hearted moment together, surrounded by a garden of beautiful blooming roses. Amelia bids TT farewell, promising to see her later as she prepares to depart the palace. TD stands alone on the terrace, watching the carriage roll away into the distance.
TD wonders if getting close to others is safe, feeling herself grow attached to this world.
TD feels that these genuine connections are finally allowing her to truly become Tia Rossetti in heart. The scene shifts to the Imperial Palace as reports of another demon dragon attack emerge. A high-ranking official stands before the king reporting on the dire state of the kingdom's communications. The king asks if Duke Sperato has been contacted regarding the escalating crisis in the north.
Marquise Brittany nervously explains that their communication devices seem to be malfunctioning or perhaps even broken.
The king narrows his eyes, sensing that something far more sinister than a mechanical failure is happening.
An attendant announces the arrival of Princess Saren, and the king grants her permission to enter.
Princess Saren enters the room, her long green hair braided elegantly with golden floral hair accessories.
Saren apologizes for interrupting, but the Marquis bows politely and assures her that it is fine.
The king orders a messenger to Barlow if they receive no word, demanding Lexion's immediate return. Marquise Brittany reports that roads to Barlow are blocked, though the Hakun region remains relatively safe.
The Marquis worries because they have repeatedly ignored requests for support from the people of Hakun.
He fears the locals will refuse to open the road after being abandoned during their own time of need. The king demands to know why Marquis Brittany stops speaking and dismisses him from the room.
Princess Saren watches silently as the Marquis bows deeply and makes a very hasty exit.
Princess Saren asks if he truly intends to send a messenger to Barlow despite the risks.
The king sighs deeply, stating that if contact cannot be established, they must go there themselves. Princess Saren and her father discuss the difficulty of contacting Duke Sperato at the palace.
The king questions Saren's theory about a protest and expresses his disappointment in her perspective.
The green-haired princess looks down at her tea and quietly disagrees with her father's harsh assessment.
Saren rises from her seat, sighing as she prepares to offer an alternative solution to the crisis.
She begins to walk across the room, noting that messengers will not resolve the underlying issue.
The princess stops abruptly and grasps her own hands as she considers her next strategic move. The king observes her closely, sensing that his daughter has already devised a specific plan of action.
An aerial view of the capital accompanies the king's remark about the city's current defensive capabilities.
A close-up of the princess's confident smile reveals her satisfaction with her own hidden intentions.
Saren suggests taking advantage of their available time to enact her proposed idea immediately.
Princess Saren stands elegantly, her long green hair and ornate gown gleaming in the soft light.
A small purple-haired chibi witch appears as a whimsical transition before the next major scene begins.
Saren explains to the king that she intends to visit the Duke personally to investigate the situation.
Sunlight streams into a grand hall as someone questions the necessity of such a sudden royal visit. Princess Saren and Amelia appear together, their contrasting appearances highlighting their unique roles within the story. The king expresses deep concern for her safety, while Saren playfully dismisses his overprotective worries. Saren asks for permission to travel to her destination, accompanied by Gregory for added protection. Sunlight bathes the massive domed palace exterior, marking a shift in the story's location and focus.
A man with dark blue hair and a distinct facial scar is introduced to the scene.
TD welcomes Sir Aidan Bach, and he notes how much she has learned during his long absence.
A nearby maid jokingly suggests that TT is perfectly capable even without Aiden's constant supervision.
Chibi versions of Aiden and the maid engage in a brief, light-hearted argument about their roles.
A close-up of the scarred man's mouth shows a gentle and knowing smile forming. The focus shifts to Aiden's eyes and the prominent scar crossing the bridge of his mouth.
Aiden continues to smile warmly, his expression full of affection for those he has just rejoined. The brown-haired maid looks on with a soft, slightly melancholy expression as the reunion continues. TD watches the two interact and playfully wonders if there is a secret relationship between them. Aiden turns his full attention to TT, indicating that he has important news to share.
Aiden reveals that a boy named John and his mother have recently arrived in the region.
TD is stunned to learn John survived, prompting her to question how he managed to purify himself.
Abstract purple patterns swirl as a voice considers if there are hidden secrets within a specific book.
T clutches her chest in a gesture of profound relief, offering a silent prayer of gratitude. Aiden reports that Hakun was framed for the recent trouble, earning TT's sincere praise for his work. A hazy memory shows a mother and child happily reunited near the grand walls of a castle. Aiden complains about his boss's strictness, but TT insists that the Duke actually respects him greatly. Aiden admits that he nearly changed his mind about traveling to the capital due to personal hesitation. He mentions experiencing a recurring nightmare at the villa, which immediately catches TT's intense interest. TT reacts with a start, her eyes widening as the mention of the villa sparks a memory.
She urgently asks if he was present on the specific day the Duke was trapped by snow.
Aiden confirms his presence and recalls the Duke screaming out loud while he was fast asleep.
TD repeats the man's words in a whisper, clearly shaken by the revelation of the Duke's screams. TD asks for details about the screams, but Aiden explains he was too far away to hear.
Aiden suggests that Chris would have heard the words since he was the first to reach the Duke.
TD worries about Chris's past hostility, but Aiden offers to act as an intermediary and ask him.
TD expresses doubt that Chris will cooperate, though she is thankful for Aiden's willingness to help.
Aiden encourages her to trust him despite knowing that Chris is notoriously difficult to talk to.
The maid nods in agreement, signaling her full support for Aiden's plan to uncover the truth.
TD agrees to accept Aiden's help, her expression softening with a flicker of hope and determination. TD stands outside in an elegant green dress, accompanied by a large, friendly-looking white dog.
A sudden realization or sound catches TT's attention, causing her to look toward the side in surprise.
Chris approaches TT, who realizes that the man is indeed Sir Chris.
Chris politely bows as TD marvels at the coincidence of running again. Chris asks if she is out for a walk while the dog happily barks nearby. Chris observes that the dog seems to really like Tiarazetti, prompting a happy reaction from Max. TD explains they became friends after she gave him treats, petting Max affectionately.
Chris remains silent, looking at TT with a contemplative and somewhat distant expression.
Chris asks if she has any inconveniences during her stay while looking her in the eye.
Chris dismisses his own question and prepares to leave, surprising TT with his sudden departure. TD realizes this is a great opportunity to ask him about her past concerns.
TD stops him, calling out to Sir Chris as he starts to walk away. Chris turns back, asking how she knows his name with a curious expression.
TD mentions Aiden and offers him a lemon tart, feeling relieved she handled the situation well.
Chris repeats the word tart thoughtfully as TD tells him he can decline if busy.
Chris pauses to consider the invitation, touching his chin while lost in thought.
A gold fork rests on a decorative white plate, indicating they have begun eating.
The fork remains on the plate during their conversation, surrounded by a soft, glowing light.
Chris praises Daisy's skill, and TD agrees that she thoroughly enjoyed the food provided.
TD asks Daisy to pack the leftovers for Chris, and the maid happily agrees.
TD notes that Chris still likes sweet things, noticing his sparkling and satisfied reaction.
Daisy whispers to TD that she should ask him about her specific questions now. TD clenches her fists, deciding that his current good mood makes it the perfect timing.
TD asks if he remembers the day she was tied up at the vacation home.
Chris confirms he remembers that day, prompting TT to mention the Duke's screams. Chris asks why she is curious and if there was anything suspicious about that day. TD reveals she heard from Prince Gregory that the Duke knew about the tragedy beforehand.
TD emphasizes her connection to the event by stating she is the only survivor.
TD firmly tells Chris that she believes she has the right to know the truth. Chris recalls that nothing unusual happened during the afternoon of that specific day.
Chris describes the Duke waking up at dawn, screaming excitedly and demanding an immediate departure.
TD questions the meaning of screaming into the air as Chris begins to explain further.
TD is startled as a man suddenly stands up, interrupting her conversation with Chris.
Lexian stands before them, dressed in an elegant green suit with ornate gold chains. Lexian dismisses Chris, telling him he can go, and the knight salutes before leaving.
Lexian apologizes for the interruption, and TT thanks Chris for his time as he departs.
Lexian asks what they were talking about, but TD dismisses it as nothing important.
A thought bubble suggests that the interruption happened sooner than it should have.
Lexian looks at her with a questioning gaze, asking if she is really okay. Lexian mentions a message from Greg while Daisy cleans up, asking for clarification about the prince. Lexian explains that Greg plans to travel to Viello with Princess Siren in a while.
TD realizes that the book's story is about to move on to the next part.
TD stands up abruptly, causing Lexian to call out her name in surprise.
TD tells him she suddenly remembered something she needs to do and must leave.
TD runs through the palace, determined to check something out before the story progresses.
TD stands alone in a grand room, looking down at the book on the table. TD looks at the book, noting the next part and wondering about the Emperor's secret orders. Someone calls TT's name, causing her to flinch as she looks at the book.
TD quickly closes the book and looks up in surprise at Sion's sudden appearance. Lexian asks what is wrong and why she left so suddenly, approaching her in the room.
Lexian holds out her black hair ribbon, explaining that she had dropped it earlier. TD reaches out to take the ribbon, thanking him for returning it to her. TD looks up with a confused expression as she wonders what is happening. Lexian smiles warmly while offering to place the decorative flowers into her hair personally.
A close-up shows TT's face as she feels a sudden and intense flutter of nervousness.
Lexian carefully adjusts the yellow roses in her hair as TD questions her growing anxiety.
Lexian asks TD if he may inquire about something, prompting her to agree immediately.
Lexian asks for her opinion on Gregory, catching TT completely off guard by the question.
A magical book appears as TT questions the sudden and poorly timed story preview.
A system window reveals that Gregory and Siren are set to arrive at Viello together.
The preview suggests TD will feel depressed by Lexian's interactions with Siren before Gregory intervenes. The notification concludes by announcing that a grand welcome party will soon take place.
TD considers the upcoming romantic complications and her inevitable involvement with Prince Gregory.
Lexian calls her name, causing TT to snap out of her thoughts and offer an apology.
TD clarifies she has no special feelings for the prince, which Lexian acknowledges quietly.
Lexian asks if he can pose one more question, and TT encourages him to proceed.
Touching her hair, Lexian asks what he means to her and if she lacks feelings.
Lexian gazes at her with a soft, expectant look as he waits for her response.
The Duke stands elegantly in his green suit, his hand gesturing toward her affectionately.
TD remains silent for a moment, her gaze lowered as she processes his heavy question. A gentle smile forms on TT's face as the atmosphere between them grows more intimate.
Lexian explains that she is precious for saving his life and providing a place to stay.
TD wonders if his words imply that she is now someone he can always return to.
Lexian clenches his hand and refers to their current location as a place of belonging.
Lexian asks if she is comfortable remaining in Viello while she looks at him with curiosity. TD clutches her chest and smiles brightly, clearly moved by his genuine concern and hospitality.
Brilliant light shines behind the Duke as he continues to speak with profound sincerity.
Surrounded by blooming flowers, Lexian looks down with a look of pure and gentle affection.
Lexian notes that this location has finally become a sanctuary where she can find true rest.
TD gazes back at him with a soft, affectionate expression, touched by his kind words. The scene shifts as the bright sky and fluffy white clouds mark the passage of time.
A grand carriage arrives in front of the massive, ornate palace under the morning sun. Sunlight sparkles over the lush garden beds filled with vibrant yellow flowers near the entrance.
Gregory and Princess Siren arrive at the palace dressed in their finest formal traveling attire.
The two main characters are shown together in a promotional illustration for the series. A whimsical purple witch appears above the palace as the royal guests prepare to enter.
Gregory greets Lexian, noting the time passed since their last meeting as TD watches nearby.
Lexian welcomes the guests and offers to take their coats after their long, tiring journey. Lexian explains that Oscar will guide them to the rooms prepared at the quiet villa.
Siren looks on with a contemplative expression as she listens to the Duke's arrangements.
Lexian notes the main castle is busy with training knights, making the villa more comfortable.
Siren clarifies where to find the Duke, and he confirms his busy schedule at the castle. Lexian introduces his butler, Oscar, who will ensure all their needs are met during their stay.
TD, dressed in a dark gown, watches the group and recalls being with them yesterday.
Siren asks if Tia Rossetti is at the villa, causing TD to react with a visible start.
Lexian explains she is staying at the main house, prompting Siren to ask for the reason. Oscar explains she felt unwell, so she is staying near doctors for her own safety. Gregory reassures the princess that he will personally ensure she has no inconveniences during her stay. A chibi Gregory questions the housing arrangements and playfully suggests holding a commemorative party instead.
A close-up of Titus's blue eye reveals her realization that events are unfolding exactly as expected.
Gregory wishes to greet the local nobles, and Lexian agrees to make all the necessary arrangements.
Siren thanks the Duke and requests that TT serve as her maid during the visit.
Lexian firmly corrects the assumption that TD is a maid, requesting her tea companionship instead. TD worries about Siren's inconsiderate behavior affecting Lexian, but ultimately agrees to the tea invitation. A cunning smile plays on Siren's lips as she watches TT's reluctant acceptance of the situation. Clasping her hands together, Siren radiates a cheerful but suspicious aura of pure, manipulative satisfaction. A small purple-haired figure sits in dejection, signaling a brief shift in the narrative's emotional tone.
Time flows forward as a notification confirms that a few days have passed since the encounter.
Lounging in her room, TT breathes a sigh of relief at finally having a moment alone. TT's exhaustion peaks as she realizes she spent every day with Siren, just as a guest arrives. Prince Gregory peeks into the room with a bright, charming smile to greet the weary lady.
TT's heart sinks as she realizes both royal siblings seem determined to interrupt her precious rest.
Noticing her sour mood, Gregory questions what she was doing, prompting a vague excuse about meditating.
Gregory chuckles at her obvious lie, playfully suggesting that her meditation is just a sign of trouble.
Turning the tables, TD suggests that the prince's own behavior indicates he is the one harboring worries. Gregory laughs heartily at being found out, preparing to pivot the conversation toward a new proposal.
Surrounded by blooming roses, Gregory leans into TT's personal space, catching her completely off guard.
A mysterious system notification manifests, announcing the sudden arrival of a high-stakes surprise mission.
The atmosphere remains heavy with anticipation as the scene shifts toward the upcoming narrative trial. The system identifies Tyr River as the event location, known specifically for its unique unfreezing waters.
TD reels in shock as the system reveals the reward involves deepening her romantic connection with Gregory.
An urgent warning flashes, stating that a severe penalty follows any refusal of this critical main mission.
Frozen in place, TD stares at the floating interface with an expression of pure, unadulterated dread. Forced to comply, TD clenches her dress and awkwardly asks Gregory if he has any interest in boating.
As they walk through the palace, TT mentions a nearby river, subtly guiding the prince toward the mission.
TD comments on the beautiful weather, while Gregory interprets her words as a preference shared with Siren.
With a radiant smile, Gregory eagerly accepts the invitation and extends his hand to lead the way. The system confirms the date's acceptance, ushering the protagonists onto the stage for a prepared dramatic event.
In a comical fit of frustration, a tiny version of TT rages against the unwanted romantic development.
The scene shifts under a clear blue sky as a warm greeting breaks the morning silence. Sunlight bathes the ornate palace gardens where a private meeting is taking place within a white gazebo. Princess Siren sits across from Amelia, an old acquaintance, for a quiet afternoon of tea and conversation. Amelia offers a sincere apology for the late hour, admitting her family's struggles have left her overwhelmed.
Siren looks on with a facade of concern, asking Amelia for an update on her current well-being.
Despair clouds Amelia's face as she recounts her sister's persistent fever and her mother's bedridden state. Reaching across the table, Siren offers a comforting touch to the distressed woman, showing rare empathy.
Siren encourages Amelia to rest and reiterates her willingness to provide any necessary assistance during this time.
Amelia's gratitude overflows when Siren reveals she brought special fever-reducing herbs as a thoughtful gift.
A brief pause occurs in their heavy conversation as a request for more refreshments is made.
Lifting her cup, Siren takes a sip of the tea and praises its delightful and soothing aroma. Amelia mentions the tea came highly recommended by a mutual acquaintance, sparking Siren's curiosity about the source. Siren freezes in mid-sip as Amelia reveals that Lady T. Rossetti was the one who suggested the blend. Amelia notes their apparent closeness, while Siren admits that her relationship with TT has indeed progressed.
Amelia explains that she and TT have been exchanging frequent letters despite her busy schedule at home.
A look of horror crosses Siren's face as Amelia casually mentions TT might soon become a duchess.
Leaning in, Amelia asks Siren to keep the news quiet since the engagement is not yet official.
Amelia clarifies she is referring to the future Duchess Sparrow, leaving Siren in a state of shock.
Siren's internal panic rises as she realizes there is only one Sparrow Duchy in the entire kingdom.
A vision of Lexion and TT together reinforces the rumor that their bond is becoming undeniably true. Siren presses for details while the narrative confirms Lexion's deep affection for TT is becoming public knowledge.
Sensing the tension, Amelia tries to retract her words, dismissing the sensitive information as mere palace gossip.
The garden remains peaceful as Siren processes the revelation, while Amelia shifts the topic toward future events. The black-clad woman clenches her fist, questioning the Duke's decision regarding the future Duchess. A shimmering trail of starlight cuts through the void as the scene begins to shift. Sunlight bathes a lush forest clearing where a white stone gazebo stands nestled among trees.
Resting in the garden, TT admires the scenery while seeking shade under a delicate parasol.
Gazing into the distance, she privately wishes she could have visited this place with Lexion. Her thoughts linger on the magical book's interference, regretting that its plans took priority first.
Sitting together in a boat, Gregory admires the river's beauty, while TT listens quietly nearby. Gregory notes the water's clarity while TT warns him against jumping in, prompting a playful protest. The blonde prince smiles warmly at her, his expression softening as they float along the water. Gregory jokingly seeks validation for his looks, and TT offers a flat, half-hearted agreement in response. Closing his eyes with a pout, the prince laments her coldness toward his attempt at charm. Gregory offers to act with more formality, though he quickly admits he prefers their current dynamic. A close-up reveals his intense gaze as he silently acknowledges his satisfaction with the current moment. With a light-hearted gesture, Gregory suddenly confesses that he is actually quite frightened of the water.
TT reacts with surprise as Gregory explains a past near-death experience involving falling into the water.
Gregory suggests returning, but TT insists on staying since she is accustomed to handling scary situations.
Reaching across the seat, TT prepares to offer a comforting gesture to the nervous prince.
To his utter shock, TT suddenly reaches out and firmly grasps Gregory's gloved hand in hers. TT explains that physical contact might help him feel less afraid, leaving the prince completely stunned. Gregory observes her closely, noting that while it isn't very helpful, he finds her gesture intriguing. Flashing a mischievous smile, Gregory warns her that such bold actions will lead to future trouble. Leaning down with courtly grace, the prince gently presses his lips against the back of her hand. The romantic gesture lingers in a close-up, deepening the intimate atmosphere between the two companions. Blushing intensely, TT is caught off guard as Gregory confesses his growing feelings for her openly. TT stands frozen in embarrassment as Gregory's boisterous laughter echoes across the bright, open water.
In a playful chibi form, Gregory teases her about her racing heart while TT grumbles irritably. Internally admitting her reaction, TT outwardly scolds the prince for making such inappropriate, heart-fluttering jokes.
Gregory playfully questions her motivations for holding his hand, teasingly claiming that she flustered him instead. Sunlight dances across the mountain landscape as the prince laughs, acknowledging his understanding of her feelings. TT looks back at him with wide, serious eyes, the playful mood shifting toward a moment of quiet. Gregory gazes back at her with a gentle, lingering smile as they continue their conversation.
Turning his gaze toward the sky, the prince offers a sincere apology for his previous overbearing behavior.
TD questions the apology while Gregory recalls his past attempts to dissuade her from liking Lexion.
TD looks away as he reminds her of his past claim that Lexion belonged to Saren.
A close-up of Gregory's ornate silver brooch reflects the sunlight as the boat drifts along peacefully.
Intricate floral details in TD's hair catch the light as she processes his heavy, honest words.
TD realizes she cannot reveal her true feelings due to the predetermined path set for her.
Lowering her gaze, her expression softens with a trace of sadness regarding her inevitable romantic restrictions.
TD laments that the world itself would impose penalties to prevent her from following her heart.
The image shifts to Lexion, whose dark hair and calm expression appear in her mental reflection.
Lexion stands elegantly in a white suit, representing the future her heart quietly desires to choose.
Clenching her dress tightly, TT wonders if she truly has the right to develop feelings for Lexion.
Gregory notices her inner turmoil and asks if she thinks she needs his permission to love. Looking away with a conflicted gaze, TT clarifies that permission is not the source of her struggle.
Gregory explains that a person's heart cannot be controlled by anyone, offering her a sense of freedom.
He encourages her, stating that only their mutual feelings for each other truly matter in the end. A close-up of Titus' blue eyes shows her dawning realization as she hears his supportive words.
Beaming with a radiant and genuine smile, TT looks completely relieved and happy after his reassurance.
Bright light glimmers over a traditional timber-framed building as the scene transitions back to the palace.
Returning to her quarters in a new gown, TD is greeted as she enters the grand room.
Princess Cyrene looks elegant and satisfied as she prepares for a day of shopping in the city.
Entering a high-end jewelry store, Cyrene expresses her sincere gratitude to TT for accompanying her.
Cyrene explains that she requires TD's refined taste to help her select a suitable tie.
Cyrene notes the difficulty of choosing, while TD looks on with a slightly startled and distracted expression. TD's attention is drawn toward a pair of exquisite cufflinks she believes would look wonderful on Lexion.
Cyrene playfully asks if the cufflinks are for Gregory, causing TT to flusteredly deny any such intention.
Mentioning their recent boat ride, Cyrene questions when TT and her brother became so surprisingly close.
Cyrene offers her help to further their relationship while TD desperately tries to correct the misunderstanding.
TD remains silent in a state of shock, her large blue eyes reflecting her internal panic.
Cyrene notices her reaction and asks why the topic of her brother seems to upset TD so much.
TD apologizes, explaining she simply wishes to avoid any potentially awkward social situations with Prince Gregory.
Accepting the explanation, Cyrene shifts the focus back to shopping and asks for TT's opinion on a tie. Cyrene holds up a dark patterned tie and asks if it would suit Lexion, surprising TD.
Cyrene reveals that she will be Lexion's party partner and customarily gifts a tie to her escort.
TD is visibly shaken by the news, realizing that events are unfolding exactly as the princess desired.
Cyrene expresses her happiness, noting her past regret when Lexion could not escort her to her debutante ball. Cyrene clarifies that her direct line of questioning was not intended to signal any personal dislike for TT.
Finalizing her purchase, Cyrene prepares to leave while TT is overcome by a heavy sense of unease. A grand carriage departs the lush palace gardens under a bright sky, marking the passage of time. Inside the moving carriage, TT sits in a silent daze, looking completely exhausted by the day's events.
Her maid questions why the princess kept mentioning TT and the prince during their entire outing.
The maid expresses her loyalty, stating that she always wants to help her lady in any way possible.
Reaching into a bag, the maid surprises TT by presenting the very cufflinks she had admired earlier.
TT reacts with genuine shock, questioning why the maid would go to such lengths for her.
Clasping the gift to her heart, TT beams with a radiant smile of pure and relieved happiness. That night, Gregory uses a magical device to confirm his arrival in Viello to his father. The king commands Gregory to win the favor of the woman named Isol and bring her back.
Gregory listens in silence as his father mockingly compliments his reputation for successfully seducing women.
The king expresses concern over the unusual movements of an evil dragon and orders Lexion watched.
Gregory pleads with his father not to exploit Cyrene's genuine feelings for the Duke for political gain.
The king angrily dismisses the plea, asserting that political interests are the only life for royals. Reminding Gregory that his life belongs to the crown, the king demands successful news regarding his mission. The magical communication abruptly ends, leaving the room in silence as the glowing sphere fades away.
Looking at the moonlight, Gregory bitterly questions his past and wishes he had never been sent away.
Gregory's expression is full of quiet despair as he reflects on his miserable role in imperial politics. TD stands alone by a large window, her figure silhouetted against the light of the full moon. Holding the small gift box, TD wonders how she can possibly give the cufflinks to Lexion now. A knock at the door startles her, and TT invites the unexpected late-night visitor to enter. Cyrene's maid enters the room, apologizing for the late hour and requesting TD's presence immediately. The maid explains that the princess has something to give her and asks TD to follow her. The scene shifts to the starry night sky over the quiet and ornate gardens of the palace.
TD walks across the stone terrace, following the summons to meet with the princess as requested.
TD feels a sense of dread, wondering what kind of gift would require such a late meeting.
Arriving at a garden archway, TD spots two figures standing together under the bright moonlight. TD recognizes Lexian and Siren together, feeling a painful sense of déjà vu as she watches them.
TD notices Siren holding the Taibot today, realizing the purpose of their private late-night encounter.
Watching from the shadows, TT feels like an intruder, witnessing the two of them grow increasingly intimate. TD stands frozen in shock as she witnesses a moment that seems to confirm her worst fears.
The giant moon hangs prominently in the night sky, illuminating the tragic atmosphere of the garden.
From a distance, Lexian and Siren appear to lean in for a close and romantic embrace.
A promotional banner invites readers to a hub for various webtoon and manga series.
A digital interface displays popular webtoon titles and their latest chapter update schedules. A system notification demands a partner request, threatening penalties for further refusal. Lexian finds the persistent and threatening system notifications to be increasingly dangerous and annoying. Lexian decides to comply with the demands as he approaches the balcony to meet Siren.
Princess Siren warmly welcomes Duke Lexion as he arrives for their late-night meeting.
Lexian questions the summons while Siren insists on giving him a gift in person.
Siren shows him a dark patterned tie she believes is perfect for Anne. Siren formally requests that Lexion act as her partner for the upcoming party.
Siren presents the gift with a graceful and expectant expression.
Lexion looks at her with an unimpressed expression, finding her forwardness quite striking.
Lexion firmly rejects the offer, stating that he is already attending with Tirazetti. Siren claims Tirazetti encouraged the partnership, suggesting they would be a better match. Lexion is stunned by the claim and privately observes how her expression shifts.
Siren adds that Tirazetti is already partnering with Prince Gregory for the event.
Lexion's aura darkens as he demands clarification on what was just said. Siren is startled by his sudden hostility, asking if he is truly becoming angry.
Lexion suppresses his rage, apologizes for his reaction, and prepares to depart.
Walking away in cold fury, Lexion vows that Siren will regret her manipulative actions.
Siren playfully teases him about his surprise, clarifying she had no intention of kissing him.
Returning home, TD reflects on whether Lexion's mention of she referred to her.
Siren stops in her tracks, realizing that her assumptions about the situation were correct. Princess Siren is consumed by disbelief that she was passed over for a commoner.
Siren furiously rejects the idea that social status should not dictate the heart's desires.
Siren reminds Lexion of his high status as the Duke of Sperato. Siren insists that she will be his partner regardless of his personal feelings. Siren issues a royal order for him to wear the tie at the party. Siren warns him not to upset her again, threatening to break anything necessary.
The atmosphere shifts to the quiet interior of the palace as time passes.
TD weeps as she realizes her hopes for a meaningful relationship were misplaced.
Overwhelmed by sadness, TT desperately wishes to leave the palace and go home.
The next morning, the maid reacts with alarm to Tita's swollen, tear-stained eyes.
TD sits in silence, looking completely drained after her night of deep sorrow.
The maid tries to soothe TT, offering comforting words to ease her heavy heart.
TD is startled when the maid asks if she ever gave the cufflinks to Lexion.
TD admits that she no longer has the desire to give the gift to him.
The maid observes Titus' distress with a look of sincere concern and pity. The maid suggests that an outdoor walk might help improve TT's low mood.
Encouraging TT, the maid proposes an outing to distract her from her current troubles.
TT questions the suggestion while the maid prepares to explain the planned destination.
The maid describes the sparkling beauty of Camel Forest as an ideal place to visit.
In the distant Plank Village, a young girl named Rose returns home excitedly.
Rose's brother offers a warm welcome as she enters their humble wooden home.
Rose enthusiastically shares her luck in finding medicinal mushrooms to treat his stomachache.
The boy obediently drinks the dark medicinal liquid that Rose has carefully prepared.
Immediately after drinking the medicine, the boy begins to cough violently in distress. Rose is horrified to see blood on her brother's hand as he begins to lose consciousness. Rose frantically questions what is happening while her brother weakly tries to reassure her.
The boy feels an overwhelming sleepiness, suspecting the medicine is causing his sudden exhaustion. Rose watches her brother with wide eyes, filled with growing fear for his well-being. A startled young girl in commoner clothes looks upward with a blush on her face. The girl considers eating a mysterious bowl of soup, deciding it is better than starving. The girl swallows the soup and immediately reacts with a look of intense physical disgust. Despite the terrible taste, she notes that her stomach feels slightly fuller than it was before.
A sudden wave of drowsiness overcomes the girl as she wonders why she feels so tired.
The bowl slips from her hand and shatters as she succumbs to an overwhelming sleepiness. The girl collapses into a deep sleep on a bed alongside a young, resting boy.
Lexion and Tirazetti walk together through a scenic, sunlit path surrounded by lush green trees.
Tirazetti looks away with a flustered expression as the two continue their walk in silence.
Tia Rossetti laments running into him, wishing she did not have to see his face just yet.
Lexian maintains a silent and focused gaze as he walks alongside his companion in the forest. Lexian asks if TT is angry, noting she has avoided looking at him for some time.
TT thinks to herself that looking at his face would make her feel far too unsteady.
TT claims she is only embarrassed because her face is currently a little swollen and puffy.
Lexian warmly reassures her that she remains pretty even if her face is a bit swollen.
TT denies the compliment while continuing to walk ahead with a slightly embarrassed and flustered expression. Lexian suddenly stops her in her tracks, causing her to turn back with a questioning look. Lexian leans in close to TT, creating a moment of intense and silent romantic tension between them.
TT reacts with startled surprise as he suddenly moves into her personal space without any warning.
TT loses her footing and begins to trip backward on the uneven ground of the forest.
Lexian quickly reaches out and catches her, pulling her close to prevent her from falling down.
Lexian asks if she is alright and warns her that she almost got into serious trouble. TT looks up at him with wide eyes and insists that she is perfectly fine now. Lexian begins to ask her a question, starting with her name as he looks at her intently. A close-up of TT shows her looking upward with an expression of quiet expectation and curiosity.
TT asks why he is suddenly curious about her partner since he is already Saren's partner.
TT tells him there is no need to worry about her lack of a partner for now.
Lexian is confused when TT reveals she was never planning to attend the party at all. TT explains she dislikes parties and intended to avoid the event by pretending to be sick. Lexian tries to argue against her plan, but she continues to justify her desire to stay home.
A maid waves from a distance, announcing she found the perfect spot for the lady and Duke.
TT expresses relief at the interruption and tells the maid they will arrive at the spot soon.
Lexian leads TT toward the maid, stating it is time for them to move on together.
A final thought bubble notes that staying any longer might have led to saying something completely unnecessary.
A grand palace stands under the night sky as the day of the banquet finally arrives.
TT sits alone in her room, reflecting on how the party must be in full swing.
TT reflects on the quiet atmosphere and how Lexian never actually asked her to be his partner. TT asks the guide why the boating event was skipped, learning it is still in progress. TT reacts with shock and alarm when the system mentions that Gregory will be arriving very soon. A knock sounds at the door as TT wonders if he has truly arrived at her room. A promotional illustration features the main leads together in a formal and highly romanticized embrace. Gregory stands at the banquet, drinking wine while reflecting on Lexian's presence at the grand event.
Gregory notes the unconventional abolition of the partner rule and his sister's lie about Lexian's partner.
Gregory drinks his wine, amused by what he perceives as a display of cute jealousy from Saren.
Gregory approaches Lexion, thinking that the current situation must be quite burdensome for the young Duke.
Gregory asks Lexion where the young lady is and offers him a glass of wine to drink.
Lexion accepts the drink, explaining TT is unwell, while Gregory asks if her illness is serious.
Gregory mentions Saren's frequent calls might have tired her, a fact that Lexion did not know.
Gregory asks when Lexion plans to return to the capital while they stand beneath a grand chandelier.
Gregory describes the failed second dragon attack and is annoyed by Lexion's strangely lukewarm reaction. Gregory questions Lexion's prior knowledge, while the Duke asks if he expected military reinforcements. Gregory expresses relief that his friend has finally regained his senses and clear judgment.
Gregory mockingly advises the Duke to stop relying so heavily on the royal family's influence. Swirling his drink, Lexion notes that was his original plan before circumstances began to change. Lexion stares intently at Gregory and asks if he ever finds the world's structure stifling.
Gregory jokes about the serious tone, while Lexion admits he sometimes wishes to seek asylum.
Vector interrupts the conversation, informing the Duke that he has brought urgent and important information.
Lexion abruptly ends his conversation with Gregory, promising to continue their discussion at another time.
As Lexion departs to fulfill an obligation, Gregory wonders about Tia Rossetti's sudden bout of illness.
A maid enters the bedroom, calling out to the young lady to announce her late arrival. Finding the grand bedroom empty, the maid begins to wonder where Tia Rossetti could have gone.
Recalling Vector's information, the maid notices the holy book that the young lady frequently reads. The maid decides to tuck a secret letter into the book for Tia Rossetti to discover.
Time passes as the scene prepares to shift toward the events unfolding elsewhere tonight.
Hoping Tia Rossetti will find the letter later, the maid leaves the book on the bed.
Looking at the book one last time, the maid questions Tia Rossetti's whereabouts at this hour.
Silence returns to the ornate bedroom as the night grows deeper and the moon rises.
A system interface suddenly appears, announcing that new information has been discovered within the world.
The glowing notification confirms that the contents of the hidden data are currently being processed.
Under the starlight, Tia Rossetti and Gregory walk together along the edge of a sparkling lake.
Gregory comments on the pleasant night air, and Tia Rossetti politely agrees while feeling internally conflicted. Tia Rossetti privately laments that the book forced her into this event when she preferred solitude.
The two continue their walk in silence as Tia Rossetti dwells on her heavy, sorrowful thoughts.
Gregory mentions hearing about the princess's recent interference, which Tia Rossetti tries to dismiss as nothing.
Gregory suggests that Siren is actually jealous of her, leaving Tia Rossetti shocked by the claim. Tia Rossetti is stunned when Gregory reveals that Siren lied about her partnership with Duke Lexion.
Gregory asks if the princess told her the same lie, noticing Tia Rossetti's sudden and visible distress.
Gregory realizes the lie caused their conflict while Tia Rossetti reels from Siren's calculated and manipulative deceit.
Tia Rossetti wonders if her regression fundamentally altered Siren's personality settings from the original story script.
She recalls a past memory of the princess and Lexion embracing under the full moonlight.
A sudden, sharp rustling noise from the nearby bushes startles Tia Rossetti out of her deep thoughts.
Tia Rossetti looks toward the moving leaves, questioning what could be hiding in the dark garden. An orange and white cat emerges from the bushes, initially relieving Tia Rossetti's fears of danger.
The cat suddenly lunges at her, causing Tia Rossetti to panic and lose her balance backward.
Tia Rossetti frantically warns the cat about the water behind her as she falls toward the lake.
Her heel slips off the ledge as she plunges into the cold depths of the water. A desperate shout echoes through the garden as Tia Rossetti disappears beneath the surface of the lake. Sinking deeper, Tia Rossetti bitterly reflects that this danger is exactly why she avoided leaving today.
As the water closes in, she wonders if Gregory is the one destined to save her.
Tia Rossetti begins to lose consciousness as air bubbles escape her mouth in the freezing blue depths.
A gloved hand reaches down through the dark water, grabbing the fabric of Tia Rossetti's lavender dress.
Lexion dives into the lake, pulling Tia Rossetti toward him as they sink together among bubbles.
Beneath the surface, Lexion holds Tia Rossetti in a protective embrace while gazing into her wide eyes.
The focus shifts back to the quiet interior of the palace as the night's chaos concludes.
Standing by a window, Lexion stares out into the night with a look of deep concern.
Lexion closes his eyes, reflecting on the weight of the day and the rescue he performed.
Back in the room, the holy book on the table begins to emit an ethereal glow.
A hand reaches out to touch the book, triggering a sudden and intense surge of magic. A system notification declares that the story has changed due to the intrusion of another traveler.
The final message confirms that Lexion Sparrow has been removed from his status as a character.
System alerts declare Lexion Sparrow a dangerous element whose role is now finally determined. Tension mounts as the glowing system interface prepares to reveal the Duke's true purpose.
A peaceful morning drapes over the grand architecture of the palace near the mountains.
Tia Rossetti wakes up in her grand bed, looking pale and exhausted from her ordeal.
Tia Rossetti sits up in bed, clutching her aching head and wondering how long she slept.
A lingering touch on her lips sparks a confusing memory of a recent intimate encounter. Daisy the maid enters the room and expresses great relief to see Tia Rossetti finally awake.
Daisy asks how she is feeling after her high fever, and Tia Rossetti replies she is okay. Daisy mentions how worried she was and notes the Duke was passing by during her fall. Daisy explains things could have been serious otherwise, while Tia Rossetti apologizes for causing her worry.
Silence falls as the maid observes her lady with a mix of concern and hesitation.
Daisy mentions she tucked a note from Vector inside the book and asks if she saw it.
Daisy asks again if she found it, while Tia Rossetti questions the mention of a note. Daisy explains Vector said to destroy it after reading it, and Tia Rossetti agrees to do so.
Daisy leaves to go tidy up, telling Tia Rossetti to rest while she thanks her maid.
Tia Rossetti finds a small folded paper in the book and wonders if it is the note.
The system explains that synchronization requires physical contact with the other person's designated holy book.
Tia Rossetti is stunned by a system notification declaring that Lexion Sparrow has become a traveler. The interface warns that understanding his intentions requires urgent contact with his personal holy book.
Shock dilates Tia Rossetti's blue eyes as the full weight of the system's warning hits.
Tia Rossetti frantically asks for an explanation while the system claims Lexion is destroying the world.
The system warns his book is dangerous and commands Tia Rossetti to destroy it immediately.
An ominous blue notification repeats the warning that the current situation is extremely dangerous.
Tia Rossetti clutches her head in pain, questioning the system's claim that Lexion found his ego.
A moment of frozen realization strikes as Tia Rossetti processes the shifting reality of the world.
Tia Rossetti opens the note with trembling hands, her expression turning into one of pure dread. The note details Lexion's nightmare and his mention of a guide, leaving Tia Rossetti in disbelief.
Tia Rossetti trembles while questioning the meaning of a guide as the scene darkens around her.
Tia Rossetti rushes from her room, wondering if they have only now discovered Lexion's true identity. Frantically running through the palace, Tia Rossetti resolves to find Lexion's book as quickly as possible.
Darkness envelops the hallway as the scene shifts toward a secret and urgent search.
Tia Rossetti enters a dimly lit study, her long blue hair glowing against the dark furniture.
Tia Rossetti searches the shelves, certain Lexion left the book in the place he stays longest.
Tia Rossetti feels desperate to find it before Lexion arrives, only for a voice to call her name.
A book clatters to the floor, breaking the silence of the library during her search.
A voice echoes through the darkness of the room, asking Tia Rossetti what she is seeking.
Tia Rossetti freezes in shock as Lexion suddenly emerges from the shadows behind her.
Lexion holds up his book with a small smile, asking if this is what she wanted.
Stumbling back, Tia Rossetti asks when he arrived as he slowly begins to close the distance.
Lexian steps closer and stares into her eyes, answering that he has been there from the beginning.
Lexian looks at her with an intense expression and confesses that he has liked her from the start.
Recalling past memories, Lexian shares that he fell in love at first sight and wanted to dance.
Lexian touches her chin, lamenting that the world keeps trying to pair her with Greg instead.
Lexian asks if his efforts to be kind and righteous were not enough to stay by her.
Rossetti realizes with a sinking feeling that Lexian knew the truth about everything after all.
Rossetti worries about the book's penalty while telling Lexian that he cannot continue this path.
Lexian asks if she will leave again and suggests she just kill him there if she does.
The heavy weight of his ultimatum hangs in the darkness as she remains speechless.
Lexian pleads with TD to choose him over the cruel fate the world has dictated. Lexian lifts her chin, asking her to roll with him even if everything is a mess.
A tender and intimate moment unfolds as Lexian and Rossetti share a passionate, close-up kiss.
A glowing speech bubble appears as Lexian declares his readiness to move forward alongside Rossetti.
Lexian pulls Rossetti close in a firm embrace as they kiss amidst a flurry of sparkles.
Rossetti realizes Lexian possessed a book and feels a profound sense of relief at being seen.
The narrative sequence pauses as the scene transitions through a digital portal toward the next chapter.
Lexian sits in an ornate room and asks TT if she is finally feeling a bit better.
Rossetti leans against Lexian on a sofa and softly replies that she is aware of the situation.
Lexian confesses his desire to be her sanctuary and asks Rossetti to choose him over everything else.
Rossetti stares ahead with a look of quiet conflict as she processes the weight of his plea.
Rossetti reflects on her fading desire to return home, questioning the importance of her original world.
A vision of a shackled woman appears, causing Rossetti to question the reality of her own existence.
Rossetti struggles to remember her true name while Lexian asks if she is hurt or feeling unwell.
Panic and existential dread grip Rossetti as she clutches her head, overwhelmed by her fracturing identity.
Lexian calls out to TD while she frantically denies being the person he thinks she is.
Tears stream down Rossetti's face as she despairs over the loss of her former self and memories.
Lexian repeatedly calls Rossetti's name while she spiraled into fear of being trapped in this world.
Lexian holds Rossetti in a protective embrace, grounding her as she trembles from her internal crisis.
Lexian stares down with an intense expression, determined to keep Rossetti safe within his stronghold.
Lexian vows to never lose her, promising that he will always be thinking only of her presence.
Lexian offers to take on all the burdens that have become too heavy for Rossetti to carry. Lexian continues his heartfelt vow, expressing his desire to shield her from the world's cruel demands. A soft and warm smile finally returns to Rossetti's face as she gazes up at Lexian. Lexian reflects on his past life of perfection, gifted with wealth, intelligence, and royal blood ties.
Lexian recalls his mechanical relationship with Siren and how he once took his scripted life for granted.
A memory of a younger Rossetti in simple clothes and iron shackles highlights her past as a prisoner.
Lexian recalls finding Rossetti hiding alone in a corner and approaching her with quiet, curious interest.
Startled by the sudden visitor, the young girl looks up with a mix of fear and surprise.
Rossetti notices blood on Lexian and frantically asks if Scion is hurt or bleeding from an injury.
Lexian is stunned, wondering how this mysterious girl could possibly know that his personal nickname is Scion.
A look of deep shock and confusion crosses Lexian's face as he observes the unusual young lady.
Lexian reassures her that the blood is from monsters and the subjugation mission was successfully completed.
Lexian questions the strange feeling Rossetti gave him, initially dismissing her as someone who was crazy.
Lexian notes that they both changed, recalling his past engagement to Saren despite his internal confusion.
Lexian describes feeling suffocated by his scripted love for Siren, while his heart began to seek something else.
Lexian continues to play his role as the princess's fiancé, while his mind remains preoccupied and distant.
The two lean in for a formal display of affection that feels hollow to the conflicted Duke.
Rossetti watches the couple from a distance, her expression unreadable as she observes their scripted interaction.
Turning away from the scene, Rossetti walks into the depths of the garden to be alone.
Lexian senses her presence and mentally calls out Titus' name as his attention drifts from Siren.
Lexian apologizes to the princess, claiming he feels unwell as she tries to stop his sudden departure.
Ignoring Siren's calls, Lexian walks away with a singular focus on finding the blue-haired woman instead.
Rossetti discovers a mysterious floating book in the garden and questions if it is truly an object.
Rossetti marvels at the brown book suspended in midair, wondering how it can defy the laws of gravity.
Lexian approaches and calls out to Titi, who reacts with surprise while he suggests meeting later tonight.
Lexian asks Rossetti if she was just speaking to the floating book, having witnessed her odd behavior.
An ominous thought echoes through the darkness, emphasizing the need to watch Rossetti's actions very closely.
Lexian observes Titi's repeated interactions with the book, suspecting she is being controlled by its magic.
Lexian looks down at the intricate details of the book's cover, sensing its significant and dangerous power.
Reading the contents, Lexian realizes the book contains his life story and why his existence felt unreal.
Lexion shouts in denial as Tirazetti bids him farewell, finally accepting her fate as a scripted character.
Lexion desperately begs TD to open her eyes as she lies motionless in his arms.
Distraught, Lexion continues to plead for her life while cradling her blood-stained form. A system notification confirms the mission's completion and transitions the narrative to the reward page. Lexion gazes at the brown book as a strange light begins to emanate from its pages. Reaching out, Lexion makes physical contact with the floating book, triggering a blinding flash of light.
A voice echoes in the darkness, demanding that TT be returned to her world immediately.
Screaming with grief, Lexion demands the mysterious entity give her back as the book glows intensely.
Lexion stares ahead with a determined and pained expression, his resolve hardening against the shifting reality.
A floating window identifies the speaker as the guide and administrator of the entire world.
Lexion asks if this entity is the administrator, receiving a formal greeting from the world's overseer.
The system reveals that the traveler, Tirazetti a soul, was guiding Lexion throughout his journey.
Lexion questions the definition of a traveler while desperately asking if TT is still alive.
The interface explains that travelers from outside the world return home after fulfilling their scripted endings.
Lexion demands a way to keep her, but the system notes Tirazetti wishes to return home.
Lexion admits he cannot stop her return, even when asked if he will change his mind.
Deep in thought, Lexion resolves to express his true feelings to TD one last time.
Lexion asks for forgiveness for his selfishness, prompting the system to reveal the path forward.
The system identifies Lexion as an awakener and explains that he can also become a traveler.
A notification clarifies that travelers earn rewards upon completing their designated endings within the story.
The administrator asks if Lexion will accept becoming a traveler to turn his wish into reality.
Lexion firmly accepts the offer, and the system confirms his new status with a formal notification.
A final interface message declares that Lexion Sparrow has officially transitioned into a traveler of this world.
Now a traveler, Lexion explores a desolate area, searching for any sign of TD's presence.
Lexion looks around in confusion, questioning the unexpected circumstances of his arrival in this cycle.
The system explains that a second cycle guide is protecting Tirazetti, who currently does not exist.
Lexion expresses frustration over the unexpected variable, having believed he would see T immediately.
Dismissing the administrator's grand posturing, Lexion remains unimpressed by the world's complex rules and cycles.
Lexion declares his intent to create subsequent cycles if his current efforts to find her fail.
Despite warnings about the physical toll of repeated resets, a bloodied Lexion vows to continue regardless.
The narrative shifts to the present, reflecting on the long-awaited reunion between the two fated souls.
Tirazetti sits in her room, looking startled as she processes the revelation of Lexion's true nature. Clenching her dress, Tirazetti realizes Lexion endured becoming a traveler just to find her again.
Tirazetti asks why he kept his secret, and a fearful Lexion admits he was deeply afraid.
Lexion confesses his fear that Tirazetti would resent him for his actions and interference.
Gently touching her face, Lexion asks TT if she still desires to return to her world.
Tirazetti wonders if she can defy fate while preparing to offer a sorrowful apology to Scion.
Tirazetti's blue eye widens in shock as she tries to speak Lexion's name through her internal conflict.
Lexion softly begs her to stay with him, his hand reaching out to bridge the emotional distance.
Tirazetti places her hand over his, a silent gesture of comfort amidst the weight of their choices.
Tears fall as Lexion openly confesses his need for TT, begging her not to leave him again.
Overwhelmed with emotion, Tirazetti gazes at Lexion with a mixture of love, guilt, and profound sadness.
Lexion shares a moment of quiet vulnerability, his face reflecting the heavy burden of his lonely journey.
Tirazetti begins to cry, unable to hide the depth of her feelings for the man before her.
Lexion pulls Tirazetti into a tight embrace, offering comfort as she weeps against his shoulder.
Elsewhere, a man with light blue hair commands his men to find the lair of an evil dragon.
The light blue-haired man laments the frequency of dragon attacks while observing the destruction of his city.
After receiving reports of a barrier, the commander orders mages to investigate the suspicious nearby cave. Lexion approaches the magical barrier while the commander warns him of the extreme danger ahead.
A massive explosion rocks the landscape, signaling a violent confrontation with the power guarding the cave.
The commander orders his troops to fall back and prepare for additional attacks from the mysterious enemy. Lexion orders an immediate return to the capital, cutting off an unseen objection. The battered soldiers acknowledge Lexion's command to return to the capital.
Sparkles dance as Tirazetti awakens to find Lexion sleeping soundly by her side. Morning light filters into the room, highlighting the peaceful intimacy of the scene. Tirazetti notices Lexion sleeping beside her and questions Scion's unexpected presence. Lexion sleeps peacefully, his white shirt partially open following their shared night.
Their hands remain clasped together, symbolizing the deep bond they have forged.
Tirazetti sits up in a panic, shocked to realize their encounter wasn't a dream.
Tirazetti gasps as Lexion suddenly pulls her back down into the bedding.
Lexion pulls her close, chuckling as he confirms their shared moment was real. Embracing TD tightly, Lexion affectionately asks her if she had a good sleep.
Lexion notes TD's lingering fever and insists she rest more after her difficult day.
The narrative shifts to the grand architecture of the palace during a formal gathering.
An announcer formally heralds the arrival of Duke Rexian Sparrow into the assembly hall. Lexion enters in full military regalia and commands the gathered officials to be seated.
The meeting officially commences as the attendees acknowledge Lexion's authority to begin.
Lexion requests a report on the dragon's remnants and asks for its point of origin.
An official identifies a marketplace vegetable shop as the primary source of the recent incidents.
Lexion considers the report and deduces that the vegetables themselves are the likely problem.
Lexion orders a full investigation of the ledgers and the immediate confiscation of all goods.
A woman inquires about the reinforcements the princess requested, seeking Lexion's official decision. Lexion firmly rejects the request, stating his refusal should already be obvious to everyone. Lexion moves the meeting forward, calling for a report regarding missing persons in Camel Forest.
Somewhere else, a person reacts with profound shock to news regarding a sudden attack.
Saren and Gregory discuss the dragon's attack on the capital and Lexion's refusal to help.
Saren fumes over Lexion defying a royal command and prioritizing his own territory's safety.
Gregory addresses Saren, suggesting they return to the imperial capital following the news.
Saren refuses to leave, claiming she didn't come to this remote valley to fail.
Gregory warns Saren that there is no room for them between Lexion and TT. Saren stubbornly insists that as a princess, there is nothing in this world she can't have.
Gregory urges Saren to give up, noting it's too late to win Lexion over.
Saren screams at her brother, refusing to give up or listen to his advice.
Saren is suddenly interrupted by a message from a magical orb and calls for Kronos. Kronos apologizes for the delay and mentions the chaos following the capital's second attack.
Kronos reports that the king was injured in the attack, though not severely.
The light blue-haired man in the orb tells Saren to calm down and asks about Rexion.
Saren explains Lexion's refusal to send reinforcements despite the critical situation in Padello.
Kronos tells Saren to return home first, refusing to leave her in a dangerous place. Gregory agrees with Kronos and promises to stay behind to continue persuading Lexion.
The man in the orb notices Gregory's presence and addresses him directly.
Kronos tells Gregory to prove his worth through the task of persuading Lexion.
Kronos promises knights for Padello and tells Saren to be careful while returning.
Gregory reassures Saren about the king's health while she remains visibly upset and worried.
Gregory admits he wasn't thinking clearly and offers an apology for his earlier harsh words.
The scene shifts as Tirazetti wakes up in her room, groaning from her long sleep.
Tirazetti wonders why her cold is persisting as she prepares to get out of bed.
Tirazetti is suddenly alerted by a presence, her attention turning toward the middle of the room.
A system notification announces a preview as a mysterious brown book appears before Tirazetti.
Tirazetti reads the floating book, which warns of a major incident breaking out in Padello. Tirazetti's blue eyes widen in sheer terror as she learns the capital has officially fallen.
Tirazetti reflects on the changes in this cycle as she stares ahead with a worried expression.
A system window warns the traveler not to trust Rexian Sparrow, leaving Tirazetti frozen in shock.
Tirazetti questions the sudden suspicious warning about the man she loves as her gaze turns sharp.
Tirazetti asks why the system is acting strangely as the holographic window glitches and becomes unreadable.
System notifications announce that Gregory's episodes were deleted due to plot changes and synchronization has occurred.
A radiant light envelops the room as Tirazetti stands amidst the fading remnants of the system.
The system issues a final warning that an external party may be observing the story's events.
Tirazetti realizes others intervened in the past to prevent her from finishing her story and returning.
Tirazetti demands an explanation of Scion's role, and the system identifies him as an awakened character.
Tirazetti asks if the book's influence will vanish if the story deviates from its original path.
A notification warns that failing to follow the script results in soul erasure and world collapse.
A system window in the void declares that Tirazetti Isol must defeat the evil dragon.
The system reiterates that failure to complete her designated task will result in severe global penalties.
A grim message confirms that the world's collapse will cause every soul within it to vanish.
Tirazetti concludes that Scion's interference could lead to her own disappearance and the world's ultimate destruction.
Remembering their bond, Tirazetti resolves to take action and fulfill her role to save them.
Tirazetti's hand trembles with fear and resolve as she prepares to face the weight of fate.
The system instructs the traveler to prevent Scion's ending by synchronizing with his magical brown book.
Tirazetti wonders what it means to synchronize her fate with the contents of Scion's enchanted book. Tirazetti considers how unlikely it is for a character like Scion to find his true self.
Tirazetti doubts the book's absolute authority and searches for an alternative way to save their world.
Tirazetti asks about refusing her ending, but the system warns of total destruction and a loop.
Tirazetti walks through her room, weighing the choice between erasure and an endless cycle of resets.
Tirazetti picks up her cup of tea, lost in deep thought regarding the system's terrifying revelations.
A realization strikes Tirazetti, her blue eye widening in shock as she stops mid-sick.
Tirazetti gasps in sudden alarm, dropping her cup as hot tea spills across her arm.
Tirazetti coughs violently while clutching her throat, fearing the tea she just consumed might be poisoned.
Looking toward the doorway with a frantic expression, Tirazetti calls out for her maid, Daisy.
3 brown mushrooms sit on a white cloth, their appearance revealing the source of the danger.
Tirazetti asks if these were in her tea, and Daisy confirms they are uji mushrooms for fever. Tirazetti senses a dragon's malevolent aura in the mushrooms and wonders how they entered the palace. Tirazetti deduces the market-bought mushrooms caused the recent riot after questioning Daisy about their origin.
Tirazetti tells Daisy she must go see the Duke immediately to report her dangerous new discovery.
Dressed in an elegant purple gown, Tirazetti prepares to confront Scion with the evidence she found.
Tirazetti enters the office where the scarred commander greets her as Scion works at his desk.
Rushing to the commander, Tirazetti notices his bloody arm, but he dismisses it as a minor scratch.
The scarred commander asks TD if she feels better while Lexion watches the exchange with quiet concern. Tirazetti presents a pouch to the men, insisting they examine the dangerous items she discovered earlier.
Tirazetti identifies the contents as uchi mushrooms, prompting a reaction of pure shock from the scarred commander.
The scarred commander identifies the mushrooms as the cause of the explosion and demands their immediate surrender.
Lexion reveals he already purified the mushrooms, much to the scarred commander's utter confusion and surprise.
Narrative text clarifies that Tirazetti possesses a unique power capable of purifying the evil dragon's malevolent aura.
Lexion looks at Tirazetti, acknowledging her secret power while the commander processes the impossible news.
The scarred commander realizes John survived due to this purification power and then notices another urgent matter.
Lexion thinks about his desire to keep TD's abilities hidden to protect her from the world's dangers.
Tirazetti confirms she can use her purification power now, but asks for an explanation of the situation.
The scarred commander asks if TD can save a child currently infected after eating an uji mushroom.
A system window appears before Tirazetti, announcing that they are now entering the story's main stage. The system signals the start of the Dying Child episode and commands Tirazetti to save Thou.
Tirazetti looks forward with grim determination as the system warns of a greater danger approaching the capital.
Tirazetti realizes this unfolding situation is exactly what the system's terrifying preview warned her about.
Tirazetti urges the scarred commander and Lexion to go to the infected child immediately.
A young girl with braided hair growls like a wild beast from behind iron bars.
Tirazetti's blue eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the girl from a bakery visit.
The scarred commander notes the corruption is festering as purification stones failed to heal the child.
Watching the girl, Lexion asks if there were any family members found with the child. The scarred commander explains there was another boy, but he had already passed away.
Tirazetti clenches her gloved hand tightly as she absorbs the tragic news of the boy.
Lexion looks down at the child and calmly announces that he will begin the purification.
Tirazetti approaches the barred cell as her purple gown rustles against the stone floor of the dungeon.
The corrupted girl lunges forward, snarling at Tirazetti with empty, glowing white eyes and bare teeth.
Tirazetti pauses in the dark corridor, her expression softened by pity for the suffering young girl. Tirazetti stares at the child, promising to restore her to her original self very soon.
A soft, golden light begins to emanate from Tirazetti's hand as she reaches toward the bars.
Tirazetti invokes the name Asta as a brilliant, radiant light envelops the entire dungeon cell.
The light fades, revealing a girl with clear green eyes who wonders where she is located.
Tirazetti's eyes widen with joy as she notices the girl has finally regained her consciousness.
Lexion and the scarred commander stand behind Tirazetti, asking the girl how she is feeling.
The girl looks up at them, confirming she is okay, but asking about her current location.
Tirazetti explains they are at the Duke's estate and asks where she got the mushrooms.
The girl admits she gathered them in Carmel Forest to sell at her vegetable FUP.
Lexion commands Aiden to track down the buyers immediately and retrieve every single black slime mushroom.
The girl asks if she did something wrong, but Tirazetti reassures her and asks her name.
The girl reveals her name is Rose, looking weary as she rests in the Duke's care.
A green carriage travels along a scenic mountain road under a bright and clear afternoon sky.
Sir Arnold reflects on the Duke's surprising words as the carriage rumbles toward his home.
In a flashback, Lexion addresses Sir Arnold, noting that he has been overworking himself lately. Sir Arnold explains that he is fine and that maintaining Bedello's stability is his priority.
Lexion acknowledges his hard work but advises Sir Arnold to prioritize taking care of his family. Sir Arnold's eyes widen slightly, reflecting on the Duke's uncharacteristic and deeply personal advice.
Sir Arnold thanks the Duke for his kindness and promises to return home the following day.
A narrator notes that Lexion has changed significantly since Tirazetti entered his life as a traveler.
The scene shifts to a grand, sun-drenched estate nestled against a backdrop of lush mountains.
A servant greets Marquis Arnold as he arrives at the ornate entrance of the large mansion.
The man with glasses asks why Arnold looks pale, and Arnold blames it on his overworking.
Arnold insists working hard is only natural for his job before heading inside with the man.
Arnold asks about Amelia and learns she went to Sparrow Manor to see the departing princess.
The servant reports that Hegel is sleeping after taking effective medicine made from the uji mushrooms.
Arnold stops walking as a sudden, sharp feeling of unease washes over him in the hallway.
Arnold notices his servants are coughing and looking unwell, fueling his growing sense of impending dread.
A servant rushes toward Arnold, announcing an urgent message has just arrived from the Sparrow Castle. Lexian contacts Arnold through a glowing magic orb to deliver a critical update regarding the mushrooms. Lexian explains the Yuji mushrooms are a malevolent presence disguised to deceive and corrupt the people.
Arnold realizes with horror that the medicine given to his son was crafted from those mushrooms. Arnold realizes the tainted medicine is why his servants are ill and fears he cannot return.
The voice in the orb asks for clarification, and Arnold explains his son's medicine is contaminated.
Lexian warns that if Amelia is tainted, Princess Saren is in grave danger at the castle.
The magic orb instructs Arnold to flee the estate immediately, but he refuses to leave family.
Arnold stands alone in the foyer, resolving to follow the Duke's advice about protecting one's family.
Looking at a family portrait, Arnold decides to stay and try protecting his loved ones himself.
Arnold hears the Duke's promise to arrive soon and offers his sincere gratitude.
A mysterious voice reflects on the profound changes seen in someone's character lately.
Tia Rossetti asks Daisy to handle the situation, receiving a confident reassurance in return.
Tia Rossetti waves goodbye to Daisy and Rose as they depart for their next destination.
Tia Rossetti questions if the danger is truly over while Lexian observes her with concern.
A sharp realization stops Tia Rossetti as a wave of sudden anxiety hits her.
Tia Rossetti realizes the purified child wasn't the one mentioned in the prophecy's warning.
Lexian orders Chris to dispatch castle guards to the villa to protect the princess.
Lexian commands the Black Knights to follow him and tells Chris to join later. Lexian urges everyone to hurry before the Brandt household falls while TT realizes Rose isn't the target. The name Hegel Brandt echoes in the darkness, marking him as the next potential victim.
TT begs Scion to take her along, but he refuses because he fears for her safety. Tia Rossetti warns that Bedello remains in danger if the dying child isn't purified soon. TT insists that the prophecy refers to Hegel and they must act before it is late.
System windows appear over the magical brown book, warning that time is rapidly running out.
TT looks at the book in panic, wondering how they can move quickly enough.
Lexian considers Tia Rossetti's words, his expression growing tense as he weighs the situation.
Lexian agrees to take her but demands a promise that she won't do anything reckless. Relief and hope wash over Tia Rossetti's face as she prepares for the mission.
Marquis Arnold stands over his sick son while Amelia waits by the bed. Young Hegel remains in a deep, sweat-filled sleep as his condition appears to stabilize.
Hegel wakes up and asks his father when he arrived at his bedside.
Arnold apologizes for his lateness while Hegel expresses understanding for his father's busy schedule.
Arnold embraces his son, promising that everything will be fine now that he's home. A transition screen signals the start of a new chapter in the unfolding drama.
Princess Siren laments that Amelia must return to the capital so soon the next day.
Amelia wishes to stay, but the princess explains her brother Kronos expects her back soon.
Amelia thanks Saren for Hegel's recovery while the princess judges her manners and plots.
Saren expresses her happiness regarding Hegel's improved condition while holding her teacup delicately.
Amelia mentions Siren's trip to the capital, prompting a questioning response from the princess. Amelia's eyes take on a strange hue as she prepares to reveal an unsettling truth. Amelia bluntly accuses Princess Siren of running away from the capital, causing a shocked reaction. Amelia claims she heard the Duke of Sparrow rejected the princess's partner request twice.
Siren angrily asks who spread the rumors, wondering if Lady Tia Rossetti was the source.
Amelia insults Siren for losing to a commoner, causing the princess to shout in anger. Amelia offers a false apology while claiming she is the only one who understands Siren.
Amelia hugs Siren, whispering that the humiliation she endured must have been completely unbearable.
A sudden headache overcomes Princess Siren as she begins to feel physically unwell. Amelia suggests they simply get rid of Tia Rossetti to solve the princess's social problems. Siren looks at Amelia with absolute horror, unable to believe what she is hearing. Siren experiences a blinding headache while Amelia claims she knows Tia Rossetti Isol's critical weakness. Darkness swirls through the room as the malevolent influence begins to corrupt the princess.
Amelia asks Siren for her attention and whispers a dark secret into her ear.
A terrified scream escapes Princess Siren as she is overwhelmed by a sudden shock.
Marquis Kronos bursts into the room shouting Sirian's name and asking if she's okay.
Kronos looks around the room with a sharp, guarded gaze, searching for hidden threats. Amelia collapses to the floor as Kronos arrives holding a glowing blue purification stone. Kronos asks Siren if she feels strange or if Amelia acted suspiciously toward her.
Siren tells her brother that nothing happened and thanks him for his timely arrival.
Princess Siren looks on with a grateful smile as her brother stays by her side.
A grand estate hall is filled with dark smoke while servants lie unconscious on the floor. Lexian orders the collapse to be restrained and purification stones set as TT observes the corruption. Lexian leads TT through the dark corridor as they rush toward the source of the problem.
Lexian confirms they have arrived at Hegel's room while thick dark energy leaks from the GAR.
Lexian orders the guards to stand by while a system window urges TT to begin purification.
Tia Rossetti realizes that Hegel Brandt is indeed the dying child mentioned in the Grimm prophecy.
Lexian instructs the guards to keep the room isolated and prevent anyone from entering the area.
Lexion tells TD to open the door, and she confirms she is ready for the task. The massive doors creak open as Lexion and TD step into the dark, corrupted room. TD covers her mouth in horror as the sharp, metallic smell of blood fills the air. Inside the room, the corrupted boy attacks a bleeding woman while dark energy swirls around them. The boy is identified as Hegel Brandt as he lunges at his victim with feral intensity.
Lexion rushes toward the collapsed Marquis Arnold while the chaotic scene unfolds in the room's center.
Lexion asks if Arnold is all right, but the dying man begs him to save his wife.
TD looks at the dying woman while the system declares it is time to make a choice.
The magical book warns that the story will branch significantly based on the decision she makes.
TD looks around in shock, realizing that time has frozen once again during this critical moment.
TD observes everyone trapped in time, including Scion and the suffering members of the Brandt family.
The book presents 3 choices involving saving specific family members with varying risks of death or dragons. TD realizes that regardless of her decision, every outcome presented by the book is absolutely terrible.
A final system notification warns TD that the countdown has begun and she must choose quickly.
TD panics as she tries to find a way to save everyone without causing more tragedy.
TD fears that if Hegel's corruption completes, the tragedy of Hakoon will repeat in Bedello.
TD reflects on how sorcerers have been persecuted, leaving no one else to help with their magic.
TD concludes that option 1 is impossible since the only sorcerer she knows cannot be summoned.
TD decides that option 3 is the only remaining choice to avoid internal conflict and save everyone. TD wonders if Scion can handle the dragon alone while remembering that Chris will arrive soon.
TD realizes that Chris and Gregory can buy them time by intercepting any threats at Camel Forest.
TD notes that option 3 only mentions a possibility of summoning the dragon, unlike the certain deaths.
TD asks the guide if the dragon might not appear at all, receiving a confirming response. TD clenches her hand, suspecting the book presents trials while hiding the safest possible path forward.
TD looks at the book with determination and officially selects the risky third option to save everyone.
The system confirms the selection as time resumes with a series of distinct ticking sounds.
TD asks Scion to contact Sir Chris and order him to stand by at Camel Forest immediately.
TD explains her plan to purify the family while taking precautions against a potential dragon attack.
Lexion looks at TD with a knowing expression, realizing she was just communicating with the magical book.
Lexion agrees to her request and prepares to assist her with the dangerous purification process. Lexion orders his men to notify Chris to set up barriers at Camel Forest using the Magus.
A close-up shows a droplet falling as the scene resumes its intense and bloody action.
The corrupted boy snarls and struggles violently as Lexion prepares to separate him from his mother.
Lexion tells TD to prepare to treat the wife the moment he pulls the boy away. Lexion grabs the boy and throws him back, creating space for TD to approach the woman.
Lexion maintains his focus as he prepares to restrain the feral child during the next step. Lexion commands TD to take care of Lady Brandt while he keeps the struggling boy restrained. TD uses her purification magic on Lady Brandt, invoking the name Aegis to heal her wounds. TD observes the woman's improving condition and prepares to move on to purifying Hegel next.
TD yells for Scion to hold Hegel down while the corrupted boy continues to fight back. Lexion pins the screaming boy to the ground, urging TD to begin the purification process immediately.
TD rushes toward Hegel as she prepares her magic, determined to save him from the corruption.
TD freezes in terror as a malicious, smiling face suddenly appears before her during the purification.
TD screams in absolute terror as she is suddenly pulled into a dark and chaotic void.
TD recovers from the shock while Lexion asks if she is all right after the sudden incident.
Lexion reaches out to TD and suggests that they should face the upcoming challenges together. Hegel Brandt appears with a chilling, malevolent smile as the corruption takes a firmer hold.
Tirazetti gasps in shock as she realizes the gravity of the terrifying situation unfolding before her. A moment of deep despair follows as TT realizes her precarious situation and fears the worst. Lexion shouts TD's name in desperation as she is enveloped by a swirling, malevolent cloud of darkness. Ethereal system windows appear in the void, addressing the traveler and urging her to open her eyes.
TD's eyes flutter open as she begins to regain consciousness in an unfamiliar, dark realm.
TD questions her location while a system window reveals she is inside a fragment of the dragon's will. The system warns that she must find and purify the core or remain trapped in this dimension forever. TD laments the unfortunate turn of events while reflecting on the dire state of her mission. A grim warning appears, stating that there is no escape and maintaining sanity is nearly impossible.
TD realizes being trapped might be beneficial because it immobilizes Hegel, and she explains that purifying him from within would prevent the dragon from ever appearing. TD deduces that the dragon is only summoned if she fails the purification and prepares herself to successfully complete the mission.
TD stands with firm determination and prepares to locate the core to begin her purification mission.